The Northern Red Ocean dungeon required hunters to be at least level 550 to safely pass through. In the depths came the sounds of a furious battle, the clanking of metal, and the rumbling of the crumbling stone walls of the cave. The opponent was a terrifying skinless monster whose bared fangs inspired primal fear in anyone. A three-headed divine sea dragon of the 552nd level towered as the real boss of this cursed place. The monster swung its massive paw, easily turning the huge boulders around it into dust and pieces. The mighty creature slowly crept toward the lone hunter, preparing to deliver the killing blow. Ted gripped the hilt of his weapon tightly, carefully stepping back and assessing the situation before attacking. The young man mentally noted that this hideous creature was not only ugly, but also incredibly dangerous. A level 559th master was well aware of the seriousness of facing such a powerful opponent. The monster took a powerful blow from the hero's bronze weapon right into its massive scaly torso. The wounded monster began to let out a wild roar, and dark blood flowed from its jaws from the damage it had taken. As befits a sea dragon, this creature had 3 huge heads with sharp fangs. The guy knew, cutting off one head would only increase the monster's rage and make its attacks more devastating. Ted realized the dangers of single combat and began looking for an alternative way to defeat this mighty creature. Suddenly, in the scope of his weapon, the hunter noticed something strange in the behavior of the enemy in front of him. The 3-headed monster began to manipulate the water currents, preparing for a powerful magical attack on the enemy. The dragon unleashed a huge wave of water on the hero, trying to wash his opponent off the rocky ledge of the cave. The powerful torrent completely covered Ted, knocking him off his feet and rendering him unable to keep his balance. The demonic creature laughed gloatingly as it watched the man's helpless attempts to rise to his feet. The force of the impact was so great that a deep trench was formed in the floor of the dungeon from the water attack. Suddenly, the monster heard a low chuckle and started looking around the sides of the cave around him in horror. The monster tried to understand the source of this gloating laughter that echoed through the stone walls. Turning around, the dragon was surprised to find the guy standing right on his massive back. Tad explained that he was just stalling for time to get a chance to cut off all 4 heads at once. Swinging his weapon, the young man mockingly said goodbye to the monster before the decisive blow of the battle. With one mighty swing, the hero slashed all 3 necks of the terrible creature, ending the epic battle in victory. The game window reported that he had become the first person in the world to defeat a 550+ level monster. Ted's level instantly jumped to 601, confirming the truth that patience was always rewarded. However, this result was natural after all the time and resources spent preparing for the battle. The guy had even prepared a special top-level trap in advance for this confrontation with the dragon. Ted specifically designed this boss hunting trap to make boss battles much easier. The deadly poison is impossible to find in normal trade shops, let alone enhancement items. After counting the spending, the guy realized he had spent about 2 million in a week and was clearly overspending. However, selling all the prey will more than recoup all the investment and make a good profit for the hunter. The main target was the sea dragon essence, a dark blue crystal that rarely falls out of a monster. Ted was well aware of the low odds of falling out, so he rejoiced at his luck of getting it on the first try. In the back of his mind, the young man felt anxious. When was the last time he had been so lucky in a game? Fate Chronicles, the virtual reality RPG that took over the world upon release and is still leading the way. The guy progressed quickly due to his unique playstyle and deep understanding of all the mechanics of the game. In 3 years, Ted was ranked among the top 100 talented players in Japan. But he was plagued by terrible bad luck. The lands he had so laboriously developed were invariably destroyed by the sudden earthquakes in the game. His entire team was involved in an accident right before an important siege, leaving the hero all alone. After a string of failures, the guy decided to break with the team game and continue his climb alone. Ted thought that today would definitely put an end to all failures. The information gained was truly priceless. The Hell Tribe dungeon required players to be at least level 600 to safely pass through. Inferno Orochi molts once a year, becoming weak but covered in a protective shell like a true stone. The guy realized that he had gotten exactly the information that would help him win a decisive victory. Now he knew a way to crack the impenetrable shell and get to the weakened flesh of the boss inside. Climbing the mountain, Ted exhaled a sigh of relief. The climb had been hard, but he had reached a hell of a place. The young man took out the newly obtained crystal and thought that this was the place where he would be able to use it effectively. The sea dragon essence was his only hope of success in this dangerous endeavor today. The hunter opened the cap and began to carefully pour the magical contents from the precious vessel onto the ground. The magical liquid began to seep deep down, glowing blue highlights dancing on the stone walls. Drops of essence fell to the very bottom of the dungeon, rolling down from the high rocky ledges of the mountain below. Slowly, the magical substance began to flow down the rough stone floor of the cave, leaving a glowing trail. It turned out that was where the boss was sleeping. The essence had gotten right in his eyes. Ted completely emptied the bottles of the precious liquid, leaving not a single drop inside the vessel. Before the battle, the guy drank many recovery potions to prepare his body for the upcoming battle. The result didn't take long. The mighty beast began to wake up from the magical effects of the essence. Stones flew in all directions with powerful destruction as the monster awakened in its lair. Inferno Orochi, a level 650 boss, a terrifying hell snake similar to a rattlesnake but with horns. The guy realized that the monster had finally gotten out and immediately grabbed his battle weapon. Ted began to methodically fire at the horrible creature, aiming at various vulnerable points on its body. The young man realized that due to his molting status, he could deal damage despite the difference in levels. The boss monster's eyes blazed with real rage at the unexpected and daring attack from the human. The snake could not forgive the encroachment on his life and lunged with open mouth at the guy. At the last moment, Ted managed to leap aside and avoid the fatal bite of the enraged boss. The boy was surprised to note that the creature's strength was indeed impressive, even in its weakened state. The speed of the monster's attacks was especially amazing. It was virtually unchanged after waking up from hibernation. The huge snake opened its mouth wide and began to let out a deafening roar, gaining a lot of air. Tad gritted his teeth, realizing that there was a much harder battle ahead than he had originally anticipated. The monster's body was covered in red-hot magma, from which tongues of true hellfire erupted all around. Seeing the huge fireball, the guy quickly raised his weapon and tried to aim for a retaliatory strike. At the very last moment, the hero opened fire in an attempt to retake the initiative in this deadly fight. There was a powerful explosion of bright orange color, after which it became impossible to make out what was happening around. Real lava streams appeared, which mercilessly destroyed all living things in their fiery path. Ted lay on the ground, writhing in pain as he nearly lost his arm in the explosion. If he hadn't dodged using the recoil from the shot, he would have just been fried on the spot. The guy realized that the difference in levels was critical, though the monster was indeed in a weakened state. Ted realized that he could not withstand a direct hit from such a powerful opponent in combat. Any mistake meant instant death. He simply had no other chances in this situation. Given the huge difference in levels, the chances of victory were negligible for the hero. With only 30% of success, the guy defiantly shouted to the snake to come closer to him. Ted fired a huge projectile that gave off such heat that the air around him shook. The guy could barely breathe, letting steam out of his mouth. So heavy was this confrontation for him. Lying on the ground, Ted realized that this was the end, his body no longer capable of continuing the battle. Turning his head to the side, he thought about the 2 days he had tried without sleep or rest. The young man had successfully raided this monster, the first time on the server someone had managed such a thing. After the battle was over, the guy woke up in his familiar game pod at home, feeling tired. Ted realized that he had been in virtual reality for 2 whole days straight without a break. The main thing is that the items are on the trading floor, so now it was safe to rest. Suddenly the guy remembered that he forgot to do something important before leaving the game. Ted quickly sat down at his computer and decided to check the number of views on his uploaded video. He expected to see modest numbers, but at least he could admire at least something in the future. As he left the room, the guy hoped viewers would enjoy his content. Amano Kyohei. At that moment, no one could have guessed what incredible events would begin to unfold next. No one knew how that video, which the young man then uploaded to the popular YouTube, would turn out. Ted had no idea what consequences he would have to face after this situation. Soon everyone started actively discussing among themselves about this unexpectedly viral video online. The audience watched a 29-year-old boy fight against a huge monster snake all by himself. Many people initially just couldn't believe the reality of what was happening on the screen. Watching the video, there was only one question in the minds of the viewers. Is this really real? The guys watched the tape and asked each other if it was true or quality computer graphics. They studied the video and thought the guy's name was Ted. First time they'd heard that name. In Destiny Chronicles, you can't have multiple accounts, so it turns out that everything that happens is pure truth, without deception. Ted launched his stream, thanked all viewers for their support, and announced that today's broadcast would be dedicated to instructions on how to hunt dangerous monsters in the game. Today, the hero planned to show the audience how to properly fight the mighty orc kings and their many subordinates in battle. Usually, these creatures prefer to travel alone in an area, but sometimes they gather in large and dangerous groups, like the one in front of them now. In addition, orc kings are often joined by other monsters, forming an entire army, so taking them all down will not be an easy task for any player. Therefore, before Ted got completely angry, it was necessary to deal with at least one of the opponents, using the most effective battle tactics possible. The guy decided to show the audience how to do it with a powerful killing skill that is guaranteed to inflict critical damage to the enemy, and to avoid a dangerous counterattack while the ability recharges. The young man explained to the audience a detailed plan of action for that period of time. You need to actively shoot at the small stuff around, smiling while doing so, because such tactics have always brought him success in the past. Ted explained that he usually just methodically and slowly blasts away orc kings one at a time, taking his time and choosing his moment to attack. But when these monsters come together in a large crowd, in that case they become even much easier to defeat for an experienced hunter. First, you must carefully approach one of the orc kings without attracting the attention of the rest of their dangerous group. And while the player is dodging the powerful attacks of the first enemy, you need to anger him at himself while provoking another orc king nearby. The guy directly on live TV showed the viewers exactly what to do in such situations, very well hitting one of the opponents with a precise shot. He explained in detail that you must then immobilize the first king, which will begin to aggressively attack the player in response to the damage received. And if it is possible to get back into the right position so that the enemy hits his kin, then it will be a matter of little else for victory. The most important thing in this tactic, make it so that the enraged orc accidentally hits his attack on his close comrade. These monsters know no brotherly feelings, and will instantly attack anyone who has done significant damage to them, even if it is their kin. So while those two are busy with internecine fighting, the smaller monsters can be quietly mopped up, and only one king will be left. And thus ended the detailed instruction on how to effectively fight the factions of these dangerous and aggressive creatures in the game. Viewers began actively writing a variety of comments on his broadcast, some saying he hadn't won yet, others noting the usefulness of the advice. A girl named Ms. Rudisa was watching the stream intently and asked her subordinate if he had already offered this talented guy to appear on their popular show. This blonde guy replied to her that Ted has pretty poor speech skills, so a quality talk show with him is unlikely to make it for the audience. Rudisa noted that his comments were rather simplistic, showing a certain inexperience in public speaking in front of large audiences. But this guy has undeniable game skills and natural charisma that totally make up for his lack of experience. So she wants to get him on her popular show. Ted was thinking after the stream was over about who would have guessed that it would come to professional broadcasting and such incredible success. He thought he was going to lose his mind when he saw the sheer number of views on his video, which racked up millions in a short time. In addition, the number of subscribers instantly increased 300 times in just one day, seemingly something absolutely impossible in reality. And now that the losing streak is finally over, and with this success he will be a top player, a real sweet life of no worries awaits him. Suddenly, the guy noticed an incoming call on his phone and wondered if it was the same manager who had once offered him to be on some show. Tad recalled that he had flatly refused the offer at the time, telling the interviewer that he didn't want to go on any television programs. A young man answered the phone and said hello, immediately asking the caller who he was in general and what he needed from him. He was told that the CGTV channel was calling him because of his viral hunting video, and would very much like to work with such a talented guy. The manager admiringly noted the clean job of eliminating this mighty creature on his own, and promised to send a team to escort him to them. Ted said there was no need to hurry yet. They could get in touch a little later, and quickly hung up without waiting for a reply. CGTV. This is one of the most powerful and wealthy guilds in the game. Are they really willing to offer him a job and cooperation? The guy even got angry and thought to himself that this whole situation seemed just ridiculous and kind of unreal to him. Only 7 guilds are officially recognized by the game's administration and are allowed to conduct commercial activities in the Destiny Chronicles world. All of these guilds are incredibly wealthy, and among them are CGTV and Alibaba, which completely dominates the Chinese market. The guy thought that there was no way these arrogant people would recruit a simple player like him to join them, and now in the gaming market, Tad has asked a wizard to take apart the cores of 2 mighty monsters to create improvements. The man he approached warned that if they were taken apart, they could not be restored later, to which the guy replied that he understood that perfectly well. He asked the craftsman to do his work as soon as possible, as he was in a hurry to attend to important business, and he immediately began to fulfill the order. Ted thought about how it was a shame to lose cores worth 1 million, but it was very strange that this particular guild had found him so quickly. Considering they specifically mentioned Orochi in the conversation, it could only mean one unpleasant thing for himself. The guy realized with horror, there's no way these 2 powerful guilds got hold of the bosses and placed them, but it's legal in terms of the game system. He thought he didn't know why, but they clearly used some trick to switch bosses, and he killed them and recorded it, putting it on the internet. Tad cried out in despair about what a real curse this was. It turns out both of the bosses he had barely defeated were connected to large guilds. Was it again all the fault of his cursed streak of bad luck that had been haunting the young man for so long without a break? Shouldn't this terrible series of failures have ended long ago and left him finally alone forever? The situation was bad, as powerful people from the big guilds would definitely find a way to track him down in real life. The guy was feverishly thinking about what he should do now. In total, he only had a few possible ways out of the situation. Ted started typing a message thanking me for the interest in his gameplay and achievement videos in the game. He was writing this message to the TV channel, the same girl Rudisa who was so insistent on getting him on her popular show. The guy wanted to send a text, as several human shadows suddenly appeared behind his back, watching him closely. After that, a very fast arrow was fired at Ted, which flew at a tremendous speed straight in his direction from the ambush. At the very last moment, he was able to sense the approaching danger, turned around, and was in complete shock at what was happening around him. The arrow hit exactly on target and delivered a painful blow to his nose, causing the guy to stagger back in surprise. The people who approached him from the shadows noted with a chuckle that he had pretty good skills at detecting hidden threats. But then why did he mess with their belongings? The strangers asked, surrounding the bewildered young man in a tight ring with no possibility of escape. The guy thought with horror, are these people already here, and even too fast? What's worse, they are in full high-end equipment. They came to meet him fully prepared for battle, and this fact could not help but frighten the inexperienced player. Ted was threatened and told that he knew exactly what he was doing, and they had just suffered a huge financial loss because of him. The guy was outraged. Do you think he did it on purpose? They could have put up a sign or at least put up some sort of signage for the players. The powerful Hell Ghoul hand skill was used against him. Bloody creatures appeared and grabbed his arms and legs intentionally. The poor fellow was pinned with force to the ground and found himself completely unable to do anything to free himself from his grasp. He was coldly informed that the guy still didn't get it. This was far from a matter for discussion or negotiation on their part. The man got angry and sharply stated that it was a clear statement of fact if he suddenly still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. Ted realized with horror that standing before him was Manhwa, a dawn mage and top ranker from the powerful Alibaba Guild. Manhwa disdainfully said that whether he did it on purpose or not, it had absolutely no relevance to further events. Tad countered that the mage himself had said about his skills, for he had seen that his detection abilities were really good. The young man reminded him that he knows about Rudy's TV. It is the #1 most popular game server in the world. Guy offered to imagine the uproar the news that these two famous rich guilds were using illegal business practices would cause. Ted kept threatening that if anyone laid a finger on him, he would immediately forward a prepared letter to the proper places for exposure. After a while, the guy once again launched his broadcast and as usual said hello to all his loyal viewers. Ted was sad to report that today's news is a bit sad. Unfortunately, this stream will be his last for personal reasons. He recounted the sequel to that ill-fated battle with a powerful man from the Chinese guild who had placed a death curse on him. The curse of Hell's Gaze and the curse of total destruction were also cast. The guy was completely sealed. Seals appeared on his body. The warlock coldly stated, giving him exactly a week to think about it, get rid of his character, and delete all compromising emails. Tad then defiantly replied that whether he thought the man would just get his act together and swallow it like a complete asshole if he uncovered illegal activity. In response, he received a threat that even if he reveals everything, it will be quickly forgotten, but nothing will stop him from following him for eternity. That powerful warlock said coldly in parting that he hoped that he would never meet again in the game. Ted thought about the fact that he hadn't given up completely yet, and had tried a variety of methods to get rid of the curses that had been placed on him. He even tried dying in the game completely, hoping for a status reset, but all the curses stubbornly wouldn't go away from the character. It's been a whole 10 long years since he started playing Fate Chronicles with his family. So a guy just can't take and delete characters he's been diligently pumping through the same scheme for years. So luckily he's also held back by convention. As long as he sticks to the rules, that one won't touch his family, just need to delete the post. But Ted can also create a second account by simply deleting this one and starting over in a new character. He's already a fairly experienced player, so it costs him nothing to retrain from scratch and pump up the hero quickly. Would it really be necessary to discard all the fruits of the endeavors that the young man had put in for a full 10 years of his life? The guy wondered why he was the one who always had bad luck. His unique musket rifle, of which there are not more than 1,000 in the world. Amano Kyohei spent 3 whole years to get this item for the quest to defeat the 1,000 dead. A real challenge. Those are expensive at auction, but he didn't want to use a rifle that had already been used by someone before. So while he has that weapon, he can't erase the character. You have to at least give him a decent last fight. It's all the fruit of his years of labor. So Ted has to take the whole thing to its logical conclusion for himself. It was time to reveal the farewell content to the viewers. He wanted to show them the legendary Soul Seal in action. This is a powerful equipment enhancement that increases absolutely all weapon or armor characteristics by as much as 20%. The chances of successfully pumping rare gear are usually only 10%, but failure results in the complete destruction of the item. He wondered if it was worth trying his luck for the first time in such a long time. It's the best weapon the masters create. The description said that it was the 9th weapon that was forged by a master craftsman from the sacred flames of the Hell Gate of Heaven. The guy realized that success meant absolutely nothing to him at the moment in the current critical situation. He's going to have to erase that character anyway, so he's going to do everything he can to make it easier to abandon him. Ted said on the broadcast that since he hasn't done anything for the viewers so far, let me teach one last lesson. The guy had already mentally prepared himself to say goodbye to his invaluable 10 years of gaming experience and accomplishments. But here, the master smith to whom he had come for services was also very much surprised at what was happening and his intentions. The wizard was surprised to report that the enchantment had been successful, so he heartily congratulated the lucky traveler on the result. Ted couldn't believe it, and wondered with bewilderment if it had really succeeded. Was this some kind of mistake? Viewers started writing into the broadcast chat that he must have included some cheats there to guarantee the procedure's success. But the guy went to the master and asked to try using this enchantment again on the same weapon. In the back of his mind, he thought that he would rather this weapon broke, to leave everything without any hesitation or doubt. Tad opened his eyes and again heard the glad words of the traveler, the master congratulating him fully on his success. The guy was seriously perplexed as to where his perpetual failure had gone. So he screamed and demanded that the procedure be repeated again. And here it goes again quite successfully. He was screaming that this couldn't be happening. He just couldn't believe it. The master noted with admiration what a fortunate traveler he actually had today, who had stopped by his workshop for services. The young man wondered if luck really existed, but even so, he had had enough for today. He wanted to disappear. But then with tears of despair, I said to the master that, okay, let's try using the enchantment one more time then. With tears in his eyes, he begged the blacksmith to once again use that cursed spell to improve his weapons. What good is he going to get out of all this now, when he's going to have to completely erase his character forever anyway? The master frankly confessed that he had never in his life seen such an incredibly lucky man among all his clients. Smith thanked Tad, saying that because of him he had seen so many new and amazing things in his work today. Tad held his rifle in his hands, realizing it was a unique class item. 7 enchantments increased the stats by 30.5 times. The guy realized that there was no way he would be able to escape the pursuit of these 2 powerful guilds who would want to find him. But creating a weapon with 7 successful enchantments doesn't change anything important for him in this situation. Only it can be sold for a lot of money, but for what if it doesn't need finances in this virtual world? He spent 10 long years of his life, all of which were completely wasted and unsuccessful for him in the end. Played this character from his 20s to his 30s, hard to believe even by himself. And now, because of some arrogant mage, he has to start absolutely over with level 0 in starter gear. This agonizing feeling of emptiness cannot be filled with any money or anything else in this cruel world. The guy suddenly wondered what if he got an enchantment that could drastically change the situation, so he decided to end the broadcast. In his head, he knew it was okay if he failed, but no outsiders should know of his success. Ted asked the blacksmith to repeat the procedure again, and his entire shop glowed with an incredibly bright magical light all around him. The guy held a weapon that completely glowed with energy, and realized with a shock, 9 successful enchantments in a row. It's simply inconceivable how such a thing could even happen in this virtual world with its rigid rules of probability. Once the soul seal was applied, this weapon could not be transferred to other hands, so the largest guilds fought for possession. There are only 8 such items with 9 enchantments in the world, each worth billions of dollars at auction. No item enchanted 10 times simply doesn't even exist in the database of the entire game universe. The guy was so worried that his heart rate reached 200. A notification came in to pause and come back later. If his heart rate reaches 250 beats, the game will forcibly shut down for the safety of the system user's health. Tad thought he needed just the right level of strength to counter guilds. For each enchantment, the damage doubled. Even 9 times reinforcement wouldn't be enough to win. He needed at least 32 times more damage for an equal fight. Realizing that the character is far more valuable than any gold, so he should put in absolutely everything he has right now. The young man drank the berserk potion. For 10 minutes, his neural impulses would increase by 30% of the baseline value. The physical control of the character is weakened by 80%. The guy has only one thought in his head. He will definitely do what he has to do. So he was all burning with enthusiasm and demanded another weapon enhancement from the blacksmith at any cost to himself. Ted rudely ordered this master to just shut his mouth and do exactly as he was told, no questions asked. The guy literally went crazy with excitement, his eyes madly glowing a bright yellow color under the influence of the potion. Smith agreed and said, okay, in that case just go ahead. He didn't mind trying again. The master struck his magic hammer on the anvil, and the 10th weapon enchantment in the history of the game began. It was hard to believe it could be successful, It would be the world's first weapon with the 10th enchantment. And then there was indeed an incredible success again. The 10th time in a row the weapon was successfully improved to the limit. Suddenly a strange creature appeared and hugged the guy, and said that they had finally met. The Seeker had found it, and it had found him. Ted realized that after the 10th enchantment, which in itself is an incredibly rare event, the player becomes a legend, but there was more. A demon named Brookshan appeared to him and offered to make a blood contract, an opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime to everyone. The boy immediately pushed that demon's paw away from him, not wanting to be distracted from the important process of improving his weapon. Tad shouted at the creature not to dare tug at him while he was busy glamorizing, and ordered it away into the mist. The demon was outraged at this treatment, and asked how this ignorant man dared to even speak to him like that in such a manner. The creature decided to lean over to the guy, and try to talk to him at least somewhat calmly about the important contract offer. This top-ranked demon possessed an impressive 700th level of strength, and could offer incredible opportunities for growth. Ted was completely uninterested in the fact that the Monster Lord, the king of wild beasts, who also wanted to make a contract, had come to him. The highest-ranked demons with an 800th level also appeared, but the guy was distracted and paid no attention to them. He only had one obsessive thought in his mind. He wants to continue enchanting weapons, having already reached level 14. At the 15th level of improvement, a powerful guardian of the world tree came to him, offering his ancient knowledge and power. The guy wasn't even paying attention to what was going on around him. His record jammed at the mere thought of enchanting weapons. At the 16th level, the strongest warrior who had once dethroned an entire emperor with one hand came to him. A silver dragon appeared on the 17th, but the guy didn't stop and kept asking the master to enchant the weapon further. At level 18, the Lord of the Seas came in, but that would certainly be the last time the guy would be able to improve his rifle. Tad shouted to the master that another enchantment was needed, begging the blacksmith not to dwell on the result now. The blacksmith obediently obeyed his obsessed customer, and warned that this would indeed be the last possible weapon enchantment. And then, at the last stage, his precious weapon suddenly broke under the blows of the magic hammer on the anvil. Ted stared at the wreckage and couldn't believe his eyes that his perfect weapon had shattered into pieces. There was only one thought in his mind. What had he done? After all, he had wanted this from the beginning. But what was he carrying? The lad rushed to the master in desperation and begged for the return of his 18 enchantments that had been lost along with the weapon. He was on his knees begging the blacksmith to somehow return his unique weapon that he had spent so much time and effort on. The blacksmith gratefully told the traveler that he was able to push his boundaries as a creator and reach the pinnacle of his ancient craft. The master added that it was all thanks to Ted. He is the truest favorite of capricious fortune among all the players. Tad only got angry at those words and rudely replied that the man was talking bullshit, a freak, and didn't even dare be happy about it. With tears in his eyes, the lad thought that his precious weapon was broken. Now what was left for him to do next? The god of smiths from the myths, the legendary master smith Brahman himself, suddenly materialized before him. Through the awakening, this master explained that he had gained a whole new supernatural ability for his work. One of them is to repair any wrecked gear with your bare hands, using the divine power of creation. Even though he is a master, he can't use that power whenever he wants. It's against the laws to repair something completely destroyed. Such mending is against the laws of nature and leads to a place where the way is known only to Almighty God alone. But he will only be able to perform such an incredible miracle once or at most twice in his long life. The 19th enchantment was successful, so you may accept his sincere thanks for the unique opportunity. Tad opened his weapon status window and looked at the readouts, wondering if he was awake now. Are these really the characteristics of his weapon? How could it even be that such a strong weapon in his hands? Just crazy. His attack and defeat damage had been increased by as much as 30 times of the original stats. This is 3 times stronger than the unique top-class missiles that were considered the limit of power in the game. Not to mention the incredible 90% defense against all kinds of skills and magical attacks of opponents in combat. With tears in his eyes, he realized that sooner or later he was bound to get lucky in his hard gambling life. With such a powerful thing, he would single-handedly destroy not just one guild, but the 2 largest guilds at once. Moreover, maybe he will even fulfill his cherished dream and get the very first rank in the world ranking. But then suddenly the god Smith began to glow with a very bright yellow light, and the guy didn't realize what was going on around him. Right in the sky above them, a strange fiery eye of enormous size appeared, blazing with divine flames. I turned to the boy and introduced himself. He is Shamshan, the mighty liberator of the sun from ancient legends. This liberator explained that he must enter the hero's vessel before he can make a contract with the one who summoned him. Tad asked in a panic to wait and explain at least something about what any of this going on meant to him at all. Entering his vessel forcibly or something, or how exactly that was supposed to happen, he understood absolutely nothing. The boy asked the blacksmith to help him understand the situation, but he only smiled and wished him luck in the challenge. Tad thought with despair, what a damned NPS. This is absolutely not what he wanted out of this encounter. But the fiery eye began to suck him in harder and harder, giving him no way to resist this force. He didn't realize what a strange place he was in, as if it were some vast space with twinkling stars. The guy got a new quest trial of Shamshan. You need to free the sun and summon the border of paradise, doing everything possible to get approval. Tad, seeing the terms, wondered if he'd get the Liberator's approval. Did that mean he could use his weapon? There was only one thought in my head. Free cheese, apparently, comes only in a dangerous mousetrap. Also, this guy realized that there was simply no way back from this strange dimension for him. So now that he's gotten this far in his experiments, must live by the all-or-nothing principle. So the lad resolutely agreed to accept this extremely challenging and dangerous quest from a powerful being. Ted found himself in a strange place, surrounded by what at first appeared to be white clouds all around. He had never previously seen so much open space in a virtual reality game or anywhere else. But then the hero realized with horror that the entire surface consisted not of clouds, but of countless corpses of monsters. This is the so-called Tomb of Paradise, the sacred place where Shamshan once found the legendary six-pointed star. Ted saw himself in front of him and thought with bewilderment, is it really him? Even the gear is absolutely identical. This second version of the guy said that those who are willing to fight for the six-pointed star must rise from the depths to the heights. Ted realized he had absolutely no idea what his copy was saying. He just needed to beat it. He thought, okay, glad it wasn't as bad as it seemed before. But at those thoughts, the unexpected happened. His copy pulled out a musket and began aiming with professional accuracy right at him. The guy was shocked, as he absolutely did not expect such a fast and aggressive development around him. His copy looked at him with its empty red eyes, devoid of any humanity or emotion. A thought echoed in the creature's mind, wondering if he could withstand the blows of his doppelganger in battle. Will the hero be able to challenge essentially himself to prevail and pass this test to the end? Tad realized that this movement that had just occurred, one of his own skill at moving through space. 1,000 steps, a passive skill that increases the range of the first strike. So the copy has not only looks, but also abilities. But since the enemy does not want to just give him this powerful weapon, then you have to get it by force in battle. The guy decided to use the skills 5-shot and volcano trap plug to defeat the copy. He was extremely determined to obtain this priceless gift from the heavens themselves at any cost. So Tad addressed himself during the battle and stated that he would show the difference between the clone and the original. He took aim with his class weapon, but his doppelganger opponent was also preparing for a decisive attack. Several fiery beams erupted from the hero's hands, rushing towards the target at an incredible speed. After the attacks collided, a rather powerful explosion occurred, shaking the entire space of the Tomb of Heaven. The guy looked hopefully at the blast site and thought, if only his opponent would finally die from those blows. But it turned out that his copy had moved right behind him, using the Shadow Trace skill for a surprise attack. Ted realized that this was the truest shadow fight ever. They had exactly the same skills and abilities. Still, you can't lose the initiative in a battle like this, especially when the stakes are so high. Especially when fighting your copy, the most important thing is to always take and hold the initiative in battle. The guy looked at his other self, from which emanated an eerie red energy of destruction and death. The copy stood alert, pondering what the original might do in the next moment of battle. Just then, the doppelganger turned back around, hearing some suspicious sound behind his back. Ted quickly moved to the rear, and with his fire beams decided to kill the copy in one powerful blow. After the attack, he decided to immediately hide in the shadows so no one could see him and counterattack. The copy understood the maneuver, and mockingly stated that it wasn't an original trick at all, and he thought it would help. The doppelganger promised to get the hero anyway and kill him 100% despite all the tricks. Therefore, the opponent shot out, deciding to use his secret trick with a high-level magic cannon. The copy itself stated that it was well aware of all the skills and current power level of its original. The doppelganger asked if Tad was sure he could even survive this mortal combat to the end. Ted, continuing to attack with his powerful blows, said that this opponent had been pretty lucky so far. But the creature replied that the hero was making him very angry, so he forced him to end the fight with one decisive shot. The original decided not to listen to the threats, and continued to press his copy, unleashing a large number of blows at once. Suddenly, the guy received a powerful retaliatory blow, but he still managed to dodge it at the last moment. Ted didn't understand what was happening to him. Something about the copy's behavior was very much surprising and alarming. Literally in front of him, he could see his copy aiming the cannon, and it seemed like it was over. But then the copy saw a fire that suddenly appeared right in front of his eyes out of nowhere. This fire not only hit in front of his eyes, but also engulfed the entirety of his dark cloak in flames. Copia thought with wonder. Was this all a clever trap? Had he lured him here on purpose? The doppelganger pondered whether the original intended this to put him at a disadvantage to attack. Copia recognized that it was good enough, but still not enough to definitively defeat him. So, taking aim, he asked where you would hide if the guy destroyed all his possible hiding places around him. The enemy began a veritable bombardment from his cannon to secure a decisive victory once and for all. The doppelganger said mockingly, "Go ahead and run and hide, but he just can't escape my attacks." Copia promised that this time was definitely over, and he wouldn't fall for any more tricks. The enemy approached the original again, pointed his powerful cannon, and was ready to fire the final shot. How suddenly again he didn't realize what had happened. Was it again some clever trap from the original? Ted, looking at this fake copy, realized that he only needed just one moment to win. It wasn't a skill, but a feint that he had developed based only on his physical abilities. The character named this technique blind spot vision, the ability to hide in an enemy's blind spots. The copy admitted with a smile that he understood. All this time, the original had been deliberately hiding its true location. Ted did this so that the opponent was guaranteed to open himself up to a shot from his blind spot. But then something terrible happened. The guy did get hit, and part of his body just disappeared. Copia recognized with a smile that he would make an excellent vessel for the Liberator's great power. So the doppelganger announced that he, the Liberator of the Sun, was making a contract. The guy was in real shock. When Ted woke up, the blacksmith asked him how he felt after this incredible ordeal. Ted saw that he had passed the test, so the reward was a contract with the Liberator of the Sun and a weapon with 19 enchantments. With tears in his eyes, the guy acknowledged the fact that he seemed to have spent all the luck he had saved up all his life. According to the contract, a rebirth would be activated. The guy didn't understand what that even meant for him. His eyes widened with shock. He thought with horror that such a thing simply couldn't happen in reality. Ted was extremely unhappy about having to be reborn because they had not previously agreed on this at all. But the thing is, all of the guy's skills and titles just plain disappear. Everything he diligently pumped up, all 10 years of his life would be gone. He tried to stop, but the Liberator of the Sun would not listen to his pleas. The hero tried to interrupt this recovery process, but he could do nothing against the deity's will. The guy received the title of Lord of the Six-Pointed Star. The rebirth process was finally completed by the system. After being reborn, he had absolutely nothing left. Completely naked, he stared at the status window. All this was watched by the blacksmith, who asked in amazement what had happened to him and where all his clothes had gone. The user's heart rate exceeded 250 beats per minute, so he was disconnected from the server to preserve his health. The blacksmith thought the traveler must have returned to his world. He wanted to say thank you for his newfound enlightenment. The master didn't know how soon, but he believed that sooner or later they would surely meet again somewhere. Now he himself can start traveling and stop being just a stationary character from the game. The blacksmith thought that although a miracle had been performed, his knowledge was really still very, very little. But turning mentally to Ted, he promised to wait patiently for the day when they would meet again. As such a unique player he had never seen among the visitors in his real life. To the one who performed 19 miracles in a row, the master wished that good fortune would always accompany him on his journey. It had been a full 3 years since those events. An important meeting was taking place in a gaming company. In a conference room, there was a discussion about enchanting a unique weapon. No one had ever observed such an enhancement. Whoever succeeds in such a thing is assured of glory. Discuss the likelihood of getting 10 weapon enchantments in 15 levels. The likelihood is extremely high. If this happens, any new content will be passed with an overly high difficulty for regular players. So you need to find heroes who can enchant weapons for 19 levels. You think it's possible to be that happy? Ted managed to bring this to life beautifully, which is really hard to believe even for himself. But he didn't think it wasn't all a dream. He had just lost everything in the last 10 years. Okay, still a level. But gone were all his skills and titles he had worked so hard to achieve over the years. But he still has his enchanted weapon of level 19. With it, he can probably pump again. The guy thought he now had the most powerful weapon in the game in his hands, so it was no longer a problem for him. Walking out of his room, Ted thought he should do that first. Have a proper meal after a long game. Suddenly, the hero noticed something strange at the front door of his apartment, which caught his attention. In the doorway, the young man found a yellow envelope that was directly conspicuous by its brightness. The guy saw that there was some paperwork there. It's quite possible that they just got the wrong delivery address, but decided to still unpack the email and read the contents in more detail for understanding. After the player started reading, his face turned red, and there was a very real indignation at what was happening. Ted thought with indignation, what is this even about? He was extremely unhappy with what he had just read. Alibaba's ranker Manhwa reported to the master that by his decree, Ted's character had been successfully removed from the game. The foreman asked his subordinate how everything went, and if everything was completed smoothly with no problems. The warlock replied that the tracking spell had come off. It wasn't just removed. The target no longer existed. But there is one but, as this guy seems to know that they are taming the bosses for their own purposes. Manhwa put memory oblivion on him, but I'm not sure if that does anything to solve the problem. The master told this warlock not to be afraid and not to worry so much about it. What's the point of thinking about it if he tells someone who will believe him, Miss Huang Jiwi said. The girl confidently stated that their guild had never intentionally harmed anyone. They wouldn't interfere there without a good reason to do so. The merchant ships were destroyed by a three-headed sea dragon that simply got in their way during a routine voyage along the sea trade routes. And since there were no high-level players on the ship to defend, so everyone who attacked the monster simply died in an unequal battle with the boss. Huang Jiwi explained that this is just a coincidence that happens in the game absolutely every day with many other players around the world. There is absolutely no concrete evidence of their involvement in this incident, and no one will be able to prove anything against them in a court of law. As she left the room, the girl inquired of her subordinate about something that was troubling him after all. What exactly was troubling him right now? Manhwa honestly replied to his mistress that it seems that incident with the snake still gives him no rest and torments his conscience. Huang Jiwi recalled that the rules of the game had recently been drastically revised, and it was now much harder for killer players to act with impunity. But their guild was able to legitimately destroy his character on two different fronts at once, using every possible loophole in the rules system. Amano Kyohei was at home thinking indignantly about his account being frozen because of some lawsuit. How dare they even sue him? Violating players' rights, they say. For one thing, switching bosses between locations is really an illegal practice under the game's rules. But who in their right mind would go complain to the administration about something like this? What are they even thinking? Filing such lawsuits against major guilds. But the guy saw that the court date hasn't been officially set yet, so their goal is clearly not to win this trial. They want to make him bankrupt through legal fees so he will starve to death with no means to live and play. Maybe we should turn over all this compromising material to Rudiza TV representatives and the game developers to investigate their activities. But no, they're going to put the whistleblower in danger again and cut all the strings behind the scenes, and there's no real use for it. So while they know what enchantments he has on his weapons, after the rebirth, all the curses were removed from him. So they're pretty sure the character is removed. But if they want a war, then in that case he will give them a real war without rules and restrictions, despite all their problems. Ted was as serious as possible, and gathered all the papers that came in the mail to study their claims and find ways to fight back. The guy loaded into the game and started thinking about what he would need to do first to regain his footing. He realized that the first thing to do was to use the teddy bear disguise mask to hide his identity from the guild stalkers. Ted decided not to change his new character's name and got a randomly enchanted item, though he expected it to break on the first try. He had to sell all his epic items and rare gear to live on anything and buy basic survival items. On the ground, he saw Brahman's hammer, lifted it up and wondered what the smith god had forgotten this instrument in his workshop after their meeting. The guy realized that this character got the masterclass because of him. Maybe he should stop by again when he's pumped up in levels a bit. Suddenly, Tad heard some strange, suspicious sound coming from the thick bushes not far from his location in the woods. He drew his weapon and tensed up, wondering who was lurking there, but it turned out to be just a horned rabbit of the very first level. The guy thought with relief, "Okay, well, let's check out my enchanted weapon then. That's about to do real wonders in battle." But here's the trouble. The weapon doesn't affect the low-level character's damage, so although he hit the rabbit quickly, he didn't kill it. More accurately, Ted thought he had killed the monster, but really he had just put a small bump on its head from a low blow. The young man was bewildered, thinking that they were kidding. Now he couldn't even kill a level 1 monster with one powerful strike of his weapon. The guy pondered that he had such a cool, high-class enchanted weapon. Then what could have caused such a damage problem? Ted saw that the growth rate was 0 and 1%, meaning that he would become much stronger if he methodically increased his base level. The player understood from the description that the skill sphere is a unique item that allows the use of skills that cannot be acquired through normal means. And each skill in the sphere can be gradually improved to the maximum. In other words, it allows you to pump absolutely any skill to the ultimate level. Ted thought that with such incredible strength, he would not only enter the top of society, but he would also wipe this Chinese guild in the dirt, rising to the top of the rankings. The hero began to laugh wickedly with anticipation of revenge, and this poor level 1 monster began to stealthily and cautiously run away from him. The guy reasoned that before choosing his main profession and specialization, he clearly needed to get a good bump in levels for efficiency. So the guy headed to the Deep Eagle Forest location with a recommended level 10 or higher for safe passage and experience. Some random players were chatting amongst themselves about battle tactics, one asking the tank to take aggro and distract this thing on himself. The tank replied that he had seen the monster melt the player with a single blow. The warlock himself, being a ranged mage, would have dealt with the threat better. The warlock countered that he had already expended all of his magical energy in the previous fights, and could now only protect his ally with basic spells. As the two of them ran forward towards the target, they suddenly saw another player, who was slowly disintegrating into glowing pixels after dying. The tank replied to his comrades with despair that the dead player was from their group. What should they do now in such a critical situation? And his comrade also just picked up and disappeared without a trace. The only thing left after the character's death was his magic hat on the ground. This guy was in shock, and thought he had to get out of here as soon as possible, while there was still some chance to save himself. But at these thoughts, suddenly Ted was hit directly in the back by a great rush of air from the flapping wings of an unknown creature. The guy didn't realize what was going on around him, looking around and trying to figure out the source of this sudden attack on him. In the reflection of his weapon, the young man saw the silhouette of a huge flying monster bird circling the forest in search of prey. This creature was more like a giant eagle that was reaching out with its sharp talons to kill this lonely fellow. The Deep Eagle Forest seemed like a peaceful and tranquil enough place, but there was a greedy killer of all living things hunting there right now. This ferocious eagle was capable of tearing apart any careless traveler in just a couple of seconds with its powerful claws. Just as suddenly, a rather powerful beam of energy shot past him, aimed straight at the flying raptor. Tad took aim from the bushes, and thought that this way he could quickly get back to high level and regain his strength, since the current level is only 7th level, which is quite low, especially when compared to his previous 600th level of strength. The guy thought that just today his weapon's damage level had already passed 300 thanks to the enchantments. Ted heard some suspicious shouting from the other players, which he clearly didn't like and caused concern for their safety. After studying the situation a bit, the young man saw smoke rising straight up from the thick bushes not far from the battle site. The guy was trying to figure out what could be so dangerous going on there, and whether he should interfere in the ongoing conflict. But Tad knew that the main highlight of this location was the White Eagle, the legendary boss of the entire region. It is a huge predator that, as it flies across the sky, covers the entire space below it with its dark shadow. Ted realized that the monster attacked everyone indiscriminately, whether it was regular NPCs or players, even when fed up, would stalk the victim. The eagle itself doesn't have much health compared to other bosses of the same level in the game, but the creature's aggressiveness gives it quite a bit of power in combat against unprepared opponents. It is also still distinguished by its wild aggression and incredible flight speed, which makes it almost elusive. This is the ultimate hemorrhoid for newbies, how much he, as a newbie, has had to suffer with such an opponent in the past. Back in the day, this monster got so bad for Ted that the guy used real money to get even by buying better gear. But now Tad held his cool gun in his hands, and all he could talk about was that it was finally time for payback. When this eagle destroys innocent newcomers, it is a moment of just retribution for all past wrongs and humiliations. Orlin saw the guy down in the bushes and let out a deafening scream, alerting all the forest dwellers around him to the attack. Ted fired a powerful yellow beam from his enchanted cannon, directing the energy directly at the bird of prey flying above him. This blow easily pierced the mighty creature's wing, leaving a gaping hole in it and dealing critical damage to the monster. The wounded bird turned around to see who so brazenly dared to touch her with his pathetic attacks in her domain. It's much harder for Eagle to keep his balance in the air now. He's practically learned how to fly because of his damaged wing. The raptor began to swiftly fly straight down with its sharp beak thrust forward, preparing for a deadly attack on its offender. Ted continued to methodically deal damage to the bird with his powerful cannon, preventing it from coming within a dangerous distance. The guy was firing his mega northern beams left and right to accurately hit the dodging bird. He managed to hit. The eagle's wing began to burn, the feathers covered in real flames from the magical effects of the beam. The aggressive creature began to land to grasp the thick log with its powerful paws and use it as a weapon. With its sharp claws, the predator clawed deeply into this tree, trying to tear it off the ground for a throw. The eagle lifted the log, wondering what cunning plan this clever and dangerous bird had for a counterattack. Tad clearly wasn't going to let her realize the plan, as he shot straight for her paws, the log just falling out of her claws. But not only did the monster lose a log, this wild bird lost another claw from an accurate hit. Guy hits another of the eagle's other wings, dealing additional damage and denying it the ability to maneuver effectively. The predator starts getting hit more and more. It's hard to believe this is even possible against this boss. This proud creature opened its beak and could not believe it, wondering if an ignominious end was coming for it. The Orlan simply plummeted rapidly downward, realizing it could no longer get airborne due to critical damage. Ted, as he approached his defeated foe, thought of what an incredible thrill it would be to finally get revenge on an old foe. Because of being in an ambush, the stealth level also went up, giving extra experience bonuses for kills. So the hero decided to stretch the pleasure of the long-awaited revenge of this damned monster from the past a little bit. As he finished the bird with a final shot, Ted heard the horrible screams of death echoing throughout the forest. The guy looked at the status window and saw that he had gotten 2 eagle feathers. This would recoup the cost of the ammo spent on the bird. Looking at his updated stats, he was pleased that the experience norm for the day had been fully met. As he climbed to the next level and looked around, Tad realized how long it had been since he had seen these familiar places. It was the Musketeer Academy he had once joined, and Terrace, the head of the academy, had offered to be his apprentice. But then the guy decided to simply refuse such a tempting offer, preferring the path of a single player. But after all, it's never too late to change your mind and change your mind. So now Ted wants to come here and try again. When the massive door of the academy opened, the lad introduced himself to the guard, saying that he had come on important business with the master. Raiden, the strongest musketeer specialist, appeared before him, and Tad realized that specialist was the 3rd branch of the musketeer class, available from level 500. The man coldly informed that he was the current head of the academy, but they were currently not accepting new students into their ranks. So he politely advised him to go to another academy where he could get help learning the art of musketeering. Ted was shocked. Wasn't this academy run by Master Shiboli? He was the one who had offered to be his apprentice a few years ago. Why was the academy master changed so abruptly? What could have happened here during his time away from the game? The boy explained that he was a disciple of this master, or rather a candidate for discipleship, and asked him to tell him what had happened to him. When Raiden heard this, he became very angry, his eyes beginning to glow frighteningly with a cold blue light of rage. Tad explained that Master Shiboli had offered him to become an apprentice, but due to circumstances at the time, he could not accept the offer. But they remained on friendly terms after the rejection. At those words, Raiden just grabbed the guy by his clothes. The master called him a scoundrel and asked him what he was doing here, if he had decided to torment him with his fictions. The guy didn't understand why there was such aggression all of a sudden. He hadn't said anything bad and was only telling the truth. Raiden said angrily, "What kind of friendship are we talking about since the guy somehow doesn't know that the gentleman disappeared years ago?" Ted, on hearing this terrible news, was horrified to think whether Master Shiboli had really gone missing in the game. Raiden threateningly stated that if he was sent by the enemy special forces, then let him fuck off now or he would be destroyed. The master promised that if the boy ever touched his master's name again, he would rip out his filthy lying tongue. Ted realized he was telling the perfect truth about the past. Everything he'd told, he hadn't made anything up to deceive. He didn't particularly value connections from the past, but he certainly didn't deserve to be treated so unfairly and rudely. So the guy uttered one code word that only the master's close disciples knew: Exam 40. Raiden wasn't quite sure what he was talking about, so he questioned suspiciously what the guy meant by those words. Tad explained that it indicated that Raiden was Shiboli's junior fellow at that academy, because it was. 40, after all, is still held at this academy, to which the master replied that it seems that the lad had indeed studied here. Ted just offered to try to test him with an exam, and then they could talk quietly about the past and present. Exam 40 was created by Master Shiboli out of boredom. This exam is only given at this academy for the musketeer class. 10 copper coins, 10 bullets, 10 seconds of time to hit from a distance of 10 meters. The essence of the exam has not changed over the years. Raiden replied to the guy that yes, it seems the guy did study here, but he can't believe the Lord offered him an apprenticeship. Ted replied that, as he had said, he could back up his words with actions and in turn get his well-deserved class. The master said that he would then go to prepare the examination ground, let him wait for a while and come back after a while. Tad realized the problem was Shiboli's absence, but was glad for the opportunity. Each academy giving different skills at graduation. For example, here you can get a unique skill called 1000 Steps, which is not available anywhere else in the game. Because of the nature of the class, requiring high mobility at range, this is simply the most necessary skill to play effectively. He needs this passive ability and the appropriate class to comfortably further pump and gain this skill. The boy suddenly saw the familiar armorer Ronaro in the corridors of the academy, and was very surprised by the encounter. Ted decided to greet that man and said that it had been a long time since they had seen each other in game or reality. But the armorer did not say hello back to him in any way, but simply walked past silently, ignoring his attempts at communication. Ted wondered why Ronaro was reacting this way. He'd worked for Shiboli for years. How could he not know? But realized it was about the bear mask. They came to a range that looked badly battered by time, so the guy thought maybe the class award had changed too. The hero took a step forward, thinking, wondering what had happened to the academy during his absence. Where did the legendary Master Shiboli really go? Whether he disappeared forever, or just went to other lands. Raiden explained that a musket from the armory would be provided for a fair examination and repeated the rules of the test for clarity. If from this spot he hits 10 coins in 10 seconds from a distance of 10 meters, the exam will be counted as passed. The master added that he could begin when he was fully prepared for the challenge and focused on the goal. The boy took the offered weapon and began to aim, but he strongly disliked something about the musket. Ted realized that there was obvious trouble with the scope. It was obviously standing unevenly and severely off-center. Substandard weapons, that's part of the exam. But how can you put something so defective in your hands for a serious test? So suddenly the lad decided to turn to that well-known armorer Ronaro for an explanation. But Tad realized that the scoundrel had purposely given him such a broken musket to fail the exam. Raiden asked him what happened. He was bragging about passing this exam easily. What is happening to him now? But the guy replied that before he started the challenge, he wanted to clarify something important for everyone present. Tad raised a long musket and said he was about to demonstrate something interesting to them about accuracy in shooting. He shot so that he hit the gunsmith's hood exactly. The man stood in complete shock at the surprise. That poor man immediately almost fell to the ground from the shock he had just experienced. The master was outraged at such behavior within the walls of the academy. How could a guy afford to shoot at people? But then Raiden thought about that for a second, because Thad was aiming straight for that gunner's head. To miss the target at that distance, this musket is indeed seriously defective and unusable. Raiden apologized and promised to replace the weapon right away, but asked not to do it again in the future. But then the wizard suddenly realized, he thought, that it was 1.5 meters from the musket to the gunsmith's head. If you take into account the shooter's position and the error of the sight to the left by 15 centimeters, to hit the target accurately, it is enough to aim to the right and lower. So Ted proceeded to do the exam and began methodically shooting at those gold coins on the target. The master looked at it and couldn't believe how the guy was hitting coins even with such a knocked-down scope. And so exactly 10 seconds of the allotted time passed. The exam was completed on time according to all the rules. The guy turned to those watching and asked if they appreciated his shooting skills and weapons mastery. Raiden, being both surprised and frightened by such skill, replied that of course the exam was passed. But it's absolutely not just about shooting small targets so incredibly accurately from long range. The recharge time of the magic drivers inside the musket is exactly 1 second, so one wrong move means failure. And Ted recognized all of this and calculated everything, so that each hit would clearly reach the target at the right moment. Is this guy really a level 10 rookie who doesn't even have any combat class yet? The master recognized that Tad clearly had talent. No wonder their master Shiboli had been so interested in him in the past. Raiden said he'd get everything ready for the class change right away, so the guy could wait a bit for the procedure. Tad replied that he was counting on him, but in the back of his mind he was worried because this test was too close to failure. The last coin rippled in the wind, and he barely managed to snag it at the very last moment of the allotted time. The guy thought about what the hell the shame would be if he failed the exam after deciding to take it with such pathos. There was only one thought going through my mind. That damn gunsmith had almost ruined all plans with his sneaky prank. Now Tad realized that there was one more important thing left to do. He needed to deal with this insolent gunsmith once and for all. He turned to Ronaro and demanded an explanation as to how he dared and why he pretended not to remember him. The gunsmith slipped him this horrible knockdown scope that almost derailed his entire exam and future plans. Ronaro bitterly replied that he hated Tad, since he was the reason their favorite Master Shiboli had disappeared from the academy. The gunsmith explained that the academy was on the verge of closing because it hadn't produced any famous adventurers in a long time. So Shiboli was eager to get Tad as an apprentice. But the guy brutally refused the master and he just left them. Shiboli said he didn't want to be a teacher anymore and disappeared. Tad, hearing this explanation, asked if this was a sufficient reason to give him a broken musket for examination, to which he got the answer that the gunsmith himself knew nothing would stop the guy from turning himself in. But he just couldn't sit idly by. Ronaro added that Tad was his master's only hope, and had treated him so cruelly in the past. The boy realized that really, given all that Shiboli had done for him, understood perfectly well why the armorer was angry and resentful. But he was only interested in game rankings at the time, not in additional training from some NPC master. The gunsmith said he hoped Tad wouldn't leave the academy again after taking the class and handed him the box. The guy was clearly surprised to receive some unknown object from this still angry man. Ronaro explained that before he left the academy, the master had given him this, and told him to give the gift to the kid if he stopped by. Tad realized that even though the armorer was angry, he wanted to do his master's bidding. Even though it was an NPS, there were emotions embedded in it. Ronaro asked once again that he be forgiven, and if Tad met the master, to convey the armorer's wish that the master return to the academy. This gunsmith apologized and admitted that he screwed up his own actions, so now he will go away in peace. The boy realized that now it was time to unwrap this mysterious gift and find out what might lie in it. One wonders what gift, even in theory, the legendary Master Shiboli could have left him before his disappearance. Ted began to carefully open the box, and small red crystals appeared around it, shimmering with magical light. Upon opening it completely, the entire contents began to glow, and the guy couldn't believe his eyes from surprise. There was such a bright glow coming from the box that it was hard to even look at it directly. Ted realized with delight, no way, this is a true skill sphere, the rarest artifact in the game. This is a rank D single skill realm that is extremely rare and valued very highly among players. Tad realized how very lucky he was. This was indeed a very valuable gift he had received from the master. The single skill sphere contains those abilities that are not found in the standard character enhancement and progression branches. Thanks to his title as the Lord of the Six-Pointed Star, even the weakest skills can be made much stronger than usual. So a single skill combined with a six-pointed star can be developed in ways never before seen in the game. This is exactly what is needed for the future of the strongest character like him, the guy said with a grateful smile. A big thank you to Master Shiboli, he would definitely activate this skill realm. And then Tad saw that he had gotten the skill sphere of goblin summoning, and was very much surprised by it. He thought seriously, summoning goblins. They're the weakest monsters after all. Maybe there's something else here besides the orb. The guy started to shake the box hoping something would fall out of it. And then a folded letter fell to the floor. He began to read the message. It said foolish if he seriously believed that he could even in theory leave something of value behind. Consider it my little revenge for him leaving the academy so brazenly. If you have a complaint, I'm waiting in the city of Ash Sky. When the lad read it all the way through, he understood perfectly well what was the point, and what a joke the master had played on him. Ted was downright angry, as he knew Master Shiboli could be quite tricky and liked to tease his students. But this is a whole other level of trolling by the guy. Such an elaborate joke he didn't expect from him at all. The guy was now on a plains location with a recommended level of 20 or higher for safe passage. He fought green monster creatures that looked like real orcs from fantasy works and legends. There were also other characters fighting nearby. The girl rebuked her comrade, telling him to just hold those monsters back. The girl added that he had no idea how many times today she had already managed to heal him from his injuries. And then they saw that someone had killed the monster from afar. They wondered if there was some sniper hiding here. Players were trying to discern who was actually lurking in the ambush, and from where he was firing accurately. Ted in the bushes had already gotten his 59th level, pondering how long he had been sitting here. The hero was certainly glad that he could pump quickly, but this task seemed incredibly boring and monotonous to him. The guy has now gotten the Musketeer class and his long-awaited passive skill, 1,000 steps for mobility. Raiden told the master that the man was now one of them, a musketeer at their academy, and had become the truest brother to them. Tad replied that he just wanted to get the class and go about his business. So now it was time for him to get out of here. Ted understood that these plains, a location for low to medium levels, a place to gain experience quickly, but why help the academy? Raiden said that recently complaints of a strange moving black cloud started coming in from people from these plains. So any information regarding this mysterious cloud that Ted can get would be very helpful to them. Ted realized that a quest had popped up for him, as he was being asked to investigate a strange phenomenon on these plains. The guy made a condition. They have to introduce him to the Thieves clan, as he wants to create a hybrid clan of thieves and musketeers. Thieves and similar classes don't have their own academy, so it's hard to learn from them. But it will definitely come in handy in the future. The master replied that in principle it was not that difficult. He would contact the clan, so it was a deal, assignment accepted. Ted was very much pissed at Shiboli, but had no idea what this city of Ash Sky was or where to find it. Perhaps in the course of completing a chain of these quests, he can find him and meet the master. Meanwhile, taking aim at one green monster, he prepared for another shot from his musket. But here, the guy didn't have time to shoot, as someone killed the orc faster in close combat with a sword or dagger. Ted thought about the fact that this wasn't the first time this had happened. Who were these players who were constantly preventing him from farming experience on monsters? And also the guy noticed that there's a camera walking around with them broadcasting. Most likely some popular streamer with his team for content. And he himself had to stop his streamings because of all the threats and lawsuits he was receiving at his address from powerful guilds. Even now, he thought, he needed to remain calm and not take out his accumulated anger and frustration on these innocent players. Ted realized that he would gain nothing from killing random players, and would only ruin his reputation. It was left to kill the last monster to achieve the goal. Here his 60th level would already be in his pocket. And then the guy realized that he could see absolutely nothing in the scope of his powerful weapon. He was perplexed as to what had happened, and where the green monster he was just about to ambush had suddenly disappeared to. And the guy saw a huge white creature that looked like an inflatable cloud, which completely blocked the entire view and the way to the target. Ted wondered what kind of weird inflatable doll it was. But why exactly now, with a streamer around, would someone decide to use such nonsense? It might actually be easier to kill them all so they don't get in the way of farming, but no. He's still above such low acts. Right now, all that really mattered to him was to get his cherished level 60 as soon as possible and move on with the plan. After that, there were even more of these strange dolls around, and the guy seriously thought he'd finally changed his mind about being peaceful, since there seems to be a whole line of these knuckleheads lined up here, specifically designed to get the most trouble and inconvenience out of him. And here are these streamers who are live streaming to their audience, happily saying, "Thank you for donating," thanks to their subscribers. While inside these huge inflatable dolls, they promise the audience to give this mysterious sniper a real legal bath through the administration. But after those words, one of the dolls seems to instantly explode into small pieces, turning it into a scattering of glowing pixels. All of the streamer's other comrades were chatting amongst themselves in a panic about what it was that had happened to their friend and why he was suddenly bursting violently. They assumed that they shouldn't have taken on unknown monsters, so that's why he died, after which the other dolls started exploding as well. The streamers looked around for a threat and realized that something serious was going on here. A sniper was lurking nearby, and they needed to run away immediately. But where to run in this open area, where they can all be seen as if they were in the palm of your hand, so you need to leave these planes as quickly as possible. Ted got his 65th level for destroying streamers and their crew, but also earned a crime index of 700 points for killing players. Tad rejoiced at how satisfying it felt to finally interrupt those pesky insects that were interfering with his quiet experience farming on the plains. Their level seems to have been around 150, so the penalty for dying in PvP, a ban for a full week from the game without being able to enter. An offense index of only 700 points isn't really that serious a number for an experienced player of this caliber. But the hero received notification that long concentrated vision for accurate shots had formed a useful new skill sight. The young man realized that this was a very useful ability, especially for a class representative who always fights long range from cover. Therefore, having activated this new skill, the player was insanely happy and said to himself, "Well then, let's continue the exciting hunt." It's a real madness to shoot at everyone, without distinguishing between players and monsters. The main thing is to get experience at any cost. The guy thought. He never would have thought that this status from constant shooting could increase his overall damage from attacks. But the hero does not care. The most important thing is that experience points are constantly falling straight into his pocket, bringing closer to the cherished goal. And then suddenly a game window with some message popped up in front of the young man. The guy thought, what is this even happening? At that moment elsewhere, the ringleader slammed his fist on the table and shouted, which meant the entire group from Sector 1 had been killed. The subordinate characters humbly apologized and begged their master's forgiveness for failing an important mission in the game. The master angrily asked if no one even knew who killed the team. How come absolutely no one could see the enemy? The players replied that it happened too fast. It must have been a sniper, and it was hard to pinpoint his exact location. Because the first sector is an open plain, there was absolutely no way for the team to take cover from the gunfire. The master replied that killing the players in hazmat suits was a real attack on them, and it certainly wasn't random. A sniper who killed level 150 players so easily must be at least level 400 or even above that bar. The leader decides to give one of his subordinates some special gift in a bag to fulfill an important revenge mission. The ringleader said whoever the guy is, but this freak is a real threat to everyone's plans, so use what I'll give you. The multiplayer game that has taken over the world with its popularity, Fate Chronicles, has united millions of gamers. Most of the Japanese players settled in the powerful kingdom of Heron, which became their main base of operations for their adventures. Plains, these are the largest hunting grounds, perfect for beginners and intermediate-level adventurers. The kingdom of Karen, Sauron's county, the place the hero came to, realizing that going back and forth takes quite a bit of time. Therefore, the young man wanted to pass this place faster after he finished an important task from Master Raiden of the Musketeer Academy. The hero decided to check the game window and take a close look at what was so interesting there to get for his exploits on the plains. The player received the new unique skill Mosquito Bullet for managing to shoot as many as 10,000 different monsters in 10 days. Ted thought about the first time he was seeing such a rare title and skill that he had gained through his insane experience farming. Although the guy realized that the developers might well have introduced it specifically for such obsessives that kill 10,000 monsters in 10 days. This skill, Mosquito Bullet, activates automatically. The health of the hit target is partially transferred immediately to the shooter himself for recovery. Mosquito bullets damage is 10% of the player's damage, and its health absorption rate is as much as 50% of the damage dealt to the enemy. The young man calculated that stealing health as much as 50% of the damage. He currently had about 8,000 damage thanks to his enchanted weapon. So that works out to 5% health per hit, which is about 400 recovery points each time you hit a target. The guy realized that it was half his maximum health in one shot. How incredibly lucky he was to have this skill. With a satisfied smile, the hero thought about the fact that now, in all likelihood, you cannot worry about the treatment in battle. But then a notice caught his attention that the guards didn't trust him because his crime index was too high, almost 5,000 points. So the player saw a group of angry guards in front of him and told them that then, in that case, he would just go on his way. In the meantime, it's best to keep your head down and keep a low profile when it has such a high crime index. And then suddenly someone approached the guy. The young man started to turn towards the voice to see who it could be. Ted overheard some players talking about proceeding with caution. One mistake, and you just lose all your items. A magic pariah book that allows you to forcibly reveal some of the personal information another player in the system has. These guys were aggressively telling one guy to fuck off before they swatted him down for insolence and disrespect. Between themselves, the group members discussed what they had said from the beginning. It's useless. Why even do it now? The tall comrade replied that whether or not his interlocutor thought he enjoyed coming after idiots who hadn't even considered who might kill them. Suddenly the group spotted Ted, and the full comrade said with annoyance that, my God, they've been standing here waiting for half a day. Ted thought this book reveals basic information about the player. I wonder who these people really are. The two had been discussing amongst themselves when the freak they wanted would finally show up. But the informant said it would definitely be today. Ted, listening to these conversations, thought, no, if these were guys from the main guilds, there would be a huge armed group here. The young man decided he'd better get out of here before it was too late, and on his way out he accidentally bumped heads with some stranger. This person apologized and said sorry, but was distracted by the map in the interface, so wasn't looking where he was going on the location. The stranger started to apologize, then looked closely at the hero and realized that something was wrong with this player. The boy tried to see Ted through his bear mask and figure out who was hiding under that strange disguise. Ted realized he had completely relaxed in the confidence of his disguise. He didn't think anyone could figure him out so easily. Afterward, he was approached and told that he must be a big fan of this famous bear from popular streamers. This stranger added that the hero is one of the most famous musketeers, and his weapon is an exact replica of Ted's legendary musket. Ted found himself in an awkward situation and wondered if this guy didn't recognize him. Could he tell everyone that the weapon was just a replica? This fan said he wanted to warn a fellow hobbyist. It's best not to stay here for too long for his own safety. Surprised, the hero asked the stranger what was going on and what exactly was the reason for such a rush. To which the fan responded by asking if he knew anything about the infamous band Paprika and their activities. Ted replied that he didn't really know them, but had mostly just seen these people on some game broadcasts. The stranger explained that it was a special grouping of PK players that had gained immense popularity due to its peculiar content. On the streams, they turn ordinary players into criminal characters through fake evidence and provocations to entertain the viewers. Or, based on the size of the donations from the audience, they could just start eating the insides of various slain monsters for shock value. Rumor has it that a group from this guild was conducting a broadcast on the plains, and one unknown musketeer interrupted all of the team members. Ted was well aware that this was about him and his recent actions, but understandably unable to share it. It seems that guild leader Paprika took the murder of his streamers as a direct declaration of war against their entire organization. And now the stranger is looking for witnesses to the incident, so he asks Ted, wondering if he saw that sniper by chance. Ted hastily replied that no, he saw absolutely no one or anything suspicious. Honestly, he was just farming. But there was no one else on the plains besides the guild members, so no one caught the crime itself. But they are now looking for the sniper. Ted thought sadly that once again luck had not been with him for long. He should have just been doing missions and leveling up quietly. And this fan added that he definitely forgot to tell the hero something else important for his own safety in the region. The reason why he'd better not stay here for long. Yesterday, another major battle broke out between Paprika and the Nightwalkers. These guilds have long been in conflict with each other, and Paprika blamed the Nightwalkers for a sniper attack on their group of streamers. There was no way these Nightwalkers could expect a direct attack from their opponents, so their guilds suffered significant losses in the battle. Tad simply withdrew from the game, no longer wanting to be at the epicenter of an emerging conflict between major guilds. The fan who was telling it all got upset and thought, what did he say wrong? Finally found a player with similar tastes. Suddenly, those two hunters from Paprika's guild noticed this fan and started approaching him with questions. They began to tell the stranger that he was, after all, the same mercenary who had been hired by their master to perform an important task. The mercenary replied grudgingly as to why they were meeting him and bothering him unnecessarily when he had only just arrived in the city. The players explained that the master wanted to make sure the mercenary arrived safely in the city, and everyone was perfectly fine. The high representative of the guild added that the master had high hopes for him. The mercenary had a very demanding mission ahead of him. So the mercenary decided that, okay, it was worth calling the master and talking to him personally about the details of the upcoming work. The mercenary told the connection that he had just arrived at the designated location. After all, he only needs to kill the designated target. But received orders to do nothing for now. The master gave his subordinate a magic pouch, and the mercenary would be on backup. Tad, safe at home, decided to check the information about this Paprika guild and look for more information about it. The hero thought as he studied the search results. This is it. A history of streamers, and a list of all the fights this guild has participated in. Paprika and the Nightwalkers had indeed been at odds with each other for a long time. There was plenty of evidence to back that up. And a sudden attack by a sniper finally escalated their protracted conflict and led to open warfare between the organizations. Paprika is on record as saying that it was the Nightwalkers who started it first, killing their group of streamers on the plains without provocation. Therefore, several key people from the influential Nightwalkers Guild suffered as a result of the retaliation. Based on their code of neutrality, the members of the Nightwalkers Guild did not provoke further conflict and decided to retreat. And Ted had only one agonizing question in his mind. Why he was always the one who got into trouble. Should he do something about it? Or will a minor violation of the law set up a real massive problem for everyone? Nightwalkers is a prestigious guild of experienced players under the leadership of his older brother who has reached high positions. Should the guy even confront them and get into some serious conflict? Plus, the brother must know something about the incident. So Ted decided that the best solution would be to call his brother right now and find out the situation. The young man recalled his troubled past with his family and the times when they lived together under one roof. How they clearly didn't have a good relationship with each other because of their different outlooks on life and priorities. The guy realized that there was a lot of explaining to be done, but apparently there was no choice in the situation. After gaining determination and courage, the hero realized that he should still dial the number and call his brother to talk. My brother picked up the phone pretty quickly and said in surprise, "Was he really the first one to call him in all this time? How come?" Kyohei asked how his older brother was doing in general, curious about his life and progress in game and reality. Brother replied that there was no need to worry. There was nothing wrong with him, but the role of guildmaster took up too much time and energy. Also, the brother dared to ask about the family and how mom and dad are doing. By the way, they saw Kyohei's stream and were very happy for him. When my brother heard this question, he was quite surprised and puzzled by such a topic of conversation. The older brother replied that he had heard about the incident. But why such a question? Did the Paprika members do something to Kyohei personally? Kyohei explained that he had met members of this guild on the plains during his usual experience farming. Members of this guild openly troll other players and prevent them from quietly pumping in popular newbie locations. The character talked about their questionable activities and content that is clearly not suitable for all categories of players. The brother explained that they're not just bullying newcomers, they're intentionally sending streamers to the county to reduce the player population. The members of Paprika are ready to conquer this county and make it their main base to expand the guild's influence in the region. If a siege of the county begins, newcomers who aren't guild members will stand in the way of the invaders. So Paprika has come up with an incredible tactic. They send streamers to the grounds just to prevent players from farming. No player after such bullying treatment will want to stay there and continue playing in the region. This sneaky strategy has already worked. Now their county has fewer and fewer active players every day. After hearing this important information from his brother, Kyohei realized why Paprika's members were acting like complete idiots on the plains. And he himself, unaware of their plans, just took and thoughtlessly interfered in the whole affair, becoming an unwitting participant. If the siege of the county begins, you simply can't get there anymore. The area will be blocked off to outside players. So we need to complete Raiden's assignment as quickly as possible and get the hell out of there before it's too late for a retreat. Then the brother inquired about how the guy was doing in life. Even his mother is always inquiring about him since it's been a while. The brother added that okay, he would wait to see his little brother, no matter how long it took. Kyohei, hearing these unexpectedly warm words, was very much surprised by such an attitude from his older brother. So the only thing he said last before ending the conversation was, "Good luck to him, and thanks for all the valuable information." The young man then reached for the mouse to conclude this difficult but important conversation with a family member. And here was a thought swirling around in his head, wondering what he was even thinking to himself. for as usual he is the ultimate loser. Sitting in his room in front of his computer, the hero plunged into deep thoughts about the events that are happening, and his fate. The guy thought to himself that this is exactly how it is. Why his life just never seems to go smoothly and peacefully. Why all such unpleasant situations happen all the time and always to him and not to someone else. What's worst about this situation is that it was absolutely always like this throughout his life, without exception. No matter how hard Kyohei tried, and no matter what he did to improve the situation, it always turned out the same. He always ended up in even more trouble than he was before all these misadventures began. But the guy realized that no, he had absolutely nothing to do with it, just perpetually being in the middle of other people's problems. The young man has to suffer the consequences, and it annoys not only him, but also the people around him. First, there was the situation with illegal taming of bosses by powerful guilds, which he accidentally got into. Now the trolls are literally interfering with absolutely all players. It absolutely wasn't him who started it. They provoked him into retaliating. And rightly so, as Kyohei is completely not to blame for the current critical situation between the feuding guilds. So in an instant the guy lost everything he had strived so hard for during his many years of playing. And now the hero just has to get into new problems to somehow get out of the situation. Ted firmly decided that no, it was none of his business, and he didn't want these issues to have anything to do with him. Therefore, there was only one clear thought in the character's mind. The only thing the character should do was to become stronger as a character, and so the young man is once again loaded into this virtual world of the game to continue his development and achievement of goals. The guy realized he had to pump himself up considerably by the time his enemies from the powerful guilds took the next big step. Because only in this way, the hero will be able to save all the valuable things that he has at the moment in the game. So Ted is now, after this little rest and reflection, loading back into the game to continue his farming. He thought with determination that they would all be met with harsh retribution at his hand. This is something he could firmly promise. The hero was now in the location of the plains, the second zone, where he also continued to methodically cut down those horrible green orc creatures. The other players try to do the same, and they are very good at it because of teamwork. They discussed amongst themselves that the opponents here were much stronger than in the first zone, but decided to fight each one carefully. One guy replied to his comrades that okay, then let's go on, and suddenly covered his mouth with his hand from the sudden pain. More to the point, for some reason his body began to dry up and shrink, as if turning into a veritable mummy before his eyes. The partner who was in the group with him opened her mouth in horror, not realizing what had happened to her comrade. She panicked, wondering if there were monsters here that could literally suck the life force out of a player at a distance. The girl frantically pondered what she should do and how to escape from here as quickly as possible, lest the same fate befall her. And the mosquito bullet successfully restored Ted's health. He checked his new skill and thought it was amazing to get such a useful ability. But there's one problem, he wasn't aiming at this player at all. He was aiming at the monster next to the group. So the crime index has risen again, and if it continues to rise, the hero will not be able to enter the county at all. Apparently it's better not to use mosquito bullet in locations with crowds of players. You need to increase the skill's synchronization factor first. The guy saw that he now needed to focus solely on pumping his character up to a high level for starters. And there's only one proven way to get past that point: kill strong bosses like that main demon. But the young man realized that in all this lurked one serious problem that he could not solve or transcend. The thing is, there are absolutely no powerful high-level bosses here like he needs for fast growth. This is very logical and understandable, since the plains are only the starting location for beginners and intermediate-level players. Therefore, the hero will have to go to the nearest area where there is a strong boss to pump his character effectively. But so far, Ted hasn't completed the important task from Master Raiden, so what's the point of running back through the locations? The boy plunged into thinking about what he should do. But then suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by some strange sound. The other players in this plane began to look up and scream in terror. "Monster! There's a huge monster in the sky!" Ted huddled deeper in his bushes, thinking with bewilderment as to what this had just been all about. And then with his own eyes, the young man saw a huge monster that flew directly over the plains, terrifying the players. This creature was like the truest horrible monster from the underworld. It was a high-level junior demon. The guy understood that such creatures were only summoned by a special magic bag, who could have used this item intentionally. The hero saw this younger demon, who in his clawed hand was gathering real infernal power for a mass attack. The monster released this energy blob on the ground, which flew at a tremendous speed straight at the normally defenseless players. The real scorcher below began. Little by little, everything began to burn with demonic flames, covering a large area. Players were dying one by one before they could even realize what was happening around them in this chaos. They were new and greatly frightened as they never thought they would meet such a powerful monster before. Seeing this huge beast flying in the clouds above them, they could not believe their eyes with terror. The players tried to escape from here as fast as possible, but even the local orcs were scared and tried to leave the area. One streamer thought with satisfaction that hopefully, the camera was doing a good job of relaying what was happening to the live viewers. He said with sadistic pleasure that it was great fun to watch these little players die one by one. His companions remarked that who knew that the guild master would dare to use the magic pouch? Apparently it was a serious matter. Streamer added that no matter who killed their men, he definitely couldn't do it alone against a level 300 demon. But then all of a sudden, these guys from the Paprika Guild were abruptly surprised by something they saw in the sky above the plains. They spotted this younger demon being shot by someone with a powerful shot, and the monster began to tumble downward. Ted, watching and aiming from the bushes, told those insolent fellows mentally to get out of here immediately. While the hero clearly needs to be given credit for these nasty guys, they have summoned a really serious opponent for a challenge. Ted pointed his powerful cannon at this demon and aimed very precisely, preparing for the decisive shot. Ted thought ironically that these Paprika guys had gone to great lengths and brought in a powerful boss right for his training. The hero began to methodically fire at the creature, which didn't even realize where it was getting such accurate and deadly fire from. The young man used his 1,000-step skill to quickly jump back and maintain a safe distance from his opponent. But he continued to deal serious damage to the creature with his powerful 19th level enchanted weapon. And Ted realized now how incredibly powerful his weapon had actually become after all the improvements and enchantments he had made. There it is, a significant difference when engaging in a serious fight with a 300th level opponent, as victory will definitely not be easy. Keeping a safe distance and maintaining a high tempo of attacks, the most important tactical task for him at this point in the battle. This junior demon was in a rage trying to see through the flames from where the constant damage from the invisible archer was coming at him. The monster was very angry, as he couldn't see his defiant opponent so brazenly and confidently dealing with him in battle. The creature hovered in the air, and blood that looked more like thick black tar began to slowly emanate from its clawed hands. Ted mentally calculated that about 5 accurate shots would be enough to finally finish off this dangerous foe, but it was urgent to choose a suitable shelter for the next maneuver. And then the hero saw a huge black ball that was approaching him. That black blob of demonic resin seemed to knock the guy off his feet, beginning to consume him with its dark magical energy. A dark mass engulfed his body, and Ted wondered with growing horror what the hell this damn demon magic even was. The young man realized with relief. Hell, if it wasn't for his new health regeneration skill, he would have been left without any life at all after the attack. One must hide in a safe hiding place as quickly as possible before his high level of stealth was finally exposed by the enemy. Reading the character's status, the hero realized that he had been struck by a non-critical poison. The evil spirit would be out of the body in 5 minutes, now possessed. The guy thought that it seemed like health wasn't gradually being taken away by the system, but his combat stats were still slowly being lost for some reason. As he continued this, he began to feel the very real magical resistance from the purple energy emanating from the demon. Tad hoped that he was still unseen by his mighty adversary, and everything would go as well as possible in this critical situation. And now the young man saw this demon slowly approaching right towards him, staring with its crazy red gaze. The guys from Paprika's guild who had been closely watching this epic fight wondered if this was the guy they were looking for. The other comrades were telling him worriedly, what was he even doing? They needed to get the hell out of here before they got caught in the hot hand. After which one of the comrades suddenly drops dead and simply dies, disintegrating into glowing pixels before the eyes of the others. They saw in horror that the guy just withered away in a second. What had happened to him? Who could have killed him so quickly? The younger demon continued to search furiously for this daring gunman, turning over rocks and debris in search of the enemy's hiding place. Then suddenly, a powerful cannon blast flew straight into his eye, piercing through demonic flesh and bone. The monster began to scream in unbearable pain. It was the truest agony the demon had felt in his life. Tad thought with relief that he'd gotten by. If there hadn't been people in full health nearby, he would have just died on the spot. Now he's become a real fearless shooter, who can recover his health so easily in critical situations. The guy with a predatory grin said to the demon mentally, well, let's see who defeats who in this fight, steroid gorilla. The wounded demon was bleeding, and began to scream louder and louder from the unbearable pain he was experiencing from the wound. In a torrent of sheer anger and rage, he began to unleash destructive spells in all directions indiscriminately. Ted figured in his head that the enemy didn't have much health left, so he needed to aim precisely at the creature's head. So in the hero's mind, he had a clever idea on how he could distract this younger demon from his quest. Then suddenly his plan falls apart. The young man sees a camera hovering right above his head and takes a picture. This camera is broadcasting live to the viewers, and then he finally gets a truly brilliant idea. With a broad smile on his face, the hero told himself that he had finally figured out what he could do about the situation. The people from the Paprika Guild watched and thought worriedly, "This is bad. Why did this guy suddenly become so cheerful? If the sniper spots us again, he'll just kill everyone." So this trio was feverishly thinking about what to do now. One of them got up with the intention of leaving, but the other replied, "You fool, why are you even going anywhere now?" A comrade objected, "Why so much panic? Just look at this battlefield and the opportunities for profit. Look at how many valuable items are left here after the inexperienced newbies died. We need to collect it all quickly." But when they decided to stay behind to collect these items of fallen players, they were very much afraid of something scary. They saw that the other players on the battlefield were also claiming to get their hands on these valuable items of the fallen. These guys were indignantly saying amongst themselves, "How come the rest of us are already sorting out these free items without a line?" The guy in the jester costume noted that they could definitely use the extra items, but the situation was rather dire. Here's Ted literally flying over their heads using his 1,000-step skill to move. They were very frightened and thought with horror, "Oh my god, what is this? Something jumped right on our heads." The players chatted amongst themselves about how they needed to somehow survive in this critically dire situation. The guy in the jester suit was saying that if they didn't get away now, and at this point he saw something terrifying in front of him. He saw this younger demon who decided to attack them, even though they were his own summoners through the sack. This devilish beast struck with its huge clawed fist to kill these hapless fellows in one fell swoop. They were angry and said that all this freak sniper could do was cowardly hide and command the situation from afar. So let's swat this demon ourselves and end this case once and for all without waiting for help. And at the moment they were arguing amongst themselves, a blue ray strike flew past and literally went through their bodies. As they were dying, they did not realize that in all likelihood they were all finished and caught in a horrible death trap. The question swirling around in their minds was why they even got into all this. They should have just run away from here. But the demon was delivering a crushing blow with its powerful fist. Most likely this blow would be fatal for everyone. Ted, who has been watching this bloody spectacle from the sidelines, makes a swift leap forward into the thick of things. After that, like the most real lightning, begins to jump from place to place with incredible speed of movement. The hero is looking for a new strategic location to get himself into the perfect sniper position. Aiming directly at his opponent's head, the young man realizes that this is the perfect angle for the decisive shot. Here he fires his powerful weapon and accurately smashes the horn of that ferocious demon on its head. The demon begins to fall uncontrollably onto its back, unable to control its fall, and loses its balance completely. As the demon collapsed to the ground, the guy brought his gun right up to its massive head for a test shot. Ted said to his defeated opponent, "It's nothing personal. Trust me. It's just to get stronger in the game." Ted fired his gun one last time, blood spattering in all directions, and he said with satisfaction that he'd had to chase the demon all over the location. But the hero was glad that he finally got it right, so his level was raised to 105th level, which brought him much closer to his goal. And the players who were watching this epic battle in sheer terror watched and wondered how this guy handled such a powerful demon all by himself. How he actually managed to do this impossible thing, and now he starts running towards the corpse to retrieve valuable items from the defeated boss. There was only one greedy guy who started talking about how the expensive items from the demon would be his, but he was immediately hit with an accurate headshot. Ted said angrily to the others, "Where are you jackals? You want to pocket the items, but guess what? They belong to him alone by right of victory." And so the guy got a high crime index of already 5,000 points for killing those greedy gamblers in cold blood. After examining his prey, the hero looked at the trophies and realized that in principle, except for a sturdy leather belt, he didn't get anything particularly useful. So if you sold it all to the merchants, you'd get roughly about 90 gold coins for all the trophies, which isn't that much. But also in his hands Ted held a vial of uncritical poison. An undead evil spirit would appear from the body of a person who would be affected by this poison. 5 minutes after the poisoning, and only 10 uses, the guy realized that it could be quite a useful weapon against enemies. Ted's only thought was that he had a completely different, more important concern right now than counting the loot from the demon. What those damn freaks from Paprik's powerful guild intend to do next in response to his actions against their plans. At this moment, the guildmaster, who had finished angrily talking to his subordinates, was going online for an important conversation. Charisse shouted into the microphone that, what the hell were they even doing out there? It was a complete failure of our operation to take over the county. This master thought with bewilderment how this guy was able to kill a junior demon in just 3 minutes. His damage is exactly 500, if not even higher. How much money he spent in preparing the operation, so that this county would finally become their property and a base for expanding their influence. Charisse would never have thought that a real monster like this would have popped up in the beginner's location among the normally weak players. He had only one thought. He can't waste any more of his resources on failed operations, so he decides to call someone. Speaking over the phone, the master told the mercenary that the younger demon had fallen in battle and he should go and finish off the freak who killed him. This hired player replied that he understands the situation, but he's kind of on another assignment here. Of course, if they pay more, he won't refuse. Master Charisse realized with irritation that he was going to have to deal with people with a complete disregard for work and agreements. Ted, meanwhile, was diligently pumping his power as always, running around the locations and slaying monsters for experience. Now the hero was on the familiar location of the plains, still farming experience, only in the third, more dangerous zone with strong opponents. The ugly green monsters that looked like high-level orcs there were now releasing their magical fire from their clawed hands, attacking the uninvited guest. Ted tried to dodge these fireballs, which were flying at high speed straight towards him from different angles at the same time. The monsters were surprised that this guy was so elusive, or rather invulnerable to their usual attacks that used to always hit. Looking ahead in all directions, they couldn't figure out where the hero had now disappeared to, or where the next attack would come from. But then suddenly in the distance, the orcs saw a strange shadow that reminded them of the silhouette of that annoying Ted. When they noticed the movement, they immediately started firing their fire spells further in the direction where the shadow flashed. Suddenly they saw what struck them the most. Here comes something strange made of bones that looks like a real battle tank. These green orcs didn't understand what it even was, and looked at this construct with the utmost bewilderment and fear. This bony machine began its methodical bombardment, and the cannons fired very clearly and accurately at all visible targets around it. To the monsters, the only thing left in this hopeless situation was to accept their inevitable death, which was a foregone conclusion. Ted, who was lying on the ground in the shelter, thought with annoyance how he was getting sick of this, the constant fighting and running around. The guy realized how much he already hated this damn plane since there were no shelters and only hostile creatures around. But as it was, the young man realized that he had gone far enough into this danger zone to turn back. Therefore, they were about to appear. But who exactly should appear in this place? The hero did not know yet. The guy was bitten by a bird of prey. His stamina was greatly reduced, and he realized that the situation was becoming critical for survival. These damn birds fly in flocks before his eyes. But the guy has no choice as these strange creatures keep biting him. But only by fighting these opponents can you gain the unique skill Unshakable, a special ability that increases defense depending on damage. It only manifests if health drops completely to critical 0. This is an ability for tanks that need defense. But for the wielder of a weapon that is enchanted to 19 levels of power, it is also actually a very necessary and useful ability. But Unshakable has one major problem. This is the way to obtain it. You must defeat 99 monsters that must wound 99 times. And here in general, to defeat 99 monsters, it's not a problem for an experienced player. But to be attacked so many times is extremely problematic. For the Musketeer class, which is known for its low health and defense, this quest seems more like sheer torture for the character. And so this ghost bird comes into play, a disembodied monster that can't be seen or attacked until you kill it in some way. But players hate these damned creatures for only one single, but very good reason for such dislike. And because these creatures constantly steal one random character's character performance score, weakening them in combat significantly. They deal a fixed 2 units of damage at all times, as the name implies. This bird will circle over the victim, constantly biting. However, defeating a ghost bird in a difficult fight can also randomly boost several character stats at once permanently. But the problem is that these corporeal creatures are very hard to kill with normal physical attacks or spells. But here the guy did it. He successfully fulfilled all the conditions for obtaining the valuable skill Unshakable after much agony. Realizing that it was now possible to not have to worry about the character's survival, Tad thought that this advantage would be permanent. But also the hero saw that he got another special skill called Gift of God. These gifts can only be obtained by select players. Reading the description of all this, the young man thought with wonder. Could he really only have 2 special skills at the same time? What the hell for the restriction? But either way, he got what he came here for. He shouldn't worry about the rest. But now Tad realized that first, he needed to urgently replenish his critically low health by any means available. Therefore, the hero activated the Mosquito Bullet skill, with which he could restore vitality by sucking it out of opponents. He realized it was better to keep these insects away from the regular players anymore, since the crime index was already over the limit. But then the young man saw this mosquito insect just take off right in the air for no apparent reason. Ted thought with bewilderment, what is it? His health was not restored, and even on the contrary fell harder from some damage. He released another such insect and thought, okay, let's check again what happens to the skill in this location. And so the hero realized that most likely the recovery was failing because of that damn disembodied bird that was interfering with the skill. Since she ate the mosquito immediately after emerging, it caused her health to drop altogether instead of the expected recovery. Ted thought, right, since a mosquito can't bite a bird since it's an incorporeal being, unavailable for physical attacks. Ted thought with annoyance. Just a delicacy for these things. He was angry that they were just taking and eating his mosquitoes instead of having them fulfill their function. But the hero thought, whoa, if they're literally eating his insects, then he might as well poison them through those very mosquitoes. So the young man pulled out his non-critical poison that he had recently gotten for killing a younger demon in an epic battle on the plains. And Tad thought, in that case, if I use this poison on a mosquito now, will he succeed in his cunning plan? He caused this bug to take and become coated with this poisonous substance, turning the insect into a deadly weapon against bodiless creatures. And so the reaction went, this bug was now an undead soul, radiating dark energy and a mystical glow around it. Due to the effects of the poison, the mosquito now looked like a real ghost, able to interact with other ghostly creatures. Then this ghost bird just took and died after trying to eat a poisoned mosquito, receiving a lethal dose of poison. And so the guy was able to overpower her in such a cunning way. So he got a significant increase in characteristics. He was smiling from this success. The hero thanked the demon that thanks to the trophy he was now able to pump so well and efficiently in the game. Here it was already nightfall, and this strange machine made of bones that looked like a battle tank was still continuing its journey through the location. She began a real intense shelling, as if from a machine gun, pouring lead all around indiscriminately and without mercy to the opponents. Ted, watching this spectacle, fired a shot at this point and thought with satisfaction, great. That last shot was right at the tank's head. The young man decided to open his status window and look at the results. It appeared that he had gotten an additional 44 characteristic points and had leveled up. So next, the hero activated Mosquito Bullet. The skill level was now 25% of its maximum value. The guy was glad that now these insects he was releasing into battle were actually not as easy to kill as they used to be. Ted thought about the fact that it was time for him to move on to the next danger zone already. Or he still hadn't seen any strange clouds. Needs to keep improving his abilities to deal with the guilds that gave him this mess and harassment. Here, looking up at the night sky, the guy saw something strange. And the moon always looked so unusual in this location, like someone's eye. But then suddenly the ground itself began to simply shake and crack, illuminating an ominous red color from below. The guy did not understand what was happening to him. His eyes displayed the most real panic from the inexplicable events around him. And then a massive explosion came flying at the hero, and the people who were looking for him screamed, here they finally found him, such a fool. It was the same hunters from Paprika's guild. They were smiling and saying that he would definitely be screwed this time. Ted had not expected such a sudden attack, and did not have time to strike his opponents first, finding himself at a disadvantage. The full comrade watched bewildered, and wondered what was even going on around him, where this sniper had come from, and why things weren't going according to plan. After which his head was so easily blown off his shoulders with one precise shot, and his body collapsed to the ground, turning into pixels. Ted dealt with the first opponents with ease, and realized that if it wasn't for his skill with mosquito insects, he would have surely died. But the lad realized that there was still one serious problem in this sudden attack that could not be ignored. That strange, mystical eye he saw in the moon overhead. Clearly a magical ability to detect hidden targets. Since this indicates a hybrid class of Musketeer and Moon Priest, whose level is clearly above the 100th level, making it a dangerous opponent. The guy smiled and thought about how it had been a while since he had fought such strong players. Time to find out what kind of character this was. And now this moon with an eye highlights everything around him like a spotlight. It feels like it's methodically searching for his location among the hiding places. Ted under the tree could no longer wait for the upcoming bout with a truly strong and worthy high-level player. This priest, looking at the corpses of his comrades, thought with annoyance why they even went there without his permission. Not only were they completely useless in combat, but they took and died altogether in a matter of seconds. But what stressed him out the most was that despite a whole 2 aim shots, he couldn't figure out Tad's exact location. So the priest wondered how it was possible to hide the glare of the scope so well while still hitting the vital points of the opponents. The thoughts swirling in the enemy's mind were that the level and skills of this sniper indicated a level above 500. But then what's such a powerful character with such skills forgot in a location for beginners and intermediate level players? Despite all of the above, this guy is overly confident that the priest can't find him in this area. This opponent too, being half mage, takes aim with his cannon thinking, well okay, let's see who defeats who. This blonde decides to use his moon swirl skill. which starts flying very fast in all directions across the location. They literally knock down everything in their path, so powerful and destructive that only splinters and dust remain of the trees. Ted, watching this destruction, thought, enough is enough. Not only did you reveal yourself, but you're firing such powerful spells. It seems that these vortices are weapons of mass destruction, strong of course, but such attacks use a lot of magical energy. Looking at his opponent, the hero wondered if he was completely desperate, since he was constantly using the same energy-consuming skill. And then suddenly the lad saw one of the whirlwinds heading straight for him, and his heart beat faster at the approaching danger. Ted used his 1,000-step skill to very quickly sneak away from this devastating attack and avoid a direct hit from the vortex. The hero realized that his opponent wanted to destroy the entire forest, so that the guy had nowhere to hide from his magical attacks. Ted thought the priest was going to finish him off, before he himself completely ran out of mana to sustain his spells. So the guy was no longer very excited about having to get into such a serious fight with an experienced opponent. But the young man thought, since that's the case, then we should try to counterattack, and fired his powerful enchanted weapon. He shot straight at the enemy with his musket, aiming for the center of mass for a guaranteed hit. The guy realized that he had managed to hit, but such a high-level player would definitely not be killed to death with one shot. But Tad was well aware that he was able to do quite a bit of serious damage with his one accurate strike on the target. This opponent realized with horror that the guy had just taken and destroyed his super strong magic armor with just one strike. This kind of damage indicated a level far from 500. What kind of monster did they send against him in this location? But the priest thought, okay, he himself was curious to know the truth, and began to activate the skill. A seal appeared near his eye. With this powerful skill, he can actually connect with the moon and look across it at great distances. This enemy was scrutinizing the area, and thought that now this mysterious sniper would definitely have nowhere to hide from him, since there was only one surviving position for shelter here after the devastating whirlwinds. It was those few trees. Taking the scroll out of his bag, the priest squeezed it hard with his hand, preparing to activate another powerful spell. It was a magical book of outcasts in his hands, a forbidden artifact he decided to use against the sniper. A very strong wind began to blow, which was more like a real destructive tornado sweeping away everything in its path. The most real hurricane started in the forest. All the remaining trees began to fall under the onslaught of elemental magic. The priest also drew his weapon and began scrutinizing where the elusive Tad was hiding amidst the chaos. And so after activating the skill, he thought, if this player is really a musketeer, he will definitely figure him out now. And information processing began. He learned that the guy's level was only 150th, and his class was indeed musketeer. The opponent was in complete shock. How could this guy only have a level 150 with such incredible damage? Maybe it's just some cheater using hacks or whatever else could be the problem with the system. But when the priest saw the character's name, he realized with horror, stop. His name is Ted. This is the same legendary sniper. The enemy only began to tremble in fear when he saw this one famous name that was legendary. The priest started yelling and saying that he had had enough. Not only was this some cheater, but he was also using the sacred name of the great Tad to cheat. The opponent was once again trying to use his powerful skill to connect with the moon and gain extra power from the celestial luminary. He only had one thought in his mind. He is using a special energy storage skill. In addition to naturally recovering mana, he is still accumulating extra magic power. This blonde-haired guy thought with rage that it wasn't even about accomplishing the mission. He would kill anyone who dared to attempt this legendary name. Tad, watching his enraged opponent from afar, didn't realize that suddenly this priest had decided to do such crazy things in battle. The priest has used up all his energy on devastating area attacks, and now runs straight at him in a frontal attack with no tactics. Perhaps the enemy has a special skill of energy storage, as otherwise the hero didn't know how to explain such a fast regeneration of strength. But if the priest had indeed restored his mana to its full level, it actually posed a real serious problem for Tad. Could it be that this guy is so pissed off that he can't find the sniper? So he just decided to go at him in an open head-on fight. Ted saw some red magical arrows start flying straight at him at high speed from the hands of the enraged opponent. He quickly went behind a thick tree, and there was only one thought in his mind. The most important thing was that the enemy would definitely not find him in cover. The hero could hear this mage priest muttering to himself and shouting, demanding that the cowardly sniper come out and fight fair face to face. The priest continued to methodically fire multicolored magical projectiles at every possible position where the enemy could be hiding. Ted quickly ran out of his position, realizing that this was the most ideal time to counterattack, while the enemy was distracted by pointless gunfire. The young man used his vision enhancement skill to make the strike as accurate and quality as possible to deal critical damage to the opponent. His bullet clearly hit his opponent's back, So powerful it flew that it pierced even the priest's reinforced magical defenses through and through. That blonde man turned from the impact and turned into a true zombie, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light like the undead. The enemy had turned on the sniper and was now looking to strike back of his own, despite being critically wounded in the back. Ted had no way of knowing that the priest, after such a powerful hit, would have any response at all to such damage. The hero saw the bullet fly straight to his eye and wondered what he should do if the field of vision skill didn't work. Now Tad realized what had confused him so much about his opponent. The priest also has the 1,000-step skill to move quickly around the battlefield. Did this guy copy the legendary sniper's fighting style by scrutinizing his old broadcasts and battle footage on the internet? The enemy was angry and shouted that he would kill this freak who dared to copy the sacred name of his most beloved master and idol. Priest proudly declared that he was the leader of the official fan club of the legendary Ted, so he would definitely kill this imposter for sacrilege. Tad, watching his opponent's behavior, thought anxiously what the priest was doing. Was he loading a deadly bullet of moonlight? If the enemy uses this devastating attack, then simply all the air and the entire forest will explode from the powerful explosion. So you have to act fast or you could die. The hero, of course, activated the unshakable skill for extra defense. But this ability might not save you if there really is that incredibly powerful an attack from an enraged fan. Ted realized there was no other option. He would have to use this special skill he had in reserve. So the hero quickly came up with his plan, and the enemy threateningly said that there was nowhere to hide or hide from his attack. The priest was ready to shoot again and angrily shouted at the sniper that he would die by his hand for abusing his name. The enemy launched a super powerful bullet that flew at the speed of real light, tearing the air and leaving a glowing trail. Musketeer has always been the most popular, yet problematic class in the game among all available specializations. Since the class requires too much gold, huge sums go into expensive ammo and ammo for effective damage. There is no auto-targeting in this game, so the player must learn to shoot clearly and hit their targets on their own without help. So you still need to shell out extra money and buy better sights and accessories to improve your shooting accuracy. It is also the most fragile class in terms of health. With a single critical hit, musketeers can easily die. Even the hybrid musketeer priest class doesn't really save the day or solve the major survivability issues in combat. These specializations in no way complement each other organically or compensate for the weaknesses of the skills the player gains. And the constant deaths at the hands of other players in PvP have always discouraged most newcomers from liking this character. So the priest ended up hating the character he had diligently pumped for a full 5 years of his gaming career. This blonde guy was thinking about his gambling life and remembering how one day a real miracle happened that changed everything. That incredible shooting, quick movements. The opponents were of the same level, but Ted played really just perfect and flawless. For all musketeers around the world, he became the truest living legend who gave hope for success in this class. And Priest was one such inspired musketeer who believed in the possibilities of his class because of Tad's example. So by watching all those legendary broadcasts and fight tapes, he has perfectly studied the style and all the techniques of his idol. One obsessive thought kept running through the priest's mind. If the legendary Tad was able to reach such heights, then he would surely succeed as well. With tears in his eyes, the opponent thought that he had not wasted so much time and effort to pump up his character for a whole 5 years. So now on the battlefield, the priest drew inspiration from his idol's example and tried to replicate his legendary techniques. Everything around him was on fire after the powerful shot, and he watched with hope that he was about to see the corpse of the hated imposter amidst the flames. That blonde opponent thought with satisfaction that it was finally over. This is what happens to those who defame the name of a legend. But then suddenly the priest saw something that surprised him very much, and puzzled him by its impossibility. It was actually some kind of clever switch, and instead of a sniper, some pathetic low-level goblin died. The enemy thought with bewilderment, "It's impossible because goblins simply don't live here, so this freak has summoned a monster." And where a sniper could have the goblin summoning skill from, where could you get such a useless and weak skill? Here, while the priest was immersed in these thoughts, he received another powerful damage, and his green armor cracked violently. The enemy thought of the sniper specifically trained in this skill to use goblins as live baits for enemies. This player is low level, but has a sharp enough mind and tactical ability as a high-level professional player. Tad took a breath and watched as his opponent was now using the visual field enhancement skill to aim accurately. When the enemy pointed the scope right at the guy, he thought, safe to say he spent a lot of time studying. The priest completely copied Ted's legendary fighting style, learned from countless recordings and broadcasts of the idol. Ted, who was already sick of this protracted standoff, wanted to end it as soon as possible, but his armor was also cracking. The hero flew with all his might, striking swiftly out of the air, using the fast movement skill to attack. The enemy thought with amazement, is the sniper using the skill? Unwavering, how could a level 150 player have such a rare skill? Ted was approaching his target, taking aim with his powerful cannon and preparing to inflict decisive lethal damage on the enemy. And then all of a sudden, it's like this opposing guy realized everything and realized the truth about his opponent. The priest thought with increasing realization that he had seen this movement somewhere a million times already in the records. He knew that aiming pose perfectly well, the hand position, the stance, everything was familiar to the smallest detail. Even the very aura around the sniper was recognizable. He knew everything about his idol down to the most minute details. And now, being on the battlefield face to face with the enemy, the priest came to one overwhelming conclusion. It's safe to say that this mysterious guy is actually the real legendary Ted himself. The priest smiled and thought with relief, okay, in that case dying at the hands of a true legend himself isn't so bad. Ted had seen all these pop-up messages about having leveled up due to defeating a strong, high-ranked opponent. The hero thought with wonder, was this guy really such a fan? That's why he immediately discerned some features of the fighting style. But the guy realized that thanks to this battle, he was able to raise as many as 2 of his levels at the same time in a short time, and never thought he could effectively use this supposedly unnecessary goblin summoning orb in actual combat. So there was a reason the guy had carried it around with him all this time. He felt it might come in handy for stealth someday. Ted thought that he would continue to fulfill his Master Raiden's quest tomorrow, but today he was tired of fighting. Meanwhile, Rarest was on the comms with his subordinate who reported that he lost. Even being such an experienced player, he couldn't do anything. However, the mercenary was sure that the sniper absolutely did not care about the fate of the county, fortunately, unless he was hired by some hostile organization. The guild master thought with bewilderment, how could it be that such a strong fighter could lose to an ordinary mid-ranked rookie player? So Rarest said it's very bad news, but your help with the siege might make up for the money that's invested. To which this mercenary replied that all right, as soon as he recovers from the battle, he would take care of this important matter. The guy, after finishing the conversation, opened the door to the room and said to his comrades, "Here I am, finally back." When he entered the room, 2 girls from the team asked him, "Well, did you fulfill the special order from the customer?" But then the guy honestly answered that he had lost the battle, and everyone present was shocked to hear this unexpected information. This mercenary also explained that apparently, in order to earn back the money spent on him, he would still have to participate in the upcoming siege of the county. The girls got angry and yelled that how could a guy lose to some nub of a rookie? He was the most talented of us. To which this blonde guy calmly replied to the comrades, "Don't worry so much about it, everything is fixable. It has a useful new skill though. Everyone should now buy the goblin summoning skill sphere for tactical purposes." The red-haired girl suggested that maybe the disappearance of the legendary Ted had somehow affected the abilities of all the musketeers in the game. Other comrades asked that why did he suddenly lose it all, if indeed such a strong and experienced high-level player. To which the mercenary replied in awe, because he had witnessed the truest miracle that changed his perspective on the game. The entire forest had been completely wiped out after the mighty battle. Only stumps and charred tree trunks remained. Tad, despite the destruction, thought with irony, well, his fan had just demolished the entire forest. Now the monsters wouldn't be here for a long time. But that's okay, he did raise his level as a result of the fight, so now he can afford to go to the 4th danger zone. Tut, peering out from behind the wreckage, the hero thought, so, what's in store for us in this new uncharted area to explore? The young man decided to open his status window and saw that an additional parameter had appeared. He was now able to perceive objects more accurately as the status increased his visual acuity. His marksmanship percentage when firing was now 54%. Ted realized that it was still a useful enough thing for long-range combat. No matter how you look at it, you had to find something else interesting, so you need to continue to actively explore the area. And here it was, completely fulfilled. And then abruptly the hero was surprised by something, thinking anxiously, stop, this is the very thing he was pondering earlier. The system message said that the guy had found the trail of Lord Decay. This meant the presence of a powerful boss in the area. The guy thought with understanding. He specifically thought that the Paprika Guild was just going to take over the county by conventional military force. But they are seriously planning to summon a powerful boss here to completely destroy the resistance and take over the territory at any cost. They plan to sweep the county under their control with the help of a truly powerful adversary that the local forces won't be able to stop. And it seems that the guild members are indeed extremely determined. But the guy has completed his assignment from Raiden, so it's dangerous to go any further. Though Tad had a feeling that there was more than just one guild behind this, and that it was much more complex and large-scale than that. So the guy was now at the Spirit Temple location with a recommended level of 180 or higher for safe passage. There were some strange insects flying around that were completely engulfed in flames and posed a serious threat to unprepared travelers. Ted fired at these creatures, though they were small in size. He hit them clearly thanks to his enhanced vision. With a smile on his face, the hero said to himself, he had finally found them. The flock of fire dragonflies he had been looking for so long. These creatures lived in large numbers and still also flew above the surface of the water, creating beautiful but dangerous patterns. Holding his weapon tighter, the guy thought with determination, well, in that case, then let's start the real hunt for them. He used the goblin summoning, so the entire ground began to move and turn red from the magical energy of summoning the little helpers. These little green creatures appeared from a portal. It's amazing that they can actually be useful in serious combat. The guy himself thought that as long as he only had the summoning of these weak dummies, he should creatively figure out how to use them effectively. Initially, Ted wanted another skill realm to expand his tactical abilities and improve his character's combat arsenal. And then the hero planned to go to the locations of medium difficulty level, where the opponents will be much stronger and more dangerous to fight. But when he checked the marketplace, it turned out that decent skill areas just couldn't be found for reasonable money among the offerings right now. Therefore, if he had one really useful sphere, the guy realized that he would have become much stronger at times than he was now. Suddenly, one of the little green creatures the boy had summoned came toward him with a guilty and frightened look, as if awaiting punishment. Ted thought one should be able to actually enjoy even the little things, and appreciate the modest opportunities he had. Right now, these goblins aren't even level 30 and their combat power is ridiculous. Maybe we should pump up their movement speed. In that case, the hero can at least use them as live baits to divert the attention of opponents away from himself. So he turned to the goblins and ordered, "You see this fire dragonfly bug? Get its attention and run away from it." They looked at the target and were already startled, though it seemed to be really just a small, harmless bug in size. After this order, the green creatures started shaking their heads and crying, as they can't even complete such a simple task. The guy looked at these pathetic creatures and asked them with irritation, well, for what then they even live in this white world? He told them, one shot kills such dragonflies, so let's try to at least get better somehow. Tad had given the summoned goblins some sort of simple chainmail and weapons to make them feel more confident in the upcoming battle. So he already ordered in an angry tone and said, "Stop shaking with fear, so quickly follow orders." These green creatures, though still a little frightened by what was happening, nevertheless began to carry out their master's tasks. Ted thought in his head, wondering if they understood his orders even halfway. Well, if anything, we'll have to trust to fate. And then the hero saw a huge swarm of these fiery dragonflies forming in one place, as if a whole army of insects. He also noticed that these goblins were just running away. Tad shouted after them, asking where they were going. But what's amazing is that these fiery creatures fly straight towards the guy, ignoring the fleeing decoys completely. After that, there was a rather powerful explosion of fire energy that illuminated the entire surroundings with bright flames and smoke. The green creatures that had scurried so far away were very much afraid of everything that was happening and were trembling with terror. The guy realized he needed to take matters into his own hands, so he ordered the goblins to stop immediately and listen to commands. Ted told the goblins with annoyance that he had made his request clear earlier and explained exactly what needed to be done at this critical moment. Why do they not listen to him and ignore his orders? Are these creatures laughing at their master and not respecting his authority over them? The guy thought with annoyance, they don't listen to orders. They can't think of a strategy. What good are these useless monsters in battle? But then suddenly the hero noticed something strange in the sky, which caught his attention and made him forget about the problems with the goblins. He saw one huge dragonfly insect, from which emanated a strange purple energy that pulsed in the air around the creature. Ted realized that it was a level 190 astral dragonfly, an extremely dangerous creature capable of inflicting serious damage to an unprepared opponent. The goblins, upon seeing such a powerful creature, immediately started running away, afraid that the guy would make them deal with this monster. But with just one masterful shot, the guy killed the creature, hitting clearly at the vulnerable point between the wings. He said with a chuckle, "After all, it's just a winged insect that won't even hurt a fly if you know where to shoot." Now the guy's level had increased due to killing a strong enemy, and he had gotten an improvement in the goblin summoning skill realm, which had reached a new efficiency percent. So now the evolution of these creatures had begun, Tad thought with wonder. Had it really happened so quickly after one battle? But the hero realized that goblins swing while hunting monsters with their master, so he did the right thing. So he pondered what these little creatures might turn into, orcs or some other evil creatures. But even if they remain just improved goblins, Tad will be pleased with the result of this unexpected evolution. At least they would be of some real use in battles, not just a hindrance to real fighters. And so indeed began the amazing transformation of these little green creatures right in front of the astonished owner's eyes. But outwardly, as if not much had changed in their appearance, they had only changed their usual green color to another. Goblins became just silver, which upset the guy. He expected a more drastic change from the evolution process. Tad thought with frustration, "These silver goblins, what nonsense! They just changed their skin color and that was the end of the change." The hero had the feeling that he had just taken and wasted his precious time on a useless experiment with summoning. But then the player saw something that surprised him very much. The guy couldn't believe his eyes when reading the description of the abilities. The young man discovered the upgraded goblins have the ability of imitation. They are able to synchronize their consciousness with their host to coordinate actions. The summoned creatures are now able to replicate the same things the guy did, but only at 10% of his efficiency and strength. With a broad smile on his face, Ted said to his new assistants, "My lovelies, then come all of you closer to him." The guy added with a satisfied look that he could now give them something special to improve your combat capabilities. Approaching a group of stone creatures nearby, the hero began demonstrating proper attack techniques to the goblins to learn and copy their shooting skills. Ted ordered his silver goblins to pick up their weapons and begin aiming at the stone creatures to practice shooting. With a smile on his face, the guy realized that the damage was now 13,000 units, meaning each goblin would have 1,300 damage. The hero turned to the summoned helpers and said firmly, "From now on, they will fire their weapons at all targets." Ted ordered them to shoot absolutely anything that breathed or at least made any suspicious sound in the area. And over the forest could be heard the joyous shouts of the goblins about what a great job they were doing. And now another enemy had been set on fire. These silver goblins happily and obediently listened to their powerful master's commands, ready to carry out any order. The young man stood over them like a true menacing shadow and gave strict orders to freeze and listen carefully to the instructions. The goblins immediately obeyed the guy, who was very harsh and demanding of his subordinates in training. Ted told them sternly, "Until I give the command to fire, no one is to fire. I hope that's clear to everyone here." The lad, looking at his new assistants, realized that the creatures still needed to be taught long and patiently all the subtleties of combat. But looking at these creatures in action, the hero realized that the overall result was also quite normal for the beginning of training. As the team took down the 200th level location boss with ease, which was quite an impressive achievement for newcomers. So Tad got level 200, and since he never died once in all those levels, he earned a special achievement. Thanks to the achievement, the mastery of the summoning skill has increased to 30%, and synchronization to 16%. The damage is now higher than players of level 350. Also, while the guy was training goblins, there was another new skill called empathy. Now you can share emotions with summoned creatures. Initially, only the summoner class has this skill, but now the little soldiers are able to do some useful work. The hero was proud to now literally have a personal, well-trained army of helpers at his fingertips. So the young man turned to the silver goblins and commanded, "Form up. Now it's time for everyone to travel onward." But then Tad noticed that one goblin was missing from the formation. The guy started to look for where this fighter had gone. A system message popped up in front of the hero that goblin number 3 was badly frightened, as he was under surprise attack. Tad wondered in anger who dared to attack a personal goblin and damage property in the first place. Therefore, the young man realized that things were bad, and it was necessary to immediately recall the missing fighter back to his home for safety. Ted realized that the goblin could disappear, but if he died in battle, he would only be able to revive after a certain amount of time, which was extremely inconvenient for the plans. Therefore, the hero heard screams throughout the forest and realized that this little creature was being seriously abused by someone, causing him pain and suffering. The young man continued to make his way through the dense forest to see what had happened to his missing subordinate and who dared to attack him. When Ted got closer to the source of the noise, he saw a horrible sight. His faithful goblin lying covered in blood on the ground among the leaves. Some strangers stood over the wounded creature and said curiously, "Who were these people anyway?" They were some wild goblins from the depths of the forest. It was a couple of mid-level players who laughed and said with disdain that goblins, in general, were the lowest and most pathetic creatures in the game. Then they noticed the guy approaching and said with a sneer, "And what's that weird bear mask on your head? Cosplaying as a nub too?" Tad coldly replied to them, "Get your stinking foot off my creature. This is my personal summoned goblin at all, not a wild monster," the hero added indignantly. "They know very well that there are no wild goblins in this location. I don't believe my subordinate could have attacked you on his own." The guy quickly assessed the wounded man's condition and realized he was still fine. The goblin had 5% health left, so if the assailants fell back, it could be healed. So Ted decided to use his powerful fireball skill. and all the vegetation around the aggressors began to blaze with bright flames. After the show of force, he turned to these people again and said threateningly that they didn't get it the first time. This was his personal goblin. Those insolent players replied with a challenge that, I'm sorry, they just didn't hear the words. If it was his goblin, would do some proper parenting of the creature. This guy got really pissed off and thought with rage, what kind of nasty freaks got in his way in this damn forest? Meanwhile, he saw his little creature trembling in fear and pain, clearly under great stress from the attack of these sadists. The remaining goblins number 1 and 2 were currently experiencing real anger and thirst for revenge for beating their comrade in arms. So Tad got a +10 bonus to his synchronization rate with the summoned, and he himself was becoming far more vicious and cruel in intent. The hero looked in wonder at his creatures, pondering what they were willing to do to protect each other and their master. Afterwards, these unfamiliar players said with a chuckle, "These pets are helpless in general. I don't understand why they are so angry. Completely lost their healthy fear." Tad replied with a cold threat after those words. He actually had them very docile, so those should have shut up about it. The arrogant player with the big nose said with disdain, "That one, you fool, you don't understand. He's talking about the other way around, they don't listen to you at all." The guy laughs and turns to the offenders saying, "Actually, my kids need to get some combat experience on live targets." And then these strangers were horrified to notice that the silver goblins had the actual firearms in their hands to attack. The players were frightened as they heard at once the first loud shot, which sounded like thunder in the silence of the forest. The girl screamed in shock that it had just happened when she saw that one of her comrades had been seriously grazed in the arm by a bullet. She closed her eyes and screamed in panic. "What are those doing? Let them stop immediately. It's not like they did anything wrong to your pets." While there was still at least one person left alive, they quickly decided to use a defense skill. But would it even help in this critical situation? Of course not. The defenses are easily penetrated by powerful enough damage from Thad's well-trained and equipped goblins. A player murder was committed, so the hero's crime index has now risen to 6,000 points for this deed. These little silver creatures were still very angry that the abusers had been so cruel to their brother in arms. Ted decided to stop his subordinates and told them sternly, "That's enough revenge for today. They got what they deserved." The hero added, "It's been a full hour since his death. Look, your comrade number 3 has already managed to resurrect safely." All 3 goblins started hugging each other joyfully, so happy were they that they were finally teaming up again. Ted thought about the crime index going up again because of this incident, but he couldn't do otherwise in this situation. And the guy said to his helpers, "Okay, since they did a great job today, now it's time to give them proper names." One goblin with a reddish skin tone, he decided to name Odinga in honor of his bravery in the first battle. The creature with brown hair on its head was named Dwagi by Ted for its loyalty and steadfastness in battle. And he named the last greenish goblin Triggy for his ability to recover quickly from wounds. The hero looked at these happy creatures and thought about what pleasant emotions were hovering right now, right between all the team members. And at this moment, Guildmaster Paprika was once again angry at the failures of his subordinates in completing important tasks. Charisse had already broken the entire table in a rage, and wondered what the damned freak was trying to accomplish. Why he had shown up now. If Lone couldn't overpower him, then the sniper's level was clearly above 650, at worst all 700 or even more. The master thought with despair that he had already sold his house, car, and all his possessions to fulfill our grand plan to take over the county. If everything fails because of one player, what will be done next? And during these gloomy reflections, he suddenly received a phone call from someone. The voice in the receiver inquired, for he was now talking to the leader of the influential Paprika Guild, Charisse, right? And Charisse hears information that an unknown interlocutor knows of the difficulties in executing a grand plan to take over the county. The mysterious voice adds confidently, so they can help them with this problem for a fee or favor. Kingdom of Harran, Sauron's county. A tall Gothic-style building stood in the middle of the city, awe-inspiring. The guards protecting the place were very angry and aggressive to any troublemakers. Ted saw those guards and realized that in all likelihood there was really no way to get past them unnoticed. All because the hero went overboard with killing players. And now his crime index is as much as 6,000 points. The guy calculated, 100 crime points equals 1 day in jail, so he'd have to sit behind bars for 60 days. But time is too precious to waste serving time in a dungeon, so he can't afford it. Suddenly a talking animal flies up to the young man and says, "You have finally been found after a long search." It was a male bird, which arrived apparently with some important news or parcel for the addressee. Ted said to the feathered courier, "I bought one yesterday on the trading floor, and they're in no hurry to deliver, so give me the goods." At such insolence, the bird got angry and grabbed the guy by his bear mask, expressing his displeasure with the customer. The hero resented. Why fight? He for the delivery pay the due amount. but you should not worry about your money. Everything is fair. So right into the bird's beak, Tad threw a few gold coins as payment for courier services. With aggression, the feathered courier handed the guy his scroll, which he had ordered earlier on the game's trading platform. The young man thought with annoyance that the NPC characters around, are all some aggressive bullshit with no manners. Let's try this purchased item in action, and Tad decided to approach the guards at the entrance to the building. Seeing the guy approaching, the guards immediately seemed to wake up and tensed up at his appearance. Looking at him menacingly, the guard said sternly, "Stand. What is wrong with you? Confess your crimes." Between themselves, a couple of guards started discussing what to do with this type. He should be looked at closely. One of them added, "This is the ultimate cold-blooded killer. He has a very high crime index." The guards in silver armor said with disdain, "How does a criminal like you even walk the earth?" But then suddenly there is some strange glitch in the guards' eyes, their gaze becoming cloudy and detached. Ted asked them excitedly, "So if he can go into the building, he's exhausted from waiting." And all of a sudden, the guard really just picks up and lets the guy through like nothing happened. Between themselves, the two guard partners began to say perplexedly that why he had missed him, but apparently he was mistaken or something had happened to his eyes. Holding the scroll in his hands, Ted realized that he had probably spent his money for a good reason, as the artifact concealed the player's personal information for a full 24 hours. True, there have been cases when this item didn't work properly against high-level characters, and you were immediately packed off to jail without any proceedings. And the guy thought with relief, "Okay, we should just forget about all this, and hurry up to fulfill an important mission from Master Raiden." Raiden, to whom the boy had come with the report, asked in surprise that he had already managed to explore all 4 danger zones in such a short time. The guy hesitated a bit with the answer and said uncertainly that, well, yes, in principle, he coped with the task, although it was not easy. The Academy Master said proudly, "It was not for nothing that he had not doubted the young man from the beginning. It was not for nothing that the boy was the favorite of our missing Master Shiboli." To which the guy suddenly shouted and said painfully that, "Stop calling the young man that. It was making him really hurt to remember the past." And so, after this awkward greeting, they sat down at a large wooden table to discuss the results of their completed assignment. The master, after listening carefully to all the information gathered, said that was what this dark cloud was, which the locals had previously encountered. Ted thought to himself that it wouldn't go unnoticed anyway, a level 450 boss in the middle of a beginner's location. But that didn't concern him anymore. So the task was successfully completed, all 4 zones were explored, and the well-deserved reward was a long-awaited letter of recommendation to the thieves. The master said with gratitude that Tho had really helped him out with this report, so as previously agreed, here is his letter. Ted asked his mentor what he should do with this document and where he should go for training. Raiden then asked the hero in surprise if he knew even something basic about this class in our game. Ted replied that he knew they didn't have an enviable fate, living in filthy slums on the outskirts of cities. And in general, all thieves hide from the representatives of the law in stinking sewer tunnels underground, leading a semi-criminal lifestyle, Raiden said doubtfully. So he wondered why such a talented musketeer would even need such a questionable additional character class. Ted, with a mysterious smile on his face, without revealing all his cards and plans, said evasively, "It's just the way it is. There are reasons." Raiden warned, choosing such a class, the guy is simply doomed to be labeled the ultimate criminal in the eyes of honest citizens and law enforcement. Plus, thieves lose a bunch of valuable experience when they die, and are even more likely to drop some important inventory item on the ground. And well, of course, their faces often appear on the wanted notice board, but for their capture are willing to give a lot of gold coins. But after getting the additional thief class, your crime index can no longer be seen by anyone at all in the game system. He also gains valuable experience by committing various crimes against other players or NPCs in cities and villages around the world. And among all possible subclasses, this one is the most optimal for achieving Ted's goals in the current situation. So the guy asked the master where he even needed to go to find these thieves and get training. And Raiden gave a tip that he needed to go to the Pon Pon liquor store. There would be a secret passage underground to their lair. Tad, hearing this, thought their lair was much closer than he'd realized, and asked if it was possible to get a second-degree musketeer class. Raiden was surprised that the guy was already level 200. One could sure. But wasn't he tired of the constant roads and battles? The hero asked simply to be told the conditions of moving to the second stage to begin with, so that he could plan his actions. There are developmental steps in every class, and it is in the musketeer class within the walls of the academy that Ted must take his first step. To gain the second level of skill, a player must literally live on the academy grounds and constantly train without interruption. You must spend 12 hours a day at the academy each day, and so for a full 30 days without absences. Raiden told all the information and added that he was sure in principle that the guy himself had been familiarized with such requirements earlier. Ted has new available skills, passive tactical shot, and active double jump for mobility in combat. The hero thought, okay, then it's time to start the first day of testing and prove his skills to his mentors. Raiden said strictly to hit a target set 50 meters away from the shooter's position with a single shot. The master didn't even have time to say anything, but immediately the guy executed it all clearly and hit exactly in the center of the target. The teacher said with slight irritation that one should at least listen to him for the sake of decency until the end, not rushing so much. And basically the test was passed, but the guy can't go anywhere outside the county for a month. Because if the player leaves this area, you will have to go through all the testing all over again from the beginning, hoping that everything is clear to the player. Immediately about to leave the academy grounds, the boy replied confidently that of course he understood and remembered everything perfectly. Ted added that he was just going to go shopping in town for the right items, and that would be it for today. And so the hero walks through a busy neighborhood where there are many people and all sorts of merchants with their shops and goods. And so in his head, Ted thought the store should be here in this location. Hopefully the developers hadn't changed its location in the time he'd been away. And then the guy suddenly stopped on the spot and straight up saw exactly what he needed to enter the dungeon. The hero saw some unusual plant, looking at it green, looking just like ordinary grass, but clearly special in nature. With a cautious step, the young man began to slowly approach this green blade of grass, trying not to attract the attention of the passers-by around him. Ted bent over and dug with his hands in the ground to carefully pull this plant out of the soil without damaging its root system. But the hero received a sudden system event that he had entered the underground shopping districts, happy that he had done exactly what he wanted to do. In the game Destiny Chronicles, there are two different kinds of trading platforms for exchanging goods between players and NPS characters. The first of these categories represents the main official site approved by the game administration for safe trading. This is where the buying and selling between characters and players takes place. There are of course certain restrictions, but these are all minor technical details. But there is also a second type of marketplace, which is a semi-legal black market for illegal goods. Absolutely anything you want, and when you want, can be bought or sold. There are absolutely no restrictions for buyers. When you enter this location, the crime index will immediately start to rise very quickly. You may even have guards waiting for you at the exit. Here you can find all sorts of valuable items not available to normal characters in the official stores of the cities. So the guy got a warning notice that he was entering a danger zone, but all he said was that he was well aware of it himself. Tad thought the merchant must be around somewhere, since there were some things that didn't change at all in the game. And getting closer to the counters, the hero opened the in-game inventory window to check what he had for sale. In his hands were the carcasses of various birds obtained during hunting in the forests and on the plains. With several of these trophies in his hands, he thought he would now just use them properly for profit. And so among these birds were the carcasses of ghostly creatures, infamous monsters terrorizing the peaceful citizens of the county. Because sometimes flocks of these birds swoop into a county where local soldiers cannot effectively kill them. As a consequence, military power is reduced. In order to somehow save the county's soldiers from casualties, a special reward for killing these dangerous creatures has been set. The reward for each monster killed is a special coin that can be exchanged on either of the two trading platforms. And so the guy got a total of 11 shiny coins for the carcasses of these slaughtered animals, which was a pretty good result. He thought with satisfaction, great, that's a really good amount of money, decent enough to buy the goods he needed. So now what remained was to find a suitable skill realm that could be pumped through the power of the six-pointed star to the maximum. With the power of the six-pointed star, this ugly goblin summoning skill became the most real and powerful combat ability for battles. Ted pondered over what would happen then, when he obtained a skill sphere that was originally much stronger than normal monster summoning. At last, the hero was opening the last heavy doors to enter the territory of the dangerous black market of illicit goods. The atmosphere here was of course radically different from the bright and safe marketplace that was upstairs on the surface. Approaching the various stalls of merchants, the young man scrutinized the various goods for sale. Among the items, he found a scroll of copying that could create an exact copy of any manuscripts except high-level spell scrolls. Also on display was a special type of incendiary ammunition, where the bullets would do double damage to enemies in battle. The inventory expansion necklace caught the guy's attention because it adds extra slots for storing items. Ted thought with annoyance. God, stop gawking at everything. He'd snuck in here despite the serious risk of being caught. The hero came here for only one single purpose, to find and buy a suitable skill sphere to enhance abilities. So today he just has to buy it, no matter what it costs him or what obstacles he faces. Approaching the merchant, the guy asked if such an item was in stock, but got a disappointing answer about recent customers. The merchant said that a few days ago, travelers came and bought up all the available skill spheres without a trace. Other travelers tried to stop them and negotiate, but those raked in absolutely every item in that category. The buyers' names were something like Paprika, or something similar. The merchant didn't remember the name of their organization exactly. Ted angrily realized that they were trying to weaken the county with every available force by buying up strategically important items. Therefore, the bald-headed salesman regretfully informed that he only had one single skill realm left. The guy looked at this golden orb and was clearly dissatisfied with its characteristics and purpose for combat, since it was a lightning charge active skill type worth 400 energy, granting the ability to shoot destructive lightning. Ted knew that it was an area attack sphere, so it could be used to take out an entire group of opponents in one hit. At that moment, the hero's eyes did begin to shine with anticipation, and he said that he was obligated to get his hands on this orb. Upon learning the price of 40 coins, the guy was in complete shock, his eyes bulging with surprise at such an astronomical sum. The young man began to resent that he understands the specifics of the black market. But even here, such a price seems excessive. The bald peddler replied philosophically that the buyer was wondering why those travelers didn't buy that balloon for that price. Ted thought bitterly about how he had already hoped that luck had finally smiled on him in this case. At that moment, a man passed by unexpectedly and asked the merchant how things were going with the sales of goods. The skeleton merchant responded to this by telling the customer that the customer was indeed interested in this golden ball. But it is unclear what ultimately happened to his intentions to buy the item. This stranger, who suddenly appeared, started threatening the salesman and saying that he meant he was just interested. The job of a salesman, after all, is to sell goods, not to chat. So this mysterious man in a green robe approached the guy asking him what exactly he wanted to purchase from this shop today. When the stranger heard that the guy was interested in the skill realm, he informed him that it would only cost 140 special black market coins for him. Tad immediately realized that he was usually just trying to get scammed out of money, and it was still incredibly expensive for one item of this type. The hero objected that it was too expensive. Didn't the merchant think that money could buy some normal skill spheres elsewhere? But the brash man replied rudely that beggars were not welcome in his upscale shop. So let him get the hell out of here, bear. If the customer gets the hint, then let them just get out and don't disturb other wealthy people from quietly working and buying goods. Ted thought with bewilderment as to why a skill sphere merchant would have such an inadequate and aggressive host that would scare away customers. If there were no urgent need for spheres, the hero would not even come to this place once more, and would not tolerate such boorish treatment. So we have to be patient and wait, as it is still too early. Perhaps with the arrival of other people, there will be more variety of products. But such a skill would really go a long way towards Tad's plans. He doesn't think he can get the miser any discount from this miser. The guy went into deep thought about how he would actually get out of this difficult financial buying situation. Meanwhile, Paprika's guild was actively preparing for a large-scale siege of the county, gathering resources and troops to take over the territory. They planned to do this to gain full control of the county and its resources to further expand their influence. But those players who can't leave the location for various reasons will simply be forced to participate in this bloody siege against their will. And so there was talk among the players everywhere that of course they had heard that Paprika was up to something serious. But this is pure madness. Ted has 30 more days to pass the academy exams to receive the second level of musketeer, and there is exactly the same amount of time left. Ted realized that he could not leave the territory of this city due to the terms of his training, and was also forced to essentially participate in the siege. Now his carefully thought-out plan to enhance the character was simply cracking at the seams due to the changed circumstances. The hero thought the worst part was that the siege was a massive event that would be covered by all the game channels and news reports. And if he, being a character that was supposedly deleted, is in the news, it will become a serious problem for keeping incognito. Because then, he would then immediately want to be found and identified by numerous ill-wishers from powerful guilds who wanted to avenge past wrongs. The guy was not at all happy about how awful and unfavorable all the events around him had been lately. Ted ran away from the black market very quickly, and ran so fast that all the people on the streets turned to look at him. The hero's mind was spinning with only grim thoughts of why he had to do all this. Why the siege would begin in 30 days. What was the damn guild thinking at all? If he had to stay in the city until the siege was over, and not get out. Hanging around here for 6 months or more would mean going insane. Why the hell should he waste precious time on something like this? Ted realized that the siege would begin in exactly 30 days. So he only had 1 day to get out of here. The lad thought then that he would just in time to get the second level of musketeer and still get out of town before the fighting started. Stopping abruptly, the hero opened his eyes wider and thought anxiously about what was even going on at the academy this time. Ted saw people arguing among themselves, one saying he knew he could do it all day long, the other promising to pay it all off. This guy with golden hair said irritably that he always hears the same thing, and the debt grows and grows without repayment. So to that one-eyed debtor, the creditor said the same thing: pay up or leave. There is absolutely no other way out. This cocky guy spotted Tad approaching and rudely told him he was a jerk. Let him get out of the way and stay out of the way. Ted recognized Ronaro among the arguing men and asked in wonder why he had been beaten and what had happened between them in the first place. This armorer replied bitterly that the hero came at the wrong time as always. If he wants details, he can ask the master everything. Tad turned angrily to Raiden and mentally thought about what this so-called academy master had done. Raiden asked hopefully when he saw the returning student, but the boy wondered what was going on here with the freak. The master explained that the insolent type's name was Godzonte, and he was the official owner of the building of this musketeer academy. Tad, when he heard this, interjected with bewilderment about the owner, and Raiden confirmed that it was a man who had been buying up real estate for several years. Godzonte is not only rowdy and boorish, but he also continually inflates rents for all tenants in that area of town. The master admitted that he had tried every possible way to keep the academy going until Shiboli returned, but it couldn't go on like this. The greedy type had taken all of the academy's precious treasures as collateral, and Raiden was embarrassed to talk about it out loud in front of his student. To get his second degree as a musketeer, Ted now had to go to a completely different academy and start his training all over again. When the hero heard this, he thought with despair that transferring to another academy would mean starting over, but then the training would end 30 days after the siege began. The level of that insolent Godzonte should be low enough. Maybe just kill him and end the problem once and for all. But no, while Ted is taking his exams, killing on city property is not acceptable. He will definitely be uncovered by the guards and imprisoned. So the guy thought he had planned to leave these lands in the remaining day, but all circumstances are stacked against him. The hero plunged into deep thoughts about what he should do in this difficult situation to solve the problems. But then Tad thought of the dastardly thing Godzonte had done in hitting their armorer Ronaro over the head. This brazen treatment of people he had seen somewhere before in his life, and the memory began to resurface in his mind. So the guy put the puzzle together in his head, and said with an understanding that he now understood everything and knew what to do. Ted went to Master Raiden and asked him to let him solve this serious problem with the insolent building owner. So here was the hero now in search of the very Pon liquor store where the secret entrance should be. Finally found the entrance to the establishment, for just beneath it was the mysterious Thieves' Guild of the city. Ted thought that first he should go behind the alleyway of this store and find a hidden passage there. There must be some secret entrance to the dungeon, which must be found among the many doors and passages. The boy found the right door and saw a long staircase that led far down into the dark depths beneath the earth. The hero realized that this was definitely a den of thieves. The place was gloomy, damp, and smelled musty from being underground for so long. But when Ted opened the last final door at the end of the hallway, he saw that there was absolutely no one there. Suddenly, out of the darkness, someone approached the lad and asked him if he liked the gloomy atmosphere of their shelter. Ted quickly grabbed his weapon in his hands and used his vision enhancement skill to make out the speaker in the darkness. Some stranger turned to him and said that, contrary to the stupid bear outfit, the visitor was a very shrewd man. Taisai, the great thief of thunderclouds, noticed that it was somehow not polite to barge into a stranger's house, and the boy realized that the stranger was invisible. He was a great third-class thief, a very high-level character capable of hiding from detection by most players. The guy then apologized and explained that he came from the master of the Musketeer Academy, who had given a letter of recommendation to their guild. Taisai said with surprise that he remembered him, for he had studied under Shiboli himself. The master's apprentice had become a criminal. The world never ceases to amaze. Tad thought anxiously. Stop. The privacy concealment scroll didn't work on him. It seems the thief has a true perception skill. This experienced thief explained to him that criminals among adventurers were rare enough, but they were not usually taken in. The guy, when he heard this, interjected with bewilderment as to what exactly that meant and why there was such a rule in the guild. Here indeed, the rest of the guild members were also nearby, but remained invisible in the shadows of the room the entire time. Taisai philosophically observed that brains and cunning alone were not enough to survive in their dangerous profession among thieves and murderers. So the man grinned and asked the hero if he hadn't noticed anything, pointing to his hands and showing the potion. Ted was surprised to realize that he had actually lost his valuable recovery potion that he had previously held tightly in his hands. This great thief mockingly said that people who are careful to conceal their criminality are too easily fooled by seasoned professionals. Though for a strange type like this visitor, no amount of wise advice and guidance would help in the future anyway. Taisai smiled and said that it was better for the guest to get out of here, as he would not train a fool who did not even notice the theft. So the thief turned to his companions and offered to drink to the easiest victory in their rich criminal history. Tad only began to smile wryly and meaningfully as he watched the thieves. When those rascals drank the stolen potion, it turned out that it was actually a poison that imposed a paralysis effect on them. So their statistical numbers temporarily dropped critically, the criminals' mouths bleeding from poisoning. They screamed in rage and accused the hero that the creep had known about the poison theft all along and had set them up on purpose. The guy calmly replied that they had won the potion from him by honest stealing and felt like lords of this underworld. So Tad took to calling upon his loyal goblins, much to the surprise of the thieves present. The hero turned to his weakened opponents and wondered who would now prove weaker in a fair fight. He ordered the goblins to launch an attack, whereupon his assistants quickly massacred the poisoned and defenseless thieves. That thief leader exclaimed in horror that there was no way. How could such a seemingly weak player be so strong? Ted calmly said that since the situation had been cleared up, in that case, let him just give him the thief class. And that was it. The lad was glad that he had been given what he wanted after all. He had achieved everything in a fairly simple and efficient way. Ted thought with satisfaction that great, we could just about try new skills in practice. So he decided to use the steal ability. But there was nothing to steal, and Tad wondered with puzzlement what could be the reason for the skill failure. Tisai mockingly told him that he realistically thought the theft would work without training. One must learn while the teacher was still alive. Before you can steal anything, you must enter Thief Stealth, a special skill that has 3 levels of effectiveness and drops during an attack. Therefore, whether a heist succeeds or fails depends only on the number of crowns a player receives for a successful action. Failure means 1 crown, in which case not only will you not steal anything, but you will also be discovered by the victim immediately. 2 crowns means that the theft was successful, but as in the first case, the person will find out that something was stolen from him. But here's 3 crowns. That would be the truest perfect outcome of the situation, item obtained, and the target didn't notice you. Everything is of course quite conditional, because success is also influenced by your level, the level of the target, and many other such factors. Ted, after listening to all these intricacies of the thief's trade, realized that his head was already beginning to split from the complexity. The hero thought that it turns out that before stealing something you must first enter invisibility. Well, let's try it in practice. And so he got a system message that the probability of a successful theft was only 52% of the maximum. The guy thought, okay, then he'll try stealing something else. An apple seed with a 75% chance of success. Managed to steal an unfinished love letter, only got 2 crowns for this thieving action, which was not a bad result. Looking at the trophy, Ted thought with wonder if it really is all that simple in the thief's business. The hero thought with curiosity that okay, what is this love letter anyway? And began to read it carefully. Taisai shouted indignantly, who gave the guy the right to read this? Let him quickly take the letter back, the insolent lad. Ted wondered with a smile on his face if a mentor would be so helpful to his student who had just embarked on this path. The thief replied angrily that no help would come from him, since the newcomer had poisoned him and killed all the men. But the guy started to read this personal love letter further, much to the embarrassment and upset of the former thief. Because of this blackmail, Taisai of course agreed to help, and the apprentice asked for guidance on how to improve his theft skill faster. After a while, a guy peeking at someone in town realized that he knew it. This type treats everyone badly. It was the same rogue Godzonte who is the greedy owner of the Musketeer Academy building and harasses the tenants. Godzonte demands exorbitant fees for renting the premises, and if tenants don't have the means to pay, he puts them out on the street naked. And to ensure that his activities are not touched, this freak bribes the city guards, but at the same time acts quite carefully and cunningly. And so the guy saw this villain holding the familiar identity concealment scroll, which hides character information. Ted watched him and thought he wasn't wrong. This guy is actually that greedy black market trader. The valuables that Godzonte takes in payment of tenants' debts are essentially just money and items stolen from people. You can't sell such goods in the official shopping district, so he opened his underground shop on the black market. There had to be some gap in his criminal strategy, and here the guy noticed something odd as he watched closely. In the hands of the owner, the hero saw a thick book and realized perfectly well that it was a ledger with records of income. And Tad thought exactly why would he have that book with him all the time if he wasn't able to trust even NPC characters to run the store. But the guy smiled and realized then that it was even better for him, as it represented the very real chance for exposure. Because by obtaining this compromising book, the hero will essentially be able to catch this villain red-handed in this way. And now there were only 5 days left before the siege of the county began, so it was a crucial day to execute the plan. Thanks to his training with the master thief, Ted had gotten exactly what he wanted, and now he saw the villain in action. The hero approached some random vendor and asked to sell him an item for a few coins for diversion. The guy did it on purpose so that the brazen owner of the academy wouldn't notice the surveillance and suspect something amiss. Ted continued to watch him as he wrote something in his red ledger, recording the sales for today. The hero realized that now was the best moment to act decisively and activate the thief's stealth skill. The guy thought, okay, it's either all or nothing here, so if he loses somewhere, the crime index will skyrocket. So Tad simply held out his hand and used his learned steal skill to obtain the desired item. A window popped up for him with various items that could simply be stolen, and the success rate of theft was quite high. Because of the identity concealment scroll, the probability of a successful theft increases by a factor of 10, so it plays a big role for him. The ledger showed only a 10% chance of a successful theft, which was pretty risky. Ted thought it was easier to steal an item when it was in the target's inventory. Then the likelihood of success was greatly increased. After this scoundrel returned the ledger to his inventory, the guy's probability of a successful theft increased to 100%. Ted thought with satisfaction, great. Then it was time to use the learned skill of stealing to obtain the desired item. And it worked out just fine for the hero. He got this ledger in his hands. He also got double the experience for success. The guy thought, okay, since he was having such incredible luck with stealing right now, he should try to steal something else from the target. The hero still managed to steal Godzonta's identity card, and for 3 crowns too, this method really works effectively. The rollback time of this skill is 10 seconds, so being in invisibility, he still has a chance to steal something. But at that moment, Tad stopped and thought with interest, stop. Something else interested him in the victim's inventory. They were Sauron's coins, which he had found among the Academy owner's personal belongings in large quantities. The guy thought greedily, could they really be stolen too, since right now he was in the black market surrounded by shopkeepers? And in this case, if it turns out to clean all the merchants to the thread, he can buy the desired sphere of skills. The most expensive sphere of the skill Lightning Discharge, which costs an astronomical amount of 40 coins on the black market. So the hero went around the black market to various unsuspecting merchants and actively used his stealing skill. Having amassed a huge amount of coins in a short time, as many as 32 pieces, Ted was pleased with the result of his criminal activity. But the guy thought he still needed 8 more coins anyway, and the coveted skill sphere would be in his pocket. But the invisibility skill is about to run out of time, so you need to act as quickly as possible without wasting precious seconds. Looking at the next potential victim and assessing what he could steal from her, Ted thought there didn't seem to be anything useful. The guy then still saw coins in the merchant's inventory. Not only that, exactly 8 pieces, exactly the amount he needed. The hero remembered his mentor's strict words about not even daring to steal things with a success rate below 90%. And those coins only had a 50% success rate of theft, so what the guy in this case had to decide, will he ever again have the opportunity to do something like this and earn such an amount of money in a short time? Tad realized that this was his only real chance to get that orb he so desperately needed to enhance his character. But if he is caught red-handed, then immediately locked up in prison for a long time, and receiving the second step of the musketeer can be forgotten forever. Tad thought with determination that okay, still wants to try and steal those last 8 coins and see what his luck says about the case. And it's hard to believe it. But the guy actually succeeded. His eyes were shining with joy. He was already imagining how he would buy the desired sphere. But then something amazing and unexpected happened. The guy only got 2 crowns, which meant that the theft was noticed by the owner. Of course, the owner of the coins immediately began shouting loudly and indignantly, demanding that the freak thief who had stolen from him leave the crowd immediately. Ted realized with horror that his thieving stealth was simply now running down in time, and he was becoming visible to others again. Godzonte saw exactly who was involved in this thievery, and recognized the familiar bear mask in the thief. The owner of the academy shouted with rage that he was wondering where the damn jam was, and it was a bear's head going into his pockets for money. Ted thought regretfully that he'd gotten greedy, and now he had to get out of here before it was too late. Godzonte said threateningly, not even thinking about getting out of here after all that this thief had done. The enraged owner began to use his magic power and unleashed real energy bars, promising to show who was the master here. To dodge such a powerful and dangerous blow, the guy was forced to use his proven 1,000-step skill. The hero thought anxiously that these magic rods were indeed a very strong thing, capable of dealing critical damage. But it's not just about the power of the attacks. The opponent also has passive abilities that are quite useful. It's the worst opponent of any class. The guy was well aware that Godzonte would definitely fight not for life, but for death, and wouldn't let him escape easily. But Tad used his new skill double jump to get out of there as quickly as possible and hide in the crowd of merchants. But this persistent blonde wouldn't let him go and continued to run hard after him, trying to catch the guy at all costs. Godzonte also activated his special grapple skill to finally catch the brazen thief and deal with him. This blonde pondered with bewilderment that since he was the same level as this bear, why then could the latter get away from him? The owner was angry and thought with rage that he was obliged to find and severely punish the thief for the crime he had committed. Running forward and cutting off the escape route, Godzonte shouted that there was nowhere to run now. The thief had cornered himself, and from his hands the enemy released a magical web that looked like a strong net for catching criminals. And to the hero's horror, Godzonte actually managed to capture the bear's leg with this sticky and strong magical web. A terrifying sight unfolded before his eyes. The young man's body began to be covered in real lightning. The enemy admitted with annoyance that he was even disappointed. He had stolen so much valuable stuff and got caught on some coins. Ted smiled and wondered if his interlocutor thought he was somehow new at this. The opponent replied that it was hard to call it otherwise. He attracted so many fools, and the main thing is that he does not learn anything. The lad objected that his opponent was mistaken, for everything had been done as intelligently and thoughtfully as possible. It would have been problematic to be shot right in the middle of the street, didn't he find that odd? But the man only laughed. Ted clearly wasn't kidding and fired a shot from his incredibly powerful weapon towards his opponent. The opponent realized with horror. Was he really able to kill him with one shot, taking off half of his health? The young man was glad that he was able to keep time and control the situation properly. The guy was once again able to use his special skill called Thief Stealth. The enemy realized at the last moment whether this trickster had gone invisible again, but would not let go. From his pocket, he pulled a strange whistle, which he brought to his lips to use the spell. It's an arrest whistle, forcibly canceling the skills of all criminals within a 10-meter radius. Tad thought that since the opponent used apprehension, his level was definitely 400, and there were other skills. Indeed, his skill summoning guards activated, terrifying iron guards appeared. Although he summoned them to kill him, once that happens, the inevitable roundup on him is activated. The enemy has stated that he will definitely not leave this time, so the guards must protect him at all costs. The iron creatures immediately began to move towards the cloaked enemy little by little. Tad smiled as he knew he too had something to answer to such an enemy attack. Guy summoned his silver goblins and ordered the battalion to prepare to defend him from attack. He pointed at the masked fool, telling him to hit him, but not to touch the armored Iron Men at all yet. A new skirmish between the opponents began, and the young man also drew his powerful battle weapon. The silver creatures were genuinely happy. They finally had a new and interesting combat task to accomplish with gusto. The Iron Guardians were subjected to very heavy and relentless fire from the opponents attacking them in this brutal battle. The enemy's thoughts were full of anxiety. Why were the goblins so strong? If this continued, defeat would be the inevitable outcome of the battle. The solution came instantly. Use the general offensive skill, urging the Iron Guardians to become more aggressive in attacking enemies. The magic skill causes the guards and puppets to rush into a furious attack, dealing fast and incredibly powerful blows to their opponents. A plan has matured in his opponent's mind. Whether victory or defeat lies ahead, the main thing is to use the evidence-gathering skill on this guy. The unique ability allows you to take absolutely all stolen items from any criminal caught in range. Ted was puzzled by his enemy's behavior. Why he started running in his direction with such incredible purpose and aggression. The realization came quickly. To use a dangerous skill, there is one prerequisite: physical contact with the enemy. The young man's reasoning was logical. The enemy is purposefully approaching, so he plans to use the insidious skill of evidence gathering. The solution matured instantly. Use the lightning jump skill to prevent the sneaky opponent from reaching the target. The activation of the 1,000 steps skill allowed one to try to hit that dastardly scoundrel on the bloody battlefield with an accurate shot. Ted's strategy was simple and effective. Punch his opponent in the leg, depriving him of further movement on the battlefield. A shot from a cool and incredibly powerful weapon rang out, aiming at the oddly masked opponent approaching the guy. Luck favored the young man. The bullet hit the enemy's leg, seriously wounding him and slowing him down considerably. The screams of the enemy spread through the neighborhood, full of indignation and rage at the fact that Ted had done something terrible and unforgivable. However, the insidious enemy had a secret trump card, a special skill unshakable, reliably defending against such attacks. Despite being injured, the enemy managed to touch the young man and successfully utilize a powerful skill to collect stolen goods. The ledger was instantly seized as irrefutable evidence against Tad, confirming his criminal activity in the city. Triumph filled his opponent's thoughts. It was now over between the opponents. Justice had finally prevailed in the battle. The statutory right allowed the return of absolutely all that valuable property that should have been returned according to justice. Suddenly, Tad lifted a second exact same book in his hands, displaying it to his stunned opponent with an eager smirk. Curiosity mixed with mockery. Holding the mysterious object in his hands, the boy wondered what it was he had gotten. The opponent hastily opened his book, pondering the significance of what was happening, for the evidence had just been brought back. Contempt sounded in Ted's words, calling the enemy an idiot who had completely failed to prepare for such a turn of events. A hunch visited the stunned opponent. Could it be that this cunning and devious fellow had used the rare item copying scroll? Ted had anticipated the possibility of failure and potentially acquired this magic scroll in case luck failed him again at a critical moment. The magic item can create an exact copy of any manuscript, with the exception of spell scrolls and other high-level magical artifacts. The process of copying documents takes a minimal amount of time, making scroll an incredibly convenient tool for such operations. The adversary bitterly admitted the young man was right. It was impossible to seize the copy because it was not technically a stolen object under the law. The arrogant owner understood the gravity of the situation. Even a simple copy of the document could completely destroy his lucrative business forever. Desperation made his opponent scream with pleading in his voice, asking what exactly this guy wanted from him, money or something else. Tad calmly inquired if the enemy was sure he was in a position to speak to him in such an insolent tone. The demand was made loud and clear, to be more respectful in communication, and not to address the young man in such a familial manner of conversation. Placing a hand on his defeated opponent's shoulder, Tad confided that there was something important he really needed to get. The guy had no intention of killing the enemy, so the proposal to discuss things peacefully sounded quite reasonable and logical. The store owner panicked and assured him that he was willing to do absolutely anything to keep the young man from turning him over to the city guard for reprisal. Ted made a simple condition, to start with, to show the contents of the inventory, and then we could look at it and make a final decision. The return to the Musketeer Academy was accompanied by rapturous shouts of amazement. Did the guy really succeed in the case? Raiden wondered incredulously if the brash owner had really just taken and finally gotten behind the academy after all these events. Ted confirmed the success of the mission. Now the academy only needs to pay the rent without interest. The enemy does not dare to do more. The young man was especially fortunate that he was able to obtain a rare and valuable lightning charge sphere to enhance his abilities for free. Lightning-type musketeers are almost non-existent in the area, and the existing ones are pretty weak, but the six-pointed star will help strengthen the skill considerably. Raiden, after all the guy's exploits for the sake of the academy, knelt down and sincerely thanked him for saving the institution from ruin. The words of gratitude sounded from the bottom of his heart. The young man had just saved the academy from imminent destruction, so his gratitude was boundless and sincere. Ted modestly replied that he was a graduate of the academy, so it was natural and understandable for him to want to protect his home institution. Completing the task brought not only satisfaction, but also a new achievement called Benefit Snatcher in my personal collection of rewards. Looking at the award he had received, Ted thought, something about this accomplishment was clearly out of place and suspicious. The unique achievement ignores the usual threshold of skill progression, allowing the owner to reach unprecedented mental heights in the development of abilities. Ted realized that he wasn't acting for the reward, but the pleasant bonus was still pleasing. Having eliminated the obstacles, it was possible to move forward on the planned path. There were only 5 days left before the opportunity to hole up in the city, get the long-awaited second-class step, and leave this place for good. The new clothes obtained when moving up to the second level of the class gave the guy a significant boost to his characteristics and combat abilities in battles. The appearance of the outfit didn't match the bear's head at all, but more importantly, the impressive performance it provided to the wearer. Thanks to the new sphere and reinforced clothing, any monsters will fly away instantly, with no chance of resistance in combat. The young man's thoughts were filled with anticipation of how many cool and powerful things would be obtained in the near future with this arrangement. The state of mind had warmed considerably, especially happy that the silver goblins were fine and looked content with life. Suddenly, the guy's mood changed dramatically. Something was definitely not right in this idyllic picture of what was going on around him. Suspicions were growing stronger by the second. Why was everything suddenly working out so well that just doesn't happen in real life usually? The only luck that really went with Tad was successfully upgrading the weapon to level 19 in as many pumping attempts. Looking at the silver goblins, the guy noticed the empathy activated in all of them. The creatures were literally glowing with incredible happiness and joy. Abrupt notice broke the peace. A report of a change in the date of the siege from Poprick's offensive group brought disturbing news of a postponement. Ted realized the extent of the problem. The second stage could only be obtained in 3 days, and the siege had been postponed, making it extremely difficult. The original plan had called for a siege on the 16th of May, but now the beginning was fixed for some reason for the 10th of the same month. It turned out that the battle would begin in 2 days, for which the young man was completely unprepared, neither mentally nor physically at the moment. A state of shock engulfed the guy completely. Did all his efforts and accomplishments essentially turn out to be completely meaningless and in vain? Tad collapsed to the ground, clutching his head with both hands, and wondered agonizingly why he had suffered all these trials of fate. The silver creatures watched with bewilderment, completely unaware of what had happened to their beloved master at this moment. It was as if a sudden insight had come upon the three faithful creatures at the same time, and they realized that they must support their master in his time of need. The goblins decided to echo Ted's actions and fell to the ground nearby as well, showing solidarity and loyalty to their master in distress. Tears rolled down the cheeks of the guy who had so sincerely hoped to get the chance to just quietly walk out of here forever, leaving his problems behind. Raiden, noticing the student's despair, decided to move closer and cautiously inquire what had happened to the young man at this difficult moment. The master also said that he had reported to the Earl about a strange dark cloud that Ted had quite recently uncovered during his adventures. Count Sauron ordered the threat to be destroyed as quickly as possible to minimize potential troop losses in the upcoming battle with the enemy. An elite group of fighters will be assembled to carry out a dangerous mission, which will quickly deal with all possible risks and threats. Tad asked with despair if the master wanted him to go fight the cloud as well. For now, getting the second step was in jeopardy. Raiden reassured his apprentice, assuring him that if he went with him, progress would definitely be maintained. One Ted was worth 100 regular fighters. The young man realized with all clarity that there was absolutely nothing left for him to do but accept this dangerous assignment and set off. The master thanked the boy for his agreement and informed him that he had already gathered all the necessary equipment, so we could move out right away. Tad's thoughts were resolute. He was definitely not going to stay longer than necessary in this stale and tiresome city ever again. The plan seemed simple. Destroy some ominous cloud, and then it would be easy to beat all those nasty freaks once and for all. Fate once again put sticks in the wheels of the young man, preventing the realization of his plans and aspirations for freedom from this place. Ted vowed to crush every member of this ugly guild that so persistently prevented him from living his life in peace and accomplishing his goals. Meanwhile, two girls from the fan club were discussing the latest news. One claimed to have seen Tad in Area 4, but he may have already left. The girl with glasses excitedly announced that she, too, had received notice that the siege had been postponed to an earlier date, which drastically changed the plans. Panic gripped the groupie. She screamed that they needed to get the hell out of here immediately, or there was no way they would see their adoring lord. The friend with the bright red hair suggested an alternative. Since the siege was postponed, we could join the battle with Lone. The logic was simple. If the lord was feuding with Paprika's guild, there was no way the groupies could stay out of the conflict. The red-haired girl explained the goal, to find the missing lord, no matter which side one would have to fight on to achieve the result. Fans didn't need much to be happy, just to meet their adored hero and see him with their own eyes at least once. Ted was already on his way, following his experienced master to the site of a dangerous mission to destroy the threat. The guy noticed an interesting detail. The Count, it turns out, used to be quite active in political circles and had an influence on events. Looking at the assembled fighters, Ted realized that all of the warriors present were at least level 500, despite their outward simplicity. One of the elite fighters asked if the representatives from the Musketeer Academy had finally arrived, or if it was some kind of mistake in the plans. Honored hero Hecaton, the head of the Warrior Academy and Knight of Storms, mockingly remarked that the strongest disciple looked like a children's cartoon character. Ted instantly realized the identity of the speaker, the head of the Warrior Academy, for musketeers and warriors have long been on strained relations with each other. Raiden angrily demanded that they shut up, emphasizing that the young man had saved their academy, and threatened retaliation if the insults continued in the same vein. The head of the Warrior Academy scornfully responded with a challenge, suggesting that the one-eyed musketeer try anything realistic against him in battle. Someone present decided to stop the brewing conflict between the leaders by reminding them that they had gathered to save the lands from a deadly threat. Honored hero Rinchen, head of the Mage Academy and Master of Destruction, quipped to his colleagues that the heads of academies should set an example for the youth. Hecaton stubbornly declared that there was no way he could ever find common ground or be friends with that one-eyed type. Ever. Rinchen sighed regretfully, admitting that looking at the behavior of his colleagues, he was seriously worried about the success of the upcoming dangerous task. Raiden apologized to the student, expressing regret that he had unwittingly witnessed such an unpleasant and embarrassing scene between adults. Ted indifferently replied that he didn't care about the showdown at all, since the main purpose of participating in the mission was to gain experience and get pumped up. A group of elite fighters have arrived at their destination, a location of high complexity, where a deadly threat to all inhabitants lurked. One of the mages asked in surprise, did his colleagues really mean to say that the ominous cloud was artificially created by Paprika's guild? It seemed to Ted, or the dark cloud had actually gotten much closer to the ground than it had been the last time he'd been here. The magic indicator showed approaching the critical mark. The current percentage was 85. Matter decomposition would soon begin. Disaster was inevitable. The cloud of decay did notice the presence of the group of heroes, and began to rapidly descend towards the ground. Ted realized with horror that this magical entity was far more intelligent and dangerous than had ever been imagined in his worst nightmares. The head of the Mage Academy quickly took decisive action, repelling the cloud's fiery attack with a powerful counterattack of his own destructive magic. The allies praised the master admiringly, recognizing that without his lightning-fast reactions, the group would not have been able to react to the surprise attack in time. Hecaton gazed at the scene with a horrified expression on his face, trying to figure out what exactly was unfolding before their eyes at this moment. A huge black cloud was rapidly approaching the surface of the earth at an incredible speed, carrying with it a deadly threat to everyone. An ominous mass began to envelop the entire valley little by little, as if some dark entity was slowly consuming the surrounding world of living beings. Suddenly, red evil eyes shone out from the depths of the cloud, emitting laser light and filling the hearts of the watchers with primal terror. All the players present froze in epic fear, unable to move from the panic that gripped them in the face of the threat. The thoughts of the heroes were full of anxiety and premonition of trouble. What was about to happen in this cursed place filled with evil? From the dark cloud, a huge number of undead warriors appeared. Skeletons, magical zombies, and other representatives of the undead moved to attack. Ted decided to use his powerful mosquito field skill before it was too late, unleashing deadly creatures onto the battlefield against enemies. At the same time, the guy summoned the loyal silver goblins to also join the battle and help deal with the undead army. The young man's entire team was ready for battle. A great start for the upcoming battle with the forces of darkness in this dangerous high-level location. Ted's goal was clearly stated and understood. To destroy the source of the threat he had to eliminate today at any cost to save himself. Guy ordered his creatures to open fire on the enemies, and they instantly obeyed their master's commands, beginning to attack the undead. One of the tank warriors remarked admiringly that the young man was clearly no weakling, demonstrating masterful handling of his deadly weapon in combat. Hecaton wondered who this mysterious guy was in general. There were rumors that the academy student was insanely strong, but now we can check. Indeed, Ted had single-handedly put down dozens of monsters, and he also had his own squad of loyal battle goblins. The young man rejoiced at the stream of level-up notifications. It was the easiest experience he had ever had in his adventure-filled life. The rest of the county's warriors struggled to cope with the onslaught, complaining that there were too many opponents to successfully resist the onslaught. Ted realized that there were indeed many enemies, but if the boss continued to produce undead, the energy of the defenders would quickly run out completely. The guy realized that this situation was basically to his advantage, as he would be able to get the maximum amount of experience from destroying monsters. The young man shouted loudly that he would blow that damned cloud to smithereens while the rest of the warriors continued to fight the undead. Ted was annoyed at the way the head of the Warrior Academy was climbing under his arm during battle. It completely disliked the guy and got in the way. I especially didn't like the fact that you could accidentally shoot an annoying warrior in the knee to stop him getting in the way in battle. The warrior jumped high up, using his special 9-strike skill, preparing to launch a powerful attack on the opponents below. At the tip of his formidable weapon, a bright red energy ball began to form, emitting incredible destructive power to attack. The warrior swung his weapon so that the red destructive energy spread everywhere, striking all enemies within the attack radius. Hecaton was able to deal with the undead easily enough, but suddenly there were strange tentacles that crawled out from the depths of the cloud. Dark tentacles began to wrap around the warrior's body. The head of the academy did not understand what was happening and where this vile substance came from. All the comrades were horrified to notice that one of their elite fighters had been grabbed and dragged away by an unknown force right in front of their eyes. The remaining heroes were still facing a huge army of monsters with open mouths, ready to devour any living creature. Ted, watching what was happening, realized with horror, Hecaton had just been captured and imprisoned in some magical crystal of unknown origin. The head of the Warrior Academy was captured by the enemy, and now no one knew what to do in this critical situation. The captive's body began to undergo an eerie change. Something sinister seemed to be transforming him from the inside out, changing his very essence. Dark forces possessed the warrior, so the task was updated by the system. Now it was necessary to kill the Archalich at any cost for salvation. The comrade had indeed turned into a true undead. A terrifying skeleton with burning evil eyes that had lost all humanity forever. The strategy changed drastically. Now you had to kill not mindless creatures, but the Archalich himself, controlling the army of darkness. The eyes of the awakened monster began to blaze with an insanely bright red light, radiating anger and lust for the destruction of all living things around it. Everyone present was shocked at what they saw. Is the boss really capable of possessing allies? How is this even possible according to the rules? The Master of Magic exclaimed anxiously that the hero's body had been taken over by the foulness, and it was necessary to kill him before it was too late. Raiden gave a clear order to all fighters. Listen to the command and immediately attack Captain Hecaton, who had turned into an archlich. The group simultaneously attempted to pierce the defense with arrows, bullets, and cross attacks, hoping to deliver a decisive blow to the crystal. The magic crystal in which the hero was imprisoned slowly began to crack under the onslaught of powerful allied attacks. The main problem was that not a single noticeable crack appeared on the surface of the crystal despite the effort. Terrified, the heroes wondered what to do in this critical situation, when all the usual methods were useless. Rinchen pondered anxiously as he realized that even elite fighters were unable to destroy this cursed crystal with their own strength. The outlook was grim, so never save a comrade, and Arkalich could easily kill all the remaining defenders in this battle. Therefore, the Magic Master gave an urgent order to all the soldiers present to immediately retreat from the battlefield before it was too late to escape. Suddenly, the entire battlefield began to shake with bright yellow lightning bolts that mercilessly killed opponents left and right. The powerful lightning also reached the crystal where one of the comrades was imprisoned, illuminating the dark prison with a blinding electric light. The attack was able to damage the magic defense, the crystal's current defense level dropping to 97% of its original value. Arkalich couldn't believe what was happening, pondering with rage as to who had managed to put the first crack on the indestructible prison. Ted realized it was to his credit. The new lightning ability was powerful enough to pierce the crystal's magical defenses. The guy realized the importance of the moment. The level had increased, and for further development, this was the most important achievement in the current situation. Rinchen gave a new order to the group, to cover the musketeer so he could safely fire at the target without interference from the enemies. Ted was very much surprised by such attention to his person from experienced warriors and high-level mages. Originally, the guy just wanted to get pumped up on local bosses for experience, but apparently there's nothing you can do about the circumstances. The musketeer battalion was to continue firing heavily, gradually lowering the crystal's defense to a critical level at all costs. The guy understood the importance of the task. It was necessary to crack this cursed sarcophagus and free his comrade from the magical prison. At this moment, the crystal continued to break down little by little under the onslaught of attacks. Its defense level reduced to 91%. Defense performance continued to fall steadily under the continuous attacks, reaching a critical 58%. With the heavy combined efforts of the entire group, they managed to bring that damn sarcophagus down to 1% protection from destruction. Tad warned that if he continued firing he might injure his comrade, but the master assured him that everything was absolutely fine. Hecaton's body was already affected by the foulness, so let him die like a true warrior. The guy obeyed this difficult order. The monster that had inhabited the hero wheezed with hatred that for 200 years his body had rotted in oblivion, waiting for the possibility of resurrection. Ted realized with horror, this freak would still rise, even if he was now in the process of painful rebirth to life. The boss roared with rage that if he wasn't destined to be resurrected completely, then he would take all of his opponents with him to the grave. The monster of decay has turned into the true embodiment of death. Now people are left to rot until their very last breath. All the people present exclaimed in shocked horror, unable to believe how huge and terrifying this monster was. The only thing that won't quit with this monster is the hubris that makes him demand his opponents kneel before his greatness. Arkalich continued to unleash a variety of horrible monsters that sprayed a poisonous substance on all surrounding living creatures. The spawns of darkness were advancing on the level 500 level warriors, and even these experienced fighters felt intense fear in the face of the threat. The first zombies had already begun attacking the army of defenders, and the morale of the troops had clearly been severely damaged by the horrors taking place. The monster's attacks easily imposed a corrosion effect, using it to drop the victim's health by 1% every 10 seconds. The warriors' legs were rotting right in front of their eyes from the poisonous attacks, so what could they do in this hopeless situation? Ted, taking an advantageous position, fired at the monsters, trying to do some damage and find a way out of the critical situation. Guy realized with frustration that it seemed as if his attacks weren't doing any tangible damage to the enemy at all. The young man realized that in all likelihood the core of the boss was in a completely different location than the monster's visible body. The reflection was bitter. Had he known this beforehand, things could have turned out very differently in the battle. The guy addressed the master with a request. The core is hidden somewhere in the depths, so try to attack and hit it. The warlock heeded the young man's advice and began a powerful spell. The magic soared to the heavens. Everything around shone with a blue light. A ferocious wind suddenly arose, sweeping away everything in its path, and a large number of ice shards flew straight at the monster. The ice storm began to envelop and mercilessly hit the Arkilic's huge body, causing severe damage all over. The powerful attack forced the enemy to stop a little and did noticeable damage, which brought hope to the hearts of the defenders. The magical attack continued, sharp shards of ice passing literally through the monster's body, piercing it with cold. With this devastating attack, the guy finally saw the long-awaited core hidden in the depths of the Archlich's body all along. Just a second later, the core disappeared from where it had been, vanishing before Ted's eyes as if it had vanished into thin air. The young man immediately realized that apparently the core was capable of moving inside the body. But how was that even possible? Suddenly, a green poison hit the guy's clothes, landing right on his arm and beginning to eat away at the fabric and skin. A corrosive effect came over Ted, and he thought with annoyance why he had such catastrophic bad luck in life. The guy kept running and shooting, but realized that something about this situation was specifically not as it should be. Let the damage on the monster not go through, but why the Archlich doesn't even try to dodge the attacks as if they were safe? Perhaps the boss is now in such a phase of development that it simply can't move freely on the battlefield. The guy was trying to understand what the main reason for such a strange behavior of a powerful opponent in battle was. Tad shouted to his master with a pleading tone in his voice if they could at least buy some precious time to analyze. Without even getting a normal answer to his question, the young man immediately started running towards the huge monster. The boy remembered the admonition of an experienced thief who said that all things in the thieving world fell into two basic types. Some things can be stolen without much trouble, while others cannot be stolen with all the desire and skill of a thief. Ted realized that he had previously been able to successfully steal people's personal belongings using his thieving skills in the case. The logic was simple, so this approach should work in this critical situation with a powerful Archlich. The guy decided to use his unique stealing skill to try and steal the core of this fearsome monster right out of its body. There was only a 15% chance of success, but given the amount of energy, one could use the skill many more times in a row. Therefore, the young man decided to activate this special skill with his hand and try his luck for the first time against the boss. The result was one measly crown, which meant that the attempted theft was a complete failure and unsuccessful on all counts. Ted realized that, in any case, this was roughly the result he had expected from the beginning of this adventure. However, the guy still has 19 more attempts left, so either way, this Archlich's heart will belong to him. Mentally, the young man turned to his luck with a warning. Don't even think of letting him down at this critical moment in the battle. Tad grabbed the 4-leaf clover with his trembling hand, hoping the talisman would bring welcome good luck in the case. The lad turned reproachfully to the amulet, that it was the clover's fault that the wearer had such disastrously bad luck. The young man bitterly noted that he had experienced 18 consecutive times of theft failure, with a 15% probability of success. Patience was coming to an end. How much longer should I put up with all this endless failure and fate's bullying of myself? The threat sounded clear. If he was unlucky again, the clover would know what the angry owner of the amulet would do to him. The guy kept threatening that damned clover, demanding that the talisman immediately bring the promised good luck in the case. Finally, on the 19th attempt, the guy managed to successfully steal the precious core directly from the Archlich's body at any cost. The terrifying monster's body began to rapidly disintegrate before his eyes, all of his comrades looking at what was happening with extreme astonishment. In this triumphant moment, Ted raised his level to 232nd, which exceeded the guy's expectations. The young man also received a notification of receiving a new achievement, which surprised and pleased him a lot at this moment. Thoughts were joyful, stats and skill increased, not counting the main loot in the form of a black heart monster, a rare Archlich material, a special component that allows for the creation of unique skill spheres of unprecedented power and effectiveness. Now, when you meet Brahman, it will definitely be possible to create a very strong skill out of all the options for improvement. This legendary blacksmith, a master of forging mythical items, who guy pumped weapons as many as 19 times in a row. It's really the best reward one could get for this whole dangerous and exciting game of Archlich. While the lad rejoiced at his success, all of his comrades mourned the loss of the brave master of the warrior academy in battle. Ted understood the harsh reality. Unlike players, allies cannot be resurrected, making the game more realistic. The head of the warrior academy left this world today absolutely forever, leaving his colleagues to mourn the loss of a great hero. Count Sauron was scrutinizing the latest news brought to him by a loyal subordinate from the scene of the recent battle with the Archlich. The report stated that the best warriors in the county were unable to defeat the monster, but one young man killed it single-handedly. Rinchen respectfully remarked that he dared not give advice to my lord, but thought it right to hire this fellow for the coming siege. The count replied doubtfully that even if the master wasn't lying, he didn't think such a decision was reasonable for their situation. The master was surprised to ask the reason for the doubt, but the ruler replied that such mercenaries could not be trusted without looking back. The charmer agreed in principle in part with his earl about caution in such delicate matters of hiring. Sauron explained his position. All mercenaries act solely on their own self-interest and gain. Among adventurers, there are many who want to get their hands on other people's lands by any means possible. There are also those mercenaries who are willing to go on any assignment if they are well paid in gold by their customers. Judging by the wizard's words, hiring one hero to stop the attack, how much would such a deal cost the county? Most of the county's soldiers are very ordinary conscripts with no special skills or expensive equipment for war. However, there are also professional mercenaries, whose services are paid much more expensive than the work of ordinary warriors. Due to the fault of the Paprika Guild, the county is in a state of emergency in terms of the economic stability of the region. If this young man single-handedly stops the siege, just think of the astronomical amount of money he will want for his services. If the hero succeeds in completing the task, you will have to give him the whole county to at least somehow pay for the work. Therefore, before engaging in hiring, you should carefully think twice about the implications of such a decision for the future. Thankfully, the worst threat in the form of the Archlich is at least behind us, a really reassuring truth. By order of the ruler, all the sorcerers of the county have arrived and are fully prepared for tomorrow's siege of the enemy forces. Rarest was getting very angry at this moment, realizing that the siege hadn't even started, and their monster had already been destroyed. From the beginning of the day, the guildmaster had been trying to do something to make things as good as possible for Paprika. Lone has brought his familiar allies, but these three will not be able to ensure the success of the entire ambush against the county. The county has never had any allies capable of defeating the Archlich, but from the information, some musketeer defeated him. Rarest's head was occupied with anxious thoughts. Was she missing something? At that moment, someone entered the room. The visitor asked why the captain seemed so tense and anxious before an important battle with the county. Tanichi, the human ram, reassured his colleague. "We have absolutely nothing to worry about after all. We have everything carefully prepared for the attack." A girl came into the room and asked to behave at least a little more modestly before the upcoming important operation. Ruri, the parasitic mage, noticed with a sneer that her colleague liked to tell them nonsense and empty words. The guild leader thought with relief. This is the best player of the Blue Sky Empire Guild, and their strongest mage at the same time. The only worry was that the man who defeated the monster might stand up for the county against them. Everything was indeed ready for the upcoming siege of the county. The plan of attack worked out to the smallest details and nuances. One of the fighters regretfully reported that their mighty archboss had suffered a crushing defeat in battle. The man admitted that from this unexpected news, even slightly upset, because he was counting on the help of the monster. The girl reassured her comrade. The Archlich was easy enough to destroy if you distributed your forces correctly, so there was no need to get upset. Rarest reminded anxiously that the person who defeated the monster might be on the side of the county. It should be understood. The girl enigmatically asked the gentleman what he thought the tattoos behind her ear at the base of her neck meant. Ruri explained proudly. It was the amount of territory they had successfully captured in previous battles and sieges. The head, hearing this, thought with relief. Even though the failure with Archlich, these two are really strong. Tanichi enthusiastically remarked that it had been a while since he had fought strong players, so it was interesting to try his hand tomorrow. Ruri reminded her that the siege begins tomorrow, so the Lord could let her predict the outcome of the upcoming battle with the enemies. The girl prophesied confidently. In exactly 3 days the county would lie at their feet, and they would celebrate the victory together. System notification has arrived that a siege has begun between the powerful Paprik Guild and the forces of Count Sauron. The soldiers of the Shire noticed with concern that the enemies were forming some sort of elaborate magic circle for the upcoming attack. Why would the opponents want to do this? Do they really want to use siege magic? But the county is protected by a powerful barrier against such a thing. Intelligence has reported this is not attack magic, but support spells, regeneration and damage enhancement for the attacking army. The defenders looked on in horror at the spells, unable to imagine how one could survive such magical power from an enemy. The warriors were perplexed as to why the opponents would need support spells on such a grand scale for a simple siege of the county. Previously, no one had ever seen such a waste. Why waste so much magical power on auxiliary enchantments? Suddenly something happens that surprises all the defenders of the county very much and makes them freeze from shock. The defenders see a lone warrior approaching the walls, who declares that if you can't stop the inevitable. The Tanichi saw the approaching enemy and thought with bewilderment as to whether there was only one man opposing them. All of the Earl's defenders were at a loss, not understanding what the enemies were really up to with this strange attack. The commander gave an urgent order to fire a large number of arrows at the lone warrior, hoping to stop his advance. For a strong fighter on the guild side, it was no threat. He used the blue dragon incarnation. Immediately, an incredible transformation of the warrior's appearance began, which began to cover his body with powerful protective energy. An insanely strong blue energy enveloped his body completely, radiating incredible power and suppressing the opponent's will with fear. There was a huge explosion where the arrow flames and blue defense energy merged together, illuminating the battlefield with a bright light. After the explosion, everyone looked at the warrior with horror, realizing that there wasn't a single scratch on his body from the attack. Did the hundreds of arrows hit the target accurately, but completely failed to do any tangible damage to this monster? The defenders saw the mad warrior begin to run very fast right towards the gates of their impregnable fortress. The soldiers shouted in panic to stop the enemy at all costs, so shoot freezing attacks at him. The enemy was too strong. He decided to use the blue dragon's devastating onslaught against the gate. The huge energy dragon rushed straight towards the county gates, bringing death and destruction to the defenders of the fortress. Tanichi got closer, swung his powerful weapon, and managed to break his opponent's magical attack with a single blow. Everyone froze in horror at what they saw. How could the county's most powerful barrier be defeated with just one strike? The commander shouted the order to not stop attacking and use the most powerful sizzling beam against the enemy warrior. Everyone obeyed this order, and began to launch a large number of magical attacks on the lone but formidable opponent. No matter what the defenders were shooting, this guy absolutely did not care what to do in a hopeless situation. The commander shouted to his comrades that he would buy them precious time, and they should urgently report the critical situation to the Count. Tanichi, fighting off the defenders' attacks, mockingly asked what a shame. How many more seconds could they hold out against him, such a strong warrior? The Count, who heard the situation report, couldn't understand how it was to realize that the outer gate had been completely destroyed. The subordinates reported with despair that no matter what spells they used to attack the enemy, absolutely nothing worked against him. The Count asked in bewilderment if anyone had seen the enemy firing at the outer wall of the fortress for destruction. It was reported to him that no, there was no such thing. What to do in this desperate situation with an invulnerable enemy? Sauron realized bitterly that the musketeer had never chosen a side in the conflict between the county and the guild. The ruler was well aware that they didn't know what kind of monster they would encounter as the siege continued. Under the circumstances, it is quite difficult to properly assess the situation and make the right decision to save the county. The Count has given an urgent order. Head to the Musketeer Academy and bring the adventurer named Ted immediately. The guy was just having breakfast in his room at this point, and was extremely unhappy with the events going on around him. The young man read the breaking news of the capture, describing the horrible events that are happening in the county right now. Ted thought bitterly that he'd lost everything and had to swing again. And these freaks were still doing what they wanted. The guy realized that it was pointless to get angry. Although the situation was even to the advantage, as long as the war was going on, you could develop calmly. The young man pondered that clearly this damned guild wouldn't care about him during active hostilities with the county. So even if one has to participate in a siege, his enemies certainly don't have time to read news of his activities right now. The biggest challenge for the guy is to complete this siege in the shortest time possible and make the most of the situation. Ted returns to the game, and the master immediately greets him with cheery words about completing an important phase of his training. Raiden solemnly announced that the young man's formal training had now come to an end. Here was a well-deserved diploma of graduation from the academy. The master also informed him that if the apprentice was not busy, Count Sauron wished to see him on urgent state business. The worst possible scenario has occurred. The enemy has broken through the defenses and threatens the entire county with its might. The hero of the enemy army broke through the fortress gate alone, so the troops absolutely cannot resist the onslaught for long. Even the experienced soldiers and mages of the county are unable to withstand something of similar strength and destructiveness. Ted, hearing the news, thought with interest. Looks like Paprika has managed to hire a high-level player. It's getting interesting. The lad reflected that what was happening in all probability was even more entertaining than could be imagined in his wildest dreams. Ted entered the Earl's chambers and saluted the ruler respectfully, expecting an important conversation about the fate of the earldom. Sauron immediately inquired if the young man knew all the details of the critical situation at the walls of the fortress. The ruler got to the point without delay. The conversation will be short. Can you help the county right now? Ted realized that this was quite a lucrative assignment. It had been a long time since he'd had one like this, even considering the recent trials of fate. The lad answered in the affirmative, but asked permission to ask one important question of the ruler before beginning the mission. The young man explained that he was going to outplay all of Paprika's heroes due to his superiority in battle tactics and strategy. However, to carry out the plan, he would need the support of 100 people with magical abilities for reinforcement. Ted asked to be given 100 wizards under his command, and then he sincerely promises to solve the whole problem of the county. The guy explained that the whole plan rests entirely on magical support, so the wizards should help him by all means. The young man explained the strategy. All the mages needed to do was increase his energy. He would do the rest on his own. The frightened mages didn't fully understand the plan, but of course agreed to help save their home county. Ted, surveying the destruction, thought with horror, "My God, someone has so thoroughly damaged the fortress wall." This monster was clad in blue-colored magical armor, emitting incredible power and energy of destruction. Master Rinshin tried to activate S-rank magic against the opponent, but he was completely unaffected by everything. Ted knew that the only player fitting the description was a ranger of the Blue Sky Empire named Tanichi. No Alibaba, no CGTV, guilds aren't small either. It's unclear why to get behind Paprika in this war. The guy thought that the opportunity to fight such a strong player, a great chance to test his new abilities. Ted turned to the wizards with orders to take position and begin casting reinforcement spells on him immediately. The mages immediately complied with the young man's demands, using the powerful magic flow spell to increase his power. The spell Rapid Recovery has also been activated, greatly improving energy and stamina regeneration. The energy recovery rate increased manifold, and the skill rollback time also decreased to minimal values. The guy happily thought, well, now we can go and deal with all the opponents one by one. The first thing Ted used was the lightning charge sphere. Yellow lightning began to build up around his body very quickly. The powerful lightning bolt acts directly on the entire target area and completely destroys the enemy's military camp in a matter of seconds. Opponents look on in horror and bewilderment. What kind of incredible attack this is? How such destruction is even possible? Guild leader Paprika thinks with shock that he couldn't believe that ordinary players could possess such monstrous destructive power. Ted immediately leveled up and gained a significant skill improvement due to his successful attack on the enemy camp. The guy finally realized the real reason why he was lucky enough to get a weapon with an incredible gain of plus 19 to the characteristics. Even when he got the worst summoning skill sphere with the goblins, he swore he would never use it for battles, but was able to develop synergy with these creatures, and overpowered the opponent with the increased damage from teamwork with summoned allies. It explained absolutely all the misfortunes he had tried so desperately to avoid, including even that damned county siege. Luck finally smiled on the guy. He realized that all this time he had been saving up his luck for one decisive moment of truth. A weapon that you put all your accumulated luck into can be the key to overcoming any setbacks and obstacles along the way. However, having a powerful weapon is not enough. The fate of the young man will depend only on his own actions. Ted turned to the personification of Luck with a promise that he would keep this warning in mind. Mrs. Luck. Luck replied with relief that that was fine, then stopped smothering her and treating her so poorly for help. Panic reigned in the enemy camp, with fighters screaming that some horror and utter mayhem was going on with their plans. Opponent Tanichi laughs and tells his comrades not to worry in vain. The fun is just beginning for all involved. The warrior laughs even more and explains that the only lightning available to the ranged classes is a simple lightning charge, nothing special. When the guild leader heard those words, he thought with annoyance that Tanichi was dumb and only useful in direct combat. Ruri admitted to being amazed at this unexpected turn of events, which no one could have predicted in advance when planning the operation. The girl noticed that there seemed to be some powerful ally on the county's side that they had in no way expected to meet. So now all the guild needs to do is to act immediately and decisively before the situation finally spiraled out of control. The mage explained that based on the original plan, Tanichi was to destroy the gate, and a large-scale army invasion would begin tomorrow. But since the situation has changed drastically, then everything will have to be replayed. There's no telling what kind of lightning player showed up on the outer wall. However, Ruri was sure that her deadly parasite would greatly please this mysterious foe and bring him many problems. Ted had obtained the 6th slot of the 6-pointed star at this moment, so his skill sphere proficiency had increased to the maximum 100%. The lad rejoiced at this accomplishment and realized that the skill sphere now increased the action time by 2 seconds and dealt significantly more damage. The young man realized that this skill area would probably progress somewhere further, opening up new opportunities for ability development. The initial skill rank is followed by an advanced skill level, and then even higher levels of improvement will be available. The boy smiled and thought with anticipation that he couldn't wait to see this growing power in real combat action against his enemies. The master turned the young man's attention to what was happening. Look over there. It seems that the enemies have decided to go on an active offensive against the position. Tad clearly hadn't expected the opponents to act as quickly as they had already dared to attack after the losses they had suffered. The mage commander gave the order. Warlocks, prepare your fire projectiles, and archers also prepare to strike precise blows at the enemies. One of the spellcasters remarked that since the enemies had gone on the offensive, there must be some very good reason. Ted realized that there was indeed logic in this. If the players had no defensive skills, it was better to lure the enemy in when attacking. One of the soldiers saw something disturbing and shouted to his comrades for everyone to pay attention and look carefully at the battlefield. The monster in blue armor once again decided to charge at the county defenders' positions, displaying incredible self-confidence and contempt for its opponents. The soldier began to get even more worried, wondering what the commanders were even thinking in this critical situation. The main question was what to do for all the defenders in this current extremely dangerous and unpredictable situation with the enemy. Tanichi only laughed even louder and smugly declared that he was about to swat all of his opponents with one powerful swing of his weapon. The warrior used the Blue Dragon Protective Scale ability, and the true Blue Dragon energy began to envelop his body in a protective cocoon. Ted, watching what was going on, realized it was a unique item, blue armor with a powerful enchantment for +7 to stats. The Ram Man fully lived up to his formidable nickname, especially when combined with the Dragon Defense Scale skill of high skill level. This skill was categorized as a high-ranked ability that was only available to the most experienced players in this complex game. The unique feature of the skill was that it converted all the damage it received into its own attack power for counterattack. The soldiers shouted in despair that no poison magic worked on him, and ordinary spells didn't do any harm either. Rinshin turned to the guy with a suggestion that it would be better to back off and come up with a better strategy to defeat this opponent. Ted wasn't about to back down, realizing that this was the best moment to try out his destructive power against a strong opponent. The guy took aim and thought about the fact that once the enemy's defense skill was over, a decisive blow could be struck. The young man prepared to shoot at this blue dragon with a confident smile on his face, anticipating the result of his attack against an invulnerable enemy. Tad turned to his opponent with a challenge. He was very curious as to how many of my shots this brave warrior could withstand. Tanichi, that crazy warrior, at this moment shouts at the full power of his lungs that he knows where the cowardly player is hiding. Come out and fight. The master anxiously warned that the outer gate was about to finally break under the onslaught of the enemy. It was urgent to retreat to the inner defenses. Ted hadn't listened to the warnings all this time, and realized that now was the best time for a decisive shot, and fired. The guy strikes his opponent with a huge red lightning bolt that was supposed to tear him apart right now in front of everyone. Tanichi didn't understand what it even was. He was protected by a skill. How did the enemy manage to break through the impenetrable defense? It turns out that this smart guy accurately calculated the duration of the defense skill and the timing of the attack, firing right at the moment the ability ended. Suddenly, a mysterious amulet around the warrior's neck began to glow green, activated for emergency communication with allies. Tanichi reached out to his friend through a communication amulet that helps communicate with long-distance players during battle. The guy gave the girl the coordinates of his location. The enemy is on the right side. Reinforcements and magical support should be sent there. Some strange crack suddenly appeared in the sky, from which dark energy began to ooze out, portending trouble for everyone. Ted fell under the curse of the Dark Territory influence. All of his characteristics were greatly reduced by the enemy's magical influence. It also had an attack lock on it. The magic skill releases a scattered cloud. Those caught in the effects get banned for 10 minutes. Ted realized that the situation was very bad, so he needed to get out of here immediately, using his double jump skill to retreat quickly. It was unpleasant to admit this fact, but he was just essentially forced to retreat by superior enemy forces and cunning tactics. Something else confused the lad. He realized that those damned clouds were following him relentlessly on his heels, chasing the fugitive. The young man realized with horror that two powerful skills were flying straight at him, and it was almost impossible to dodge them. Ted falls to the ground and loses some of his health by almost half from the powerful magical effects of the haunting spells. The guy still had a curse on him with 10 minutes of attack blocking, making him practically defenseless against enemies. The guy realized with horror that it was 3 powerful S-rank level attacks in a row, each of which could kill an ordinary player. The spellcaster is clearly of a very high level. She's even one of the best players in this whole complex and dangerous game. The last skill completely took the guy out of active combat, depriving him of the ability to attack opponents for 10 minutes straight. I'll have to retreat to the county army for now with the stealth thief skill to wait out the effects of the curses and recover. A soldier shouted in panic that the outer gate was about to be finally destroyed by the superior enemy forces. The worst part was that after these words, just a second later the gate collapsed, and the enemy army rushed in. Tad realized at this critical moment that he needed to gain some of his precious experience now to level up. The guy decided to see if he could unleash his goblin battalion and activate the mosquito swarm to attack on enemies. At this point, the fan club guys were walking across the battlefield thinking that death, just payment for a chance to meet the legend. Lone noticed with admiration that that powerful lightning attack was clearly the work of their true idol and hero Tad. The strongest hunter explained to his comrades that the lightning was not of the magical type, but was a completely different nature of power. Though the kill radius and damage dealt was indeed colossal in terms of destruction for a single-player attack. One of the company's soldiers asked if this wasn't an S-rank skill realm that was only available to elite players. Lone explained, I realize it sounds like nonsense, but their deity had defeated a level 50 boss single-handedly not long ago. which means that the hero has some trump cards up his sleeves that no one even suspects yet. Lone stated confidently that in any case, Tad must definitely be around here somewhere, and they would find him today for sure. Suddenly the guy noticed something that interested him. The strange condition of one of the corpses on the battlefield was suspicious. Lone thought with surprise. Here it felt as if a powerful vampirism skill had been used on this person. Getting closer to the corpse, the hunter realized that indeed it was. Judging by the condition of the body, death had come from this. The fan club girl with glasses asked in surprise, wondering if there was such a strong vampirism skill that could kill instantly. The dying stranger began shouting something unintelligible about goblins, trying to warn of some danger before he died. The tank inquired, puzzled as to whether creatures such as goblins even existed in this location for summoning. Lone immediately realized the truth and thought with admiration that goblins could be a skill of their adored divine hero after all. As suddenly, a powerful blow from an unseen opponent flies into his back, taking the entire group of fans by surprise. All the comrades shouted in shock, "What the hell? Look, our friend was attacked. Who it was must show up immediately." They use the Star Step mass action skill, which allows you to teleport long distances in a short amount of time. Yuli, who possesses this rare skill, begins to move her team closer to the battlefield using magical teleportation. The tank was horrified to see that the attack had demolished their comrade with a single blow. Pondering who could have been so powerful, Yuli suggested admiringly that it was probably their favorite hero, and what an honor to be attacked by Tad himself in person. The group walked closer to the gates of the Shire, where they were met by the head of the Musketeer Academy with a wary expression on his face. Raiden shouted with menace in his voice that the strangers should stop where they stood and announce their intentions immediately. The master promised that he would let them go no further under any circumstances, defending the county's territory at all costs. Suddenly, something happened that surprised everyone present very much and made them reconsider the situation from a different perspective. Julie explained peacefully that they actually came here with good intentions and wanted to help the county in defense. The rest of the group noticed that if they left the faction during the siege, then they would receive a large penalty from the game system. Yuli warned her companions that it was too early to rejoice in their success. First, they needed to find at least traces of Tad's presence in the neighborhood. The girl was sure that very soon they will definitely meet their adored hero and will be able to communicate in person. Karis got the message that these guys were leaving the faction, not realizing what the hell was going on, starting to get really pissed off. The guildmaster was outraged that these freaks knew the amount of the penalty. How could they abandon their allies at such a critical moment? Karis thought with annoyance that Lone had brought them here, so let him deal with them himself. When the master decided to check the status of the player, he saw with surprise that this subordinate had been killed by an unknown opponent. The guild leader was surprised and thought with bewilderment, how come this guy had died again at the most inopportune moment? Ruri strained to find traces of her opponent, wondering where that mysterious monster player had disappeared from sight. The girl turned to her friend and noticed that their opponent was low level, but his damage was much higher than theirs. Therefore, the mage was certain that they definitely shouldn't get into a groove and act too recklessly against such an enemy. Tanichi laughed and wondered if his girlfriend didn't believe in his strength. Even if a player was strong, he wouldn't lose to anyone. The girl laughed in response and agreed that they did indeed have the strongest fighter among all the participants in this siege. Ruri thought to herself that the situation was taking a very intriguing turn that could have unexpected consequences for everyone. This will be the truest battle of fool and monster, and it is definitely worth watching closely until the very end. From one of the fighters, the enemy receives a powerful blow to the head, so that the bullet goes through him through and through, leaving a fatal wound. Ted has leveled up again and thinks he's a head taller than all those minions because of his second-class step. The spellcaster had placed a detection curse on the area, so the guy had better proceed as carefully and cautiously as possible. The young man thinks that to begin with he must defeat Paprika's trump card, and then the siege can be considered almost won. Taking aim and picking a target, Ted wonders who his victim will be, as plans are abruptly changed by the unexpected. Using a double jump, the guy barely dodged a sickle spell that flew dangerously close to him. Tanichi runs in with his weapon drawn and yells to his opponent to stop hiding. Come out and fight one-on-one fair and square. Tad, seeing this warrior, thinks with wonderment how he found him in invisibility, for tanks have no detection skills. Taking a closer look, the guy noticed something important on the hilt of his opponent's sword that explained what was happening to him. The young man saw the green-colored detection skill sphere and understood why the warrior needed something like this to search for enemies. The crazy warrior laughs and states that the enemy can't escape as he uses a special skill to detect targets. This skill allows you to see the exact position of a target regardless of their status. And then there is the link to attacking abilities. The following skill allows you to consecutively launch 3 powerful shockwaves from your weapon in the direction of a detected enemy. Ted thinks with horror that even without considering the difference in levels between them, this skill is too dangerous for him. The guy dodges the attack, realizing that there's no way this ability should be allowed to hit him. Turning around, the young man saw a second shockwave flying straight towards his back at an incredible speed. As Ted turned around, he thought with panic that the wave was already closing in on him. What to do in this situation? With his double jump skill, the guy managed to make sure the attack didn't hit him at the last moment. The young man realizes how close it was. If you have to keep running this way, it will never end in victory. Tenichi tells his opponent that he has revealed his whereabouts, so let's settle this man-to-man in a fair fight. Ted thinks he needs a few accurate shots to put the enemy down, given the level difference and passive skills. The guy needs about 6 accurate shots in total, but all of them must hit strictly on the head for maximum damage. The problem is how to make them, as Ted is fighting against one of the strongest players in the location. The enemy caustically offers to repeat the attack, and again uses his powerful chain link skill against the fleeing enemy. Tenichi releases circular blue-colored energies that target the guy and chase him all over the battlefield. Ted, analyzing his opponent's behavior, realizes that when the skill is activated, the warrior stands still for about a second straight. The guy doesn't think it's a feature of the tank class, but rather a flaw in a particular skill or its mechanics of action. The young man also realizes that after attacking, the enemy uses a basic skill to shorten the distance between them for melee combat. Therefore, Ted must use this tactic of his opponent to his advantage and find a moment to counterattack at all costs. Tenichi laughs and wondered if the opponent had really decided to take the fight like a real brave man finally. After saying that, the warrior once again used his chain strike skill bundle to deal massive area damage. Ted dodged the skills and used Thousand Steps, quickly stepping back to create a safe distance from the enemy. To fly through the air a bit and gain an advantage, the guy used his double jump skill to maneuver. The opponent only laughs and says with derision that this is ridiculous. The opponent continues to cowardly run away from a fair fight. Turning towards the enemy, the guy realizes that now would be the best moment to deliver a decisive blow to the target. Activating his skill, Ted begins to glow with red lightning bolts that look so intimidating that it's scary to even look at. The young man uses the lightning charge and realizes with satisfaction that he has everything going clearly according to plan so far. The guy fires a powerful shot from his musket, and red lightning bolts burst from the barrel of the weapon with incredible force. The enormous lightning bolt aims as fast and brightly as possible towards the enemy, cleaving the air with destructive energy along the way. When the energy approaches the target, it sweeps the enemy off his feet and literally burns everything around him with its effect. When the lightning comes closer to the enemy's face, he can't believe his eyes from the horror that is happening. When the lightning reaches its target, everything turns red. The entire forest begins to literally burn with this destructive energy. Ted jumped into a tree beforehand to get a better view of the battlefield and assess the results of his attack. The opponent starts to get angry and admits that the guy got him at this point, in which he's really good at. It was the first time in a long time that a warrior was taking so much damage from an opponent that it seriously hurt his pride. Tenichi said with a smile that it was time to end these childish games and move on to a serious battle between real warriors. Therefore, the warrior uses Dragon Area Territory Expansion, which releases a large number of energy dragons throughout the area. The expansion forms an enclosed area under a translucent blue dome, and there is no way for players to escape this magical prison. Tenichi also decided to use the Blade Dance, unleashing multiple sickle-shaped energy volleys from his weapon at his opponent. These volleys were so enormous in number that they destroyed even the oldest and sturdiest trees in the neighborhood. Tad realized with horror, did the enemy really want to clear the entire area so the guy would have nowhere to hide from attacks? Next, the enemy uses his signature skill Power of the Blue Dragon to deliver a decisive blow to the lurking foe. Swinging his powerful weapon, the warrior triumphantly declared that here was the enemy trapped, Bear Hugger. However, it is not the bear that gets hit, but one of the silver goblins summoned by the guy for a distraction. Tenichi was shocked when he saw the result of the attack, thinking with bewilderment why there was a goblin instead of a target in that spot. This puzzled the warrior greatly indeed, for he had expected to see the owner and strike him a fatal blow. Ted appears behind the enemy's back at this point, using the moment of confusion to make a surprise attack on the enemy. The guy takes aim directly at the enemy's head, preparing to inflict maximum damage from his powerful musket with a precise shot. The young man fires, and it's a true critical shot with an additional 94% of base damage. The enemy recognized that the musketeer had summoned the goblin as a distraction. It had left him shocked. But such a trick would not be pulled off again. The warrior promised that this time the boy would not be able to repeat such a thing during a battle with such an experienced fighter. Tenichi abruptly grabs his weapon and uses a powerful attack, swinging his sword to deliver a deadly blow to his opponent. Ted realizes that he has no choice. needing at least 3 or 4 accurate shots to win. So the guy uses his unwavering skill and realizes that the opponent will have to break through this defense with a frontal attack. The young man absolutely mustn't slow down, as he didn't have much health left after the enemy's previous attacks. Tanichi, thinking he had already won, mockingly wondered if his opponent would go cuddle with him, a teddy bear. The warrior added with disdain that the guy was thinking of withstanding his blows with his unshakable skill. That's just ridiculous. Ted realizes that he must gain a percentage to defense for every point of health he loses through the class's passive skill. The enemy kept hitting the guy with his bare fists and laughing at him, showing complete contempt for his enemy's ability in combat. It's as if the unshakable skill doesn't work at all, and doesn't want to activate at the most critical moment of the battle. Ted pulls out his weapon and fires a precise shot directly into the enemy's face, hoping to do critical damage to the enemy. The opponent stated with a sneer that his defense stance was solid, so the guy's musket did not intimidate the experienced warrior at all. The warrior offered to surrender, son, but the guy released the mosquitoes from his weapon for a square attack against the tank. Tad wondered with a smile on his face which one of them should surrender here while regenerating his health from vampirism. The enemy realized in shock that the enemy also had parasitism, and realized that this was a serious problem for him. Ted has gained the upper hand in the melee, and is now pinning his opponent to the ground, preparing to deliver the final blow. Tanichi thinks bitterly, how did he really lose? Ruri will just be beyond furious and disappointed. The warrior turned to her friend through the link, admitting that she had lost, their opponent being a bare-headed musketeer. The girl replied that she would help him, but no more should be hoped for. It was the last help from an ally. Tanichi once again used his Blue Dragon Onslaught skill for one last desperate attack against his defeated foe. Ted thinks with annoyance that all the way to the end, the enemy is determined to put sticks in your wheels that die at last. Finally, a miracle happens. The opponent dies, but the explosion throws the guy high into the air from the force of the last attack. Ruri thinks the enemy has defeated their fighter. Tanichi is strong but terribly slow and inconsiderate in his battle tactics. The Magica looked around and realized that no one from their faction was nearby, but that was also good for the plan she had in mind. Therefore, the girl uses Area of Superiority territory expansion to create a magical field of control over the area. Ruri thinks that first they need to cut off all avenues of escape for their opponent and trap him. The mage uses the Celestial Construct. A blue cube appears in the forest, limiting the space for enemy maneuvers. The girl thinks there's one more finishing touch she's been saving for a special occasion like this. It's a magical bag from which a sinister aura emanates, and some monstrous creature of darkness appears. A younger demon emerges from the bag, ready to serve his mistress and follow any orders without question. The creature says it is very grateful for this duel, so it expresses its sincere gratitude to the Lord for the challenge. Ted, sitting in ambush, sees a huge black cloud moving towards him, and thinks with horror what it is. The guy realizes that he's seen something like this before. It's the exact same cloud that turned his comrade into a monster. The lad realized with alarm that it was now best to leave the battlefield immediately, while there was still a chance to avoid the worst outcome of this battle. However, when Ted tried to remove himself, he discovered an energy dome around him that completely blocked any attempts to leave the area. The young man wondered what kind of strange magic this was. How come there was such a powerful barrier preventing the fighters from retreating? The guy shot at the dome, trying to break it with his weapon, but absolutely nothing worked against this enemy's defensive structure. Ted realized that things were extremely bad. If those demonic tentacles touched his body, it could be considered that everything was gone forever. So the young man turned sharply and began firing intensely at the energy hands that insistently wanted to grab him and drag him towards the demon. However, the guy quickly realized that the matter is not good at all. No matter how much you shoot at the tentacles, they still continue to persistently climb towards the target. Ted wanted to use the powerful lightning charge skill, but he didn't have enough energy to activate this destructive ability. The demonic claws began to get closer and closer to the guy, who shouted at them to back off and leave him alone. At last, the young man found himself completely bound by these ghastly hands, and they began to drag him very quickly in an unknown direction against his will. The tentacles dragged Ted straight toward the younger demon, a horrible creature emitting a sinister aura of darkness and decay all around him. Approaching closer and closer to the monster, the guy realized with horror the main goal. The younger demon wants to merge with his character forever. Ted thought with despair, could his body be so easily pierced as it had been for his unfortunate comrade not long ago? Various anti-enhancements were being applied to the young man, and the lad thought bitterly about how much had been accomplished up to this point in the ordeal. Suddenly, the spirit of the liberator of the sun Shamshon, slumbering in the traveler's soul, began to violently resist the effects of the demon's great parasitism. Ruri watched with bewilderment. This level 5 demon, then why is he only getting 1 damage right now? The magician was getting some strange in-game notifications, and the girl had absolutely no idea what had just happened to her spell in the first place. Ted himself didn't understand what was happening. Was the spirit inside him actively resisting the merger, and the guy could avoid being transformed into a monster? The rest of the players watching this spectacle thought this was some kind of special gaming event. What was going on here with reality at all? How such a thing is even possible in principle, God only knows. But this demonic monster seems quite dangerous to everyone present. The system reported a junior demon merging with the character, the percentage of defeat 33. When reaching 34, the player would partially lose control. The younger demon releases a huge energy field from his weapon, which begins to affect everyone within its radius of influence. Players were shouting to each other in panic to see what was happening. The monster was shooting at them, so it was imperative to get out of here as soon as possible while alive. Throughout the forest, there is a huge explosion of incredible force, which shakes the ground and destroys all life within a radius of several kilometers from the epicenter. The spirit of the liberator of the sun, slumbering in the soul of the traveler, continues to desperately resist the effects of the great curse of parasitism, trying to preserve the identity of the host. Ted thinks with despair what can be done when the percentage of defeat reaches 100. It turns out all that's left is to just watch what happens. The younger demon continues to merge with the character, and the system shows that the defeat is already 35% of the maximum. Now a younger demon has taken Ted's form, using his appearance and abilities to accomplish his sinister goals in this world. A demonic creature in the body of a guy comes closer and closer to the county, bringing death and destruction to the peaceful inhabitants of these lands. The monster begins to roar with rage, though somewhere in the back of his mind is a thought: just don't touch the innocent citizens of the county. However, does the opinion and point of view of the real Ted matter to the demon now? He just fires his huge energy cannons. A huge projectile ball causes tremendous damage across the county, destroying walls, buildings, and anything in the path of the destructive force. The entire county army screams in horror. Oh my god, look! Our hero has turned into a monstrous monster and is attacking the allies. Count Sauron, who was among the defenders, appealed to his subjects to remain calm and listen to his instructions at this critical moment. The ruler understood that all of them now needed to move in an organized fashion behind him to cover to avoid death from the attacks of a former ally. Ted realizes with horror that this is wrong, for he has been on the side of the county and defending these people from their enemies only a short time ago. Among the defenders of the county is someone strong enough to try to stop the demonized hero at any cost to save everyone. The guy noticed the guys from his fan club, who are watching with bewilderment and do not understand what happened to their idol. A huge energy bullet flies at them, spinning at incredible speeds through the air, threatening to destroy everyone in its path. Looking at the approaching death, the fans do nothing but just watch as this projectile approaches them inexorably. There is another powerful explosion, which illuminates everything around with a bright light and makes the earth shake with incredible destructive force. The Sun Liberator continues to fight back, and the defeat is down to 30%. Ted realizes he can at least control something now. The guy realizes that something urgent needs to be done before the situation finally slips into a completely hopeless and catastrophic direction. Ted thinks that if he had been able to regain some control over his body, things could have turned out very differently. At this point, the young man has the opportunity to hurt Paprika before the demon takes full control of his body and mind. The demon lowers a huge energy arrow at the enemies, which aims straight for their camp with the intention of destroying as many opponents as possible. Tad, while trapped in the monster's body, tries to use the inventory access skill, hoping to find something useful to fight. The guy pulls out the item and thinks with relief, it's a good thing he didn't sell this important item that could help in a critical situation. This is a berserk potion that, when applied, increases reaction speed by 30%, and damage increases by 10% of the base value. The young man realizes that since he is literally flying over Paprika's camp right now, it is completely safe to use this opportunity for revenge against his enemies. So Ted, without any hesitation or thought of the consequences, drinks this precious potion as quickly as possible, hoping the situation will improve. Reaction speed increased by 30%, damage increased by 20%, and in total the guy has 10 minutes to utilize these benefits. Ruri, watching the younger demon rapidly approaching their camp, is completely unaware of what exactly happened to the plan. Is it really Ted in the guise of a demon? The girl needs to set up a protective barrier as quickly as possible to save her allies. Ted is clearly not going to give his opponents that opportunity, as the madman begins firing his weapon intensely in demonic form. A girl, desperately trying to somehow save a critical situation, sees a huge energy field of death approaching her. Ruri realizes with horror that in this situation she would be completely powerless against such might, and unable to defend the camp. In their camp there is a huge explosion of incredible force, which demolishes everything in its path and destroys most of the buildings. The younger demon in Ted's body goes even more mad with rage and begins to growl, displaying bestial aggression towards everyone. The monster completely trashes the human camp from Paprika, who has messed up the guy's life so badly with his despicable actions. Everything around you explodes in blinding flashes of light, so bright and powerful that it's hard to believe anyone can survive. Lone, despite the chaos going on, thinks bitterly about having invested so much money and attracted top players. And only one musketeer took and spoiled all the plans of the guild, destroying the results of long preparations for the siege of the county in one blow. Ted opens his huge demonic maw from which sharp fangs peek out, horrifying all who see the sight. The potion's effects came to an end, and the guy immediately felt a painful rollback of energy, weakening him for a while. When the young man regained consciousness, he saw the utter destruction all around him and thought with horror. Did he really do it all? Sun Liberator is completely resistant to demonic influence. The resistance is 100%, and the guy got a lot of system windows. Ted realizes that he has managed to maintain control and stay in this powerful body, gaining incredible opportunities for further action. Basically, at this point, the guy was just a high-level boss with all the relevant characteristics and destructive abilities. The system issued a notification that the young man had received a new achievement for his outstanding actions during the siege of the county. The achievement Siege Paralysis, one of the most coveted and rare achievements you can get when participating in a fortress siege. Also obtained the achievement One Against All, which gives a character's performance boost of almost 100% of the character's base values. The new status maximizes the power of all skills when using invisibility, making stealth attacks even more devastating and effective. The system asks if he wants to add a new status, Overwhelming Aura. The guy realizes that of course he's madly desiring it. Ted thinks with satisfaction that he has a unique status created, and now something else interesting can be done to develop. However, the system issued an alert. The guy has killed too many people, and his crime index is 53,000 units. Therefore, Ted gets the status of Sworn Enemy of the Realm and the status of Demon Boss, since he invaded the city and killed many peaceful citizens. At this moment, the subordinates are insistently telling the Count to get rid of this demon immediately. It is no longer possible to ignore the threat. The advisors convince the ruler that it is imperative to decree the capture or destruction of the monster for the safety of the entire kingdom. Raiden apologizes for interfering and asks the Count for his opinion on the current situation with the demonized hero. The master explains that the traveler Tad, who had the misfortune to befall, is their ally. He was turned by the freaks who turned against the county. The subordinates object that this is utter nonsense, and you shouldn't mix public duty with your personal affection for a former student. Raiden explains that personal feelings have nothing to do with it. There's a power slumbering in the guy's body that there's no way they can curb. The teacher came out after the battle was over and looks at all the horrible destruction, pondering the fate of his ward. The master's mind is spinning with thoughts of where his apprentice is, and whether he has managed to retain his human will in a demonic body. Raiden recalls what the lad was like on the first day when he first came to his musketeer academy to be trained in the art of shooting. And then the teacher thinks about how quickly the young man has become incredibly strong, exceeding his mentor's expectations in a short time. Mentally thanking his apprentice, the master recognizes that he saved their home and academy from ruin by risking his own life for the sake of others. So Raiden hopes that she and Tad will definitely meet again, and everything will be perfectly fine as it used to be between them. In the capital of the Pixian Kingdom, in the conference room of the Blue Sky Empire Guild, powerful players are gathering for an important meeting. Ruri and Tanichi tell the girl that they were afraid the siege would take too much time, and they wouldn't make it to the scheduled meeting. The girl reflects that although they failed the siege, everyone else in the alliance seems to be doing fine. A familiar voice addresses the group. Long time no see, guys. How are the continent's strongest players doing lately? It's Musashin, the great swordsman, wondering if anything good has happened to the comrades during their absence from the meetings. Tanichi tells him that he has met an opponent so strong that the great swordsman can't even imagine his true power. Ruri ponders, more importantly, how this guy was able to resist her deadly parasitism, which should have worked. The girl was absolutely sure that everything would go smoothly according to plan. But how on earth did the enemy manage to stop her best spell? The organizer announces that most of the participants have already arrived at the location, so the planned meeting of the continent's elite guilds can begin. Ted at this point is running through the woods and thinking with despair. Why did he have to go through such an ordeal? Did he deserve such a fate? Now the guy has to flee to another country to start over and try to build a new life away from persecution. At a conference, they announce that 5 of the strongest leaders in the room have gathered, and all are facing the same serious problem. The main question is the reason why they were not included in the top 7 guilds on the continent, says one of the participants. It's about power distribution. However, Everyone here deserves to be among the best players and deserves to be recognized. Therefore, all guilds need to unite for a common goal. But this requires one common enemy to rally the forces. To their great regret, they failed to subdue the county for themselves. They lost this particular battle due to unexpected circumstances. However, the war is not yet lost, as there are many other territories that can be captured and joined to the alliance by force. Therefore, now is the best time for decisive action, the moment when all conditions are in their favor more than ever. The speaker announces the formation of a guild alliance that will take the top spot in the rankings and change the balance of power on the continent forever. It is decided to start large-scale actions now, and the first thing to do is to choose a worthy name for the new powerful association. Ted continues to run quickly through the forest and realizes with relief that he has finally found the place he really needs to escape. This is the kingdom of Pixie, where the guy has been heading all along, hoping to find refuge and start a new chapter of his troubled life.